Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If Guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the second part of What If Issei Became the Dragon of Apocalypse. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic.
No, Issei shouted at the top of his lungs, sitting up in bed in an instant as a cold sweat broke out all over his face. The protagonist looked around in utter shock. My room, he asked himself, beginning to take in all that had happened. I see I lost, he commented, lowering his head in disappointment. Before he could think of anything else, he felt arms wrap around him over his shoulders. Issei, you're finally awake, exclaimed the sweet, familiar voice with great joy, sinking his face into the chestnut's neck. Tiamat, Issei asked, not reciprocating the embrace out of the shock of the moment. Just a moment, he added with great seriousness. For how many days have I been unconscious? Tiamat pulled away from him and looked at him with great concern. You were unconscious for 3 days. Since you did not visit me after the day of the battle and I did not feel any emotions through our union, I became concerned and decided to come to see how you were doing. I have been taking care of you these days, but unfortunately my healing is not able to heal internal wounds. My parents didn't say anything about your presence, Issei asked, with great impression. Tiamat quickly denied. No, when I arrived, you were alone in the house. At that moment, the realization hit Issei's head. Right, they were going on a month-long trip. Issei looked towards the closed window with great melancholy and sorrow, causing Tiamat to look at him with even more concern. I was afraid this might happen. I only hope I can find a way to remedy it. Chapter 10, A New Power. Issei watched silently as Tiamat got out of bed and went to open the window. Although her body and soul were there, her mind was elsewhere. I let her down. I couldn't return the president's favor, Issei thought, clenching his fists tightly. How will she be right now? Comrade Diedreg interrupted his thoughts, bringing Issei's attention to him. I understand that you're worried about her, but keep in mind that no one came to check on you, not for a single day, not for a single second. You were simply left here to heal on your own. On the other hand, Tiamat was with you from day one, and she was the only one who took care of you and worried about you. Even if me and that crazy dragoness don't get along, I have to say that Rias doesn't deserve a bit of your attention right now. The one who really deserves your consideration is the woman in front of you, opening that window. You'll have time to think about your mistress' situation later, so make sure Tiamat gets the attention she deserves. Diedreg's words made Issei's eyes widen as he watched Tiamat finally open the window, causing a blinding light to illuminate her beautiful figure while a blizzard shook her hair in a mesmerizing way. It would have been quite splendid if the woman didn't have such a worried look on her face. You're right, Diedreg, I don't want to worry her any more than she already is with my negative thoughts, Issei thought seriously. When Tiamat turned her gaze back to him, she looked a little surprised when he was giving her a big friendly smile. Thank you so much for taking care of me, Tiamat. You even came to the human world to treat me. I don't know how to thank you. Issei looked in another direction with an embarrassed expression on his face. You just have to keep your promise. Issei looked at her with great surprise as he felt her sit down next to him. She was giving him a sympathetic smile. I hope you'll take me out to eat in this small town soon. That clarification made Issei chuckle, while Tiamat was visibly relieved to see that the situation wasn't as dire as it seemed, as he was still just as sweet to her. Still, that friendly, comfortable moment was completely shattered when Issei's stomach rumbled loudly. A flush of embarrassment erupted on Issei's face, causing Tiamat to turn a smirk on him. Is anyone hungry after not eating for 3 days? The dragoness asked with an amused tone in her words. Damn, I'm just now realizing that, Issei replied, clutching her stomach with a slight grimace due to the great aching emptiness she felt in her abdomen. Don't worry, I'll go get some fruits to eat right now, Tiamat commented, giving him one last hug more, which this time Issei was able to reciprocate. Really, I'm so glad you're awake now. The hug continued for longer than they both thought it would, until finally Tiamat broke away. I'll be back as soon as I can. Line jump. A few minutes passed, during which Issei did not move from the spot at any time. An expressionless look decorated his face, making it impossible to tell whether he was well or ill. No one could guess, except for his friend inside his head. Are you still thinking about that? Diedreg questioned with a disapproving tone, not understanding why he still cared after what he told him. I'd just like to know how they're doing. If they didn't come to visit me, it means they're mad at me, Issei commented, raising his gaze. I don't think I'll be able to see their faces again, especially the president. Do you think they lost because of you? No shit, they barely got to collaborate in the battle. You did most of the work, but I didn't finish it, Issei shouted, angry at himself. I'm supposed to be the Sekirute, someone capable of defeating the gods themselves, but I couldn't even defeat a high-class demon. He added in great frustration, making Diedreg unable to comment on the matter. You don't need to hide it from me. I know I'm the weakest of all your bearers, Issei finished shouting, on the verge of tears from the great frustration built up. An awkward silence fell in the room for several seconds, until finally Diedreg decided to answer her. It's true, you are the weakest bearer of all. Issei clenched his fists and teeth tightly at Diedreg's words. But you are also the bearer with the biggest heart of all. The dragon's words surprised the protagonist. You're the only bear I've had so far who only wants more power to protect their loved ones. All the others only wanted power to dominate, allowing themselves to be totally corrupted by my power and turning me into a mere tool of their own. Well, you proved to me that you were different from the very first days. You proved to me that you really are my partner. For that very reason, I know that you will not end up consumed with power and reach levels that are even unimaginable to me. D-Drag was surprised when Issei began to laugh at his words. Don't you think you're being a little over the top? You're one of the 2 heavenly dragons. It's impossible for me to reach a level that even you don't know about. The dragon chuckled, agreeing with his bearer and causing the mood to twist to a much more cheerful one, abandoning the depressing vibe. Yeah, you're right. I just got a little carried away for the moment. Before Issei could thank him for easing his frustration, a magic circle he didn't identify appeared in the room, activating his gauntlet instantly in defense. Sorry for the inconvenience, Secretary. I come to bring a message from Surzech Lucifer, elder brother of Ria's Gremory. The albino woman who appeared to be a servant bowed her head in respect. Issei dematerialized his gauntlet and watched her with wide eyes. My president's brother. The albino nodded. That's right. The woman withdrew a small piece of paper from her hand that had a strange seal in the center. The wedding will be in a month, and you are invited. Issei took the paper and looked at it with great surprise. But Mr. Surzech didn't ask me to talk to you just to give you the invitation. He intends for you to be the one to crash the wedding. Barge in. Issei widened his eyes in complete surprise. Right. Apparently, you don't know that the second condition for hastening the marriage date had been that anyone who wished to break into the wedding and take Ria's hand through a confrontation against Razor is allowed. Is it allowed? Issei commented, questioned in complete astonishment, until he finally turned his attention to one particular part. Wait a minute, if I save the president, will I be engaged to her? Issei thought, reluctant to marry her. When the wedding is underway, I'll come looking for you to break into it. Issei cleared his thoughts and looked at her, nodding quickly. I'll think about that later. Now I just need to concentrate on saving her, he thought with great seriousness. The woman disappeared in a magical circle, leaving Issei alone again in the room. He rose from the bed slowly with an expressionless look on his face. Finally, Tiamat appeared on the scene and looked at him with a raised eyebrow as she saw that he was up. Did something happen, Issei? Issei's expressionless gaze slowly transformed into a large smile that promised to restore his pride at all costs, causing Tiamat to be visibly surprised. I have a second chance. Say, how about training me for another month? Tiamat's surprised look quickly changed to a sharp, pleased smile. If anyone not involved in the conversation had seen her, it would have given her a bit of a scare. Will you stand to go a full month without returning to the human world? I wasn't planning on showing my face until it's all sorted out anyway, and being there makes the job a lot easier. Pack your bags. Time skip, 6 days. The silence in the Hayadu residence was palpable. Not a sound had been heard for the past 6 days. Natsuda and Madohama went to visit their friend out of concern, but found that there was no one in the place. So they thought that their friend had accompanied his parents on the work trip, and that his mobile phone had broken in America or something like that. After Matsuda and Madohama left the place, 2 more people appeared in front of the Hayadu house. I can't believe my brother is forcing me into this, Rias commented in disgust, looking at the small house. His orders were clear, Asia stated earnestly. You have to be as close to him as possible and pretend you didn't care about the outcome of the raiding game. Spend the next few days together with Issei at his house so that he starts to feel loving affection for you. Asia bowed her shoulders with a small smile. Knowing what Issei went through, it will be difficult to get him to open up to you, even if he is in love. A dangerous glint crossed Asia's eyes. You only have to kiss him non-stop when you're sure he's already in love with you. That way, we'll have him on our side forever. Rias gave a big sigh and knocked on the door of the dorm. I know that, but it bothers me that I have to marry Issei. It's really repulsive just thinking about it. He whispered quietly, Asia being the only one who heard him. Don't worry about it. Remember, your brother mentioned that when you do your part, he'll help you cover up your relationship if you ever like someone. Asia whispered softly, causing a small smile to appear on Ria's face. You're right. What really bothers me is not being able to punish him, to make him feel the humiliation I felt when I lost in the raiding game. It's the Sekiryude. It's unbelievable that he can't handle a mere high-class demon like Razor. Ria spat with venom in his words. Asia just nodded in understanding of Ria's repressed actions, only to raise both eyebrows in confusion. Don't you think it's strange that he hasn't picked up yet? Rias looked at Asia with the same expression. You're right, Grafia had said 6 days ago he was already conscious. Rias put a hand to his chin. It's very strange, the redhead concluded her thoughts, entering the house from the back. Line jump. Are you tired already? It's barely 11 o'clock at night. You could have held out for another hour yesterday, Tiamat declared, giving him numerous thrusts without even flinching, while Issei dodged or blocked them with his gauntlet with difficulty. He had long since had his power-ups maxed out, but it was no use if he had already been training for over 15 hours without any rest, except for lunch and dinner. Finally, Tiamat's sword ended up shattering the gauntlet into 1,000 pieces, causing Issei to fall backwards in a thud. Tiamat sighed to herself, relaxing and dematerializing her ice sword. The dragoness watched as Issei's chest heaved down and up with great intensity, looking like she was about to be seized by a seizure. Let's stop for today. You can't continue to be like this, it would be counterproductive. Tiamat declared an end to the training, kneeling in front of Issei's face earnestly, then giving him a tiny smile. Issei returned it, then gazed into her beautiful sea-blue eyes with rapt attention. It's been 6 days since this started. I never thought training could become a real hell. Issei thought, having a small flashback of how it all started. Immortality, Tiamat thought aloud, rubbing her chin. Actually, it's not that far-fetched, as some demons are born with certain powers due to their lineage. From what you told me, their strengths were fairly balanced, with the exception of their magical reserves, which is really strange. Tiamat looked at Issei intently, giving him a deductive look. No demon would manage to hold on to the high class for long if you're no big deal. And apparently, immortality is what makes you the big deal. Tiamat removed her hand from her chin and snapped her fingers. All you need to do to win is defeat his immortality. You make it sound so easy, Issei replied with a roll of his eyes. Of course it's easy, Tiamat commented seriously. All you have to do is reach beyond. Break your limits. Break my limits, Issei asked, somewhat alarmed. That definitely didn't sound like an easy thing to do. Tiamat nodded. That's right. To do that, you need to take your boosted gear to the next level. Balance breaker, Dreg stated, joining the conversation. Issei raised his hand as he watched the gauntlet materialize. If you don't mind, I'd like to explain this to the boy, since you only know about it from our confrontations. Tiamat just nodded, letting Dreg continue. The balance breaker is not something that allows you to break your limits. It is actually an evolution of the boosted gear, Dreg explained, clearing his throat. That evolution will allow you to manifest a great deal of my power, causing all of your qualities to be greatly enhanced. The problem is, it's immensely difficult to release it the first time. You'll need to reach a certain amount of power, which, to be honest, you still have a long way to go. Issei lowered his head, somewhat dejected by the last part. But that's not the only condition. You must also have a great trigger of negative emotions, along with a small compatibility with my soul. That is, a small compatibility with dragons. Issei and Tiamat looked at the gauntlet in amazement. Dragon compatibility. Dreg began to laugh loudly at Issei's concern, causing Issei to look at him like he was an idiot. The last point you've had since birth, thanks to my soul residing within yours. Then that shouldn't be a condition in the first place, Issei shouted at Dreg's tasteless joke. Inside Issei, Dreg's amused expression changed to a serious one when he heard his words. That's right. That's not a condition, since humans have no compatibility with dragons in the first place, thought the dragon to himself, turning around to look at his soul. His body used to be human, no doubt about it. Dreg narrowed his eyes with great seriousness. But his soul, Dreg remembered the purple flash in the battle against Rainair, and how quickly his boosted gear evolved, even though the power required was still below average. His soul is very strange. It's as if he has a strange connection to our species. Dreg finally bowed his shoulders with a smile. It would be impossible for him to achieve Balance Breaker in just a month of training. But his strange compatibility makes me think he might. That is why I can consider compatibility a condition on this occasion. The dragon concluded his thoughts, waiting with great anxiety to see how events would unfold. In short, Tiamat's words made Issei pay attention to her. To break your limits you need to train, and train. Since you will be staying here this time, I will make sure the training is much more rigorous than the last. Those words caused the chestnut to become instantly serious as a cold sweat ran down his face. Swallowing hard. If the previous training had been too hard, he didn't even want to imagine what this one would be like. And in the end, it turned out to be a living nightmare. Are you all right? Tiamat's question brought Issei back to the present again. You've been staring into my eyes for several minutes. Issei instantly realized that Tiamat's face was closer to his than he remembered, adding the fact that she had also been looking him in the eyes for all that time without saying a word. Yeah, it's just I was thinking about how it all started, Issei replied, getting up with great difficulty, being supported by Tiamat. Is something bothering you? The dragoness consulted, resting Issei's full weight on her shoulder affectionately. The protagonist lowered his gaze instantly, indicating that Tiamat had hit the mark. You know, I've been thinking that I might not be able to beat her. As I surmised, the defeat dealt him more trauma than failing his mistress. Tiamat thought perceptively. What makes you think that? He is a high-class demon who was blessed by fate with his immortality. And I'm the weakest Sekyuute who ever lived. Are you telling me that you weren't blessed by fate? Issei lowered his head even further at Tiamat's question. You consider that you weren't blessed by fate, being that the underdeveloped lizard ended up in your body, having millions and millions of choices. The chestnut raised his gaze slightly, widening his eyes slightly. There is only one other person like you in this vast world, and you would say that fate has no great things in store for you. No matter how weak you are, if you are the Sekyuute, sooner or later you will become a world power. And that can only be achieved thanks to your destiny. Issei looked up with great surprise, seeing Tiamat's serious face curve into a genuine smile. All you need to get there is a little spirit. Tiamat pressed her cheek against his in a very affectionate act, causing a small blush to shoot across Issei's face. And I know very well that you have that spirit. So Tiamat rested her free hand on Issei's hair and ruffled it affectionately. don't waste it. Issei gave a big sigh, then gave her a tired smile. You're right, I just got a little carried away in defeat. Life is not a utopia. Tiamat replied quickly, looking at him piercingly. No matter who you are or how strong you are, there will always be a time in your life when you will suffer, because life is not perfect. And what's really important is not how good most of your life was, but the times when it was a nightmare and you still managed to move on. Tiamat's piercing gaze changed to a big smile that was dedicated solely to Issei, causing a pleasant little shiver to adorn the chestnut's entire body. If you ever hit rock bottom, I'll be sure to be there for you. Just like you helped me when I was at my worst, I swear. Issei could only watch her with a small blush from all the intense emotions the dragoness gave off, and they permeated the bottom of his heart. After a few seconds, she gave him a big smile and broke away from his grip, feeling her strength had mysteriously returned. In that case, I swear too. The chestnut held out his mannequin, causing Tiamat to look at him with some confusion and surprise. Seeing that her now best friend didn't understand the interaction, Issei took her arm gently and slowly pulled it up. If you ever find yourself in a delicate situation, I promise to help you again, and as often as you need it. Issei linked her little finger with Tiamat, causing the dragoness to watch the interaction with confusion, until finally she smiled and tightened the little squeeze even further. Tiamat lowered her gaze with an imperceptible blush as she saw Issei staring at her, with that incredible smile on his face that made her body shake with multiple emotions and incredible feelings. Thank you for making me feel so great. Tiamat transformed the small grip into a much firmer one as she gently took his hand. Issei was visibly surprised by her act, but didn't have time to say or do anything. Are we going to take a bath? Issei blinked twice, then sniffed his armpit and shivered slightly at the smell. Hell yeah, I stink. The young man looked at her with great surprise and suspicion as he saw that Tiamat appeared to be untouched. Hey, why don't you ever end up tired or sweaty? A somewhat mocking smile appeared on Tiamat's face. She started walking, leaving a couple of steps behind Issei. Because you don't make me do it, she replied, with an amused and mocking tone in her words. Hey, a throbbing vein appeared on Issei's forehead, quickly running towards Tiamat, falling over in the process due to all the fatigue returning to his body. Line jump. What do you mean he wasn't at home? Surzech's ever-calm face could not hide the quiver of his eyebrows, indicating his anger. We searched for him all over the city, and no one knows anything about him. Riaz replied, lowering his head in submission. Surzech leaned back in his seat, thinking carefully about what to do. They have to find him. If we don't, our plans may not work. The Demon King stated, thinking carefully. If we don't find him, we can still resort to Plan B. Plan B? Riaz would ask with a raised eyebrow. Plan B is to not mention anything to the Secretary about the engagement, indicating that we're not looking for that. We'll keep it a secret until you get his full attention. And if he asks to cancel the engagement, it would be best to tell him that he can do so after a couple of months. In those months, you'll get close enough to him that he'll start to see marriage as a good idea, Surzech stated with great calm in his words. The Supreme Demon took on a sinister gleam in his eyes all of a sudden, causing Riaz to glare at him. If all else fails, we will have no choice but to resort to Plan C, which would be a shame. Line jump. Tiamat watched in genuine surprise to see Issei standing behind her. Do you plan to bathe near me? Asked the dragoness, who was already naked in the lake, upon seeing that the protagonist was in the same place as her. I was thinking that if you don't mind my presence even a little bit, I think I should think the same. Issei replied somewhat nervously, beginning to take off her clothes. Are you over your embarrassment already after 6 days? Tiamat would ask with a small amused tone in her words, then widen her eyes slightly in shock. His torso, thought the dragoness, seeing that the exercises had begun to show in a big way, and her marked chest and the 4 squares protruding from her abdomen were the proof. Issei continued to take off his clothes, leaving only his boxers. Unbeknownst to him due to the embarrassing situation, Tiamat wandered all over his body with her eyes wide open. I've seen men's bodies before that were much more worked out, but for some reason, Issei's body makes me feel strange. Tiamat averted her gaze with a small blush as she realized she had been looking at him for a long time. Why couldn't I stop looking at him? The dragoness wondered, dipping half of her face into the natural hot springs to hide her blush. Somehow, this very normal situation for her wasn't exactly normal anymore. She was sure it was something she hadn't felt in over 2,000 years, but she didn't know what it was precisely. She only knew that it felt good. Tiamat woke up from her thoughts when Issei stepped into the water, seeing that his face was much less nervous than the first time. It probably wouldn't take him long to get used to bathing next to her, as long as that dense mist still covered most of her body, of course. Transition, 18 days. Come on, keep running, Tiamat commanded, as she watched Issei chase after the dragon dad with the intention of catching him. This had become routine training, as they always received his visits in the morning. Issei finally fell to the ground after running for more than 3 hours. He was not using any power-ups on Tiamat's orders, and for that very reason it looked like he would never be able to catch him. Tiamat slowly approached Issei, watching him seriously. The protagonist rolled onto his back while breathing completely agitated. Let's move on to the next one, were Tiamat's simple words, causing Issei to turn serious and jump to his feet. 800. Issei would be doing some sit-ups, the last exercise before having a little friendly battle with Tiamat. The dragoness watched carefully as Issei's whole body was shaking, but even so her expression didn't seem to waver one bit. "Come on, you're only halfway through," exclaimed Tiamat, then gave her a small smile. Since the day we talked about his defeat, his mentality has strengthened drastically. Now, he not only has in mind to return the favor to his mistress, but he also wants to take the victory against that man at all costs. His smile increased even more as he saw Issei's completely sympathetic expression. "We already have another thing in common, we both love fighting. Though you don't know it yet." 1745. Issei exclaimed, standing on his head, doing completely insane push-ups while maintaining his balance with perfection. Sweat ran down the entire length of his face, while his body trembled from each lowering and raising. Still, he seemed to have no intention of stopping. "Remember, it's 2000 now," Tiamat declared, watching him with great attention, being joined by her 3 neighboring dragons. Issei would be watching with great seriousness as the 3 dragons had surrounded him. His body was visibly trembling, and the large amount of sweat running down his entire body indicated that he was completely exhausted, having just recently finished his daily exercises. Tiamat would be watching him, leaning against the cave entrance with her arms crossed. The male dragon opened his mouth, causing a small blue magic circle to appear in his mouth, followed by a bolt of lightning that shot in Issei's direction. The brown-haired man looked behind him and reacted quickly, moving his body to the side to dodge it. Even so, he had no respite as they all began to attack simultaneously. Issei would materialize his wings to be able to fly and dodge the 3 attacks with great difficulty due to fatigue. He couldn't think of a strategy as the consecutive attacks began to seek him out in the air, forcing him to dodge them all by the skin of his teeth. In fact, the last attack grazed his cheek, causing him to clench his teeth tightly, and he was knocked off balance by fatigue, falling to the ground with a thud. He quickly tried to get to his feet, but his limbs did not respond as he had hoped, causing all 3 attacks to hit him squarely. "That's enough," Tiamat would order, rushing over to Issei with some concern as she saw that he was nothing short of unconsciousness. "I know this is very hard, but I must make sure you take the victory this time," the dragoness would state softly as she stroked his cheek lovingly, beginning to heal him. The dragons looked at each other at the captivating interaction, but didn't comment as they were used to it. After all, they had been coming for more than 2 weeks in a row to visit them. A small smile would become visible on Tiamat's face as she watched Issei doing the one-handed push-ups, beginning to fully master the exercises. Even if the amount increases every day, she's getting less and less tired. This is getting very interesting, Tiamat would think, watching him with a smile. Issei would be doing his daily kicks and punches, but this time he was wearing a large block of ice covering his feet and hands. Movement was much more hampered, but he still managed to keep up with his exercises somewhat normally. Considering that it had only been almost 4 weeks, it was truly amazing. "I wonder how fast and strong his punches and kicks will become in such a short time," Tiamat thought, watching him with a sideways grin as he ate a piece of fruit, denoting his beautiful fangs. Issei would be dodging all of the dragon's attacks in midair with considerable difficulty. They had been going at it for more than 15 minutes already, and it looked like it would soon be over by the completely exhausted expression on his face. The brown-haired man widened his eyes in horror when he saw how a bolt of lightning was inches away from his face, making it impossible to dodge. The impact was heard, only to be followed by Issei falling to the ground with a large wound on his right hand, indicating that he had reacted well enough to block it. Tiamat became alert at this and was about to stop the training, but was visibly surprised when Issei began to struggle up from the ground, while a large amount of stained the ground thanks to the deep cut on his hand. The dragons watched in complete surprise as Issei slowly rose to her feet, then stood in a defensive stance and looked at them with great seriousness. His piercing and reckless gaze does not match the great trembling of his whole body. Finally, Tiamat's surprise turned into a big proud smile as she saw that her future partner would not be taken down easily. "Impressive. I can't think of another word to describe it." The male dragon looked completely shocked as Issei grabbed his head. Not only was he surprised, everyone was open-mouthed, even the chestnut himself. A cutting silence garnished the atmosphere, until Issei raised his free fist and clenched it with great force. The chestnut's great shout made everyone excited to a great extent. Even Tiamat had a sparkle in her eyes that she had never had before. She felt great just watching him progress day after day. It felt great to have him by her side every day, watching him get closer and closer to reaching a new level. She was very proud of his progress, and very happy with his company. "I wish instead of a month, it had been a year," the dragoness thought, looking at him with much affection and longing. Line jump. Tiamat delivered a heavy blow to Issei's abdomen, forcing him to his knees, coughing in pain. "I think it's time to finish. It's already past midnight," the dragoness thought, looking up at the sky. The 3 dragons were watching the friendly fight, nodding off from sleep. "Only 3 days to go," Issei muttered under his breath, causing Tiamat to look at him, though she didn't hear what he said. "I'll make sure I get there," he muttered again, coughing under his breath. His gaze was shadowed, so you couldn't see the myriad of emotions running through his eyes. "She helped me for this whole month, relentlessly. She took care of me and let me sleep at her house for all these days." Issei felt like his entire stomach was churning from the myriad of emotions roaming through his body. Oddly enough, there weren't any negatives. That must be so, because he was thinking about Tiamat. He couldn't find any negative thoughts coming from her. I will make you proud. I will make you see that nothing was in vain. This last Tiamat did hear, watching Issei intently. Before Tiamat could tell him that nothing was in vain, that she enjoyed every day being around him, she heard something that completely confused her. Boost. Her power-ups hadn't reached their limit. The dragoness thought. Boost. This time, Tiamat's eyes widened in shock as she saw a red aura that gave off an immense amount of power completely surround Issei as he slowly raised his gaze. Didrag smiled proudly inside Issei. Augmentations are not only based on the strength of the wearer, but also on their emotions. But this is the first time one of my bearers has managed to get more power-ups through positive emotions. The dragon thought, only to widen his eyes in shock as Issei's aura grew even larger and another boost was heard in the background. It's not, the dragon said to himself, completely anxious about what was happening. Finally, Issei raised his gaze fully and the reddish energy burst even stronger again, creating a huge blizzard around him. Issei clenched his fists tightly, letting the positive emotions fill and dominate him completely. Boost, 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 boost. At this point, the dragons are being covered by the huge blizzard, while Tiamat could only stare at it in great surprise and bewilderment. Boostoo. Just when everything seemed to be over, a small smile appeared on Issei's face. I wonder what smile he'll give me when he hears about my victory. The biggest smile that Tiamat ever gave him appeared in his mind. That smile had been the first of all the smiles she had given him. That beautiful smile, it came from the fact that he decided to stay with her so as not to leave her alone. That simple smile, that simple memory, was the trigger. Welsh Dragon, Balance Breaker. A strong reddish light surrounded Issei completely, making his figure impossible to make out. The dragons shielded their eyes from the blinding light, while Tiamat could only watch in complete stupefaction. When the light finally dissipated, the dragon's jaws dropped to the ground as they saw crimson armor covering him completely, along with green jewels on different parts of his armor. The power he radiated was so powerful and pure that a thin crimson aura surrounded him with great intensity. A small deafening sound could even be heard coming from it. Issei dematerialized his helmet, showing a completely serene and calm expression. In fact, Tiamat was looking at him with that same expression. They looked so professional, as they didn't even look surprised at what happened. But, after a few seconds of staring at each other like that, they both started waving their hands around trying to gesture words, as if they were children entering a toy store for the first time. I can't believe it, they themselves are the most surprised, thought the male dragon with a smile as he watched the two's reaction, which looked like it would last for several more minutes. I never thought I could see Tiamat acting like that, the mother dragon declared, causing the other two to nod instantly. It's impressive to see how Issei has the power to make her so expressive. No one would believe that dragoness in front of us is the brooding, murderous dragon queen who prowled for millennia, added the male dragon, watching the interaction with an amused smile on his face. Good, Tiamat said to herself, studying the crimson armor closely. She fixed her gaze on Issei's eyes, causing the brown-haired man to glare at her. Let's have a little spar with this new power you've acquired, the dragoness commented, getting into a combat pose. I'll use exactly the same amount of power I've been using so far so you can see the difference. Issei merely nodded at her words, mimicking Tiamat's pose. Tiamat lunged at Issei without warning, causing the brown-haired man to grit his teeth slightly. Still, he was completely surprised when his teacher's movements were easily followed with his eyes. Consequently, Issei blocked the first punch in its tracks, causing a great blizzard to rise up around the place. The chestnut still had a surprised look on his face, while Tiamat gave him a bold little smile after what he witnessed. Tiamat jumped back a little and continued to throw various punches and kicks that Issei blocked or dodged without much difficulty. What is this? The movements that I could barely see before now seem normal to me, Issei thought with some surprise, as his eyes followed the attacks without any trouble, at the same time as his body responded with a great lightness, blocking and dodging them. It's not just that, thought the young man, catching a kick that went straight for his chest, causing the flurry of small blizzards caused by the speed to end with a bang. I can also parry punches without the slightest problem, being that they seemed almost unstoppable to me before a somewhat macabre grin appeared on Issei's face, causing Tiamat to look at him quizzically. In that case, Issei further tightened his grip on Tiamat's foot, causing Tiamat's eyes to widen slightly. Following that, Issei attempted to kick her, but the dragon defended her face with her forearm, blocking the attack without any trouble. After that collision, Issei reacted quickly and tried to punch her in the face. Seeing this, a small smirk shot across Tiamat's face. Does he really think he can reach me? He thought, breaking Issei's grip with great ease, using Issei's hand as momentum, somersaulting high into the air and landing with his back to him, causing his opponent to blink in surprise. Even so, he could not control the sheer amount of force he used in the blow, so he was propelled by his own attack. Tiamat looked over his shoulder with a slightly amused expression as he watched Issei stagger forward, about to fall. Finally, the chestnut continued to lurch forward as he screamed. His scream got even louder as he saw Tiamat's butt getting closer and closer to his face. A small clatter was heard, only to be followed after a short second by a scream. HMP. Tiamat's muffled, pleasured scream was heard throughout the vicinity as Issei's fist sank deep into her voluptuous ass. Issei fell to the ground after that and immediately bowed deeply to her. "I'm sorry," she cried out, raising her gaze to denote the large blush on her face. He had seen a lot of dirty things during his life, so he knew a scream from a moan quite easily. "It's okay," Tiamat quickly replied, covering her butt and quickly turning around, causing Issei to see a blush on her face for the first time. It was an accident, and Tiamat averted her gaze in embarrassment. "It's not your fault that place is so sensitive," she muttered under her breath, but it would still be audible enough for Issei to hear her. The awkward moment didn't last long, as Issei's armor shattered into 1,000 pieces. "What?" Issei wondered aloud, immediately standing up and looking down at his body in confusion. "What happened?" asked Tiamat, watching him curiously. Before Issei could answer, he felt his body go limp out of nowhere, causing him to stumble forward. To his luck, Tiamat caught him in a warm embrace. "Are you all right?" the dragoness asked, concern clear in her words. "Yeah, I'm just feeling weak," the chestnut replied, looking down at his hand in confusion. "It's normal." At the sound of Drake's voice, Tiamat and Issei broke off to listen to him carefully. "It's the first time you've come to this form, and the physical exhaustion is overwhelming. From what I see, you'll have to train your physique for a while longer to extend the use of the balance breaker without becoming exhausted." Issei blinked in disbelief. "Extend the duration? But I barely held it for a minute." "That's your limit for the moment. You'll have to get a little stronger and get used to the balance breaker to be able to use it for longer." "How long will it take me?" "You've already achieved the hardest part, but you still don't have enough time to control the balance breaker. I should also tell you that it's not all about brute force. It won't be long before you'll be forced to study your sacred gear to advance further." "Further advancement?" Issei wondered curiously. "This is bad." Tiamat's words interrupted Drake's response. "With only a minute of use, it will be very difficult for you to defeat an opponent with such a skill." The dragoness held her chin, thinking of a solution. "That can be easily solved." "No." It was Tiamat's simple curt reply that instantly silenced Drake. Issei would just stare at her in awe at her imposing expression. Finally, the dragoness let out a heavy sigh of exhaustion. "We'll think of something tomorrow. For now, let's go to sleep, it's already late." Issei just nodded with a smile, agreeing with the dragoness. Line jump. Issei was lying on the makeshift bed. Tiamat was sleeping next to him as usual, hugging him tightly, as if she was afraid he would disappear from one second to the next. Issei was gently stroking the dragoness' head that was resting on his chest. Tiamat had a small smile on her face, indicating that she was sleeping with great serenity. "Can't you sleep, mate?" "No," Issei replied quietly, while still watching the tender and beautiful expression the woman held. The chestnut brown smile was replaced by a serious expression. "I can't stop thinking about today." Even Tiamat said it, it will be very difficult to beat him in such a short time. A small, somewhat awkward silence was created in the cave, which luckily managed to be stifled thanks to Tiamat's cute expression and the caresses Issei was giving her. "Listen to me well, companion. There is a way to increase the duration." Hearing Drake's words, Issei stopped his caresses instantly. "Is that what Tiamat forbade you?" "It is. She has valid reasons for doing so, as it is a very dangerous and painful procedure." "Tell me more." "First of all, I want you to be clear about the words very dangerous. It's not a joke, it can kill you. You wouldn't be talking to me about this if it could kill me, so get to the point." "As usual, you don't mince words," the dragon declared with a proud tone in his words. "I'll only warn you one more time, are you sure?" Issei looked at Tiamat with a hint of doubt in his gaze. "I don't want to worry you, but there is no other way for me to get stronger in such a short time." "I knew you'd answer that," Drake stated with a satisfied tone in his words, indicating his approval towards his bearer's attitude. "We should move some distance away from the cave so I don't hear your screams." Hearing the last part, Issei swallowed hard at the idea. But he finally nodded. Lifting her hand from Tiamat's head, the woman abandoned her small smile and quickly caught Issei's hand, placing it on her head again. Seeing this, a smile broke out on Issei's face. "Don't worry, I promise to be back soon," he commented quietly, stepping away more carefully than the previous time, unnoticed by the dragoness this time. Line jump. Tiamat woke with a start as she felt strange, as if something was missing. "Issei?" the dragoness asked, looking around the entire cave, to see that it was completely empty. Her gaze finally settled on the exit, causing her eyes to widen in horror when she saw a large crimson glow. Though Tiamat thought in terror, desperately getting up and disappearing in less than a jiffy because of her monstrous speed. She flew through all the trees with absurd speed, arriving at Issei in less than a second. "Issei!" she shouted loudly, observing how his right arm was completely covered in while he gasped in a completely abnormal way. Issei raised his gaze to give her a pained smile. "Tiamat, I'm sorry to wake you." By that intense glow before he could realize it, the dragoness had hugged him tightly, causing the brown to be surprised by the sudden gesture. "I told you not to do that." The dragoness reprimanded him, cupping her face into Issei's neck. Issei responded to the hug, feeling Tiamat cling to him even tighter after that action. "I'm sorry, but it was the only way." The moment didn't last long, as Tiamat abruptly pulled away, grabbing the arm where Drake's soul, or what was left of his soul, was housed. "You're a stupid asshole, UFC king underdeveloped lizard idiot," the dragoness shouted with great rage, as she shook Issei's bleeding hand hard. "Even when we first met I wasn't this angry," Issei thought with her eyes rolling. after hearing the sheer amount of bad words coming from such beautiful lips. Calm down, you crazy bitch. I only replaced Issei's arm with a dragon's. I would never replace her whole body, knowing the obvious result. Drake shouted. Again, Issei rolled his eyes at the sound of his partner's voice. He was also sure he had never heard him so angry. I don't care. You know damn well that with just one body part replaced, he could have died, shouted Tiamat, shaking his arm even harder. Do you really think I would have done that, at such great risk? Tiamat stopped instantly, completely taken aback by what Drake had said and the piercing tone he had used. I'm inside him, I've been with him the longest, and I understand sacred gear the most out of the three of us, even if my knowledge is basic. Those 3 reasons are more than enough to take the risk, knowing the boy's body. Tiamat raised an eyebrow at this. And what does it have to do with anything? The balance breaker takes more training to release, and my partner managed to wake him up early. Having the records of the upgrades he got on the gauntlet with his first fight, there's also something that doesn't fit. After being with him for so long, I noticed that he has a much greater compatibility with dragons than usual. That his arm has not been corroded by the power is proof of that. Tiamat looked rather impressed at the bleeding arm she was holding. It's true he can control dragon power quite well, despite being a demon. Tiamat blinked in confusion. But how is that possible? As I said before, he has a great compatibility with dragons. I mean, his body has nothing to do with it, but his soul does. Another example I could give is when he momentarily acquired the sense of smell of a dragon, tracking your aura the first time he came to the familiar realm, when he had just started to wield the boosted gear. After hearing Drake's explanation, Tiamat let go of his arm as he looked at Issei with slightly widened eyes. She didn't know that her new friend possessed such an affinity with her species. It wasn't a bad thing though, in fact, she was strangely glad that it was so. Drake, there's still something you didn't explain to me, Issei commented, making the dragon listen to him carefully. I know that replacing one arm with another in itself sounds painful, but why are you at such risk of dying? Issei asked with great doubt. As you said before, the power of a dragon is very corrosive to anyone. Tiamat answered for Drake. That's why I didn't want you to do it. Keep in mind that countless people have tried to transform into dragons by various methods. Tiamat looked Issei straight in the eye. They all died. Issei blinked in shock after hearing that. What? I rant. Tiamat raised her gaze to the night sky. Well, not all of them. There was one who survived the procedure. Really? Issei asked, very interested in the subject. Tiamat lowered her gaze, giving him a very small smile. That's right. Although at the moment, he's locked up in a dimensional prison. Then I guess he wasn't a very good one, Issei thought to himself, wondering what a dimensional prison would look like from the inside. Issei snapped out of his thoughts when he felt delicate hands wrap around his waist, only to find himself leaning against Tiamat's back. Anyway, let's go back to bed. Tomorrow I must explain the plan of victory. The dragoness commented with a small smile as she felt Issei's warmth begin to invade her body again. Issei settled onto Tiamat's back and wrapped her arms around her neck. I agree, the protagonist replied, giving a big yawn as she rested her head on Tiamat's shoulder. Seeing this, the dragoness rubbed her cheek affectionately against his, then began to walk calmly. Line jump. Listen to me carefully, Tiamat commanded, standing inside the blankets along with Issei due to the cold that day. Without a doubt, that demon's ability will be very problematic. But it has several weaknesses that are due to a common point, and that point is its species. Tiamat's words disoriented Issei. Being a demon, he possesses many weaknesses that cannot be hidden behind his immortality. For example, divine weapons, divine magic, anything related to God. Tiamat waved her hand dismissively, indicating that the previous points were not very important. The magical reserves. Tiamat stared at him, indicating that that was the point they were going to focus on. From what you told me, this razor guy needs a certain amount of magic to heal his wounds, depending on how big they are. After a whole rather serious explanation, Tiamat finally gives him a small smile. You have to use up all his magic reserves to beat him. You will achieve a victory by knockout or mental breakdown due to the loss of magic. Issei rubbed his hair skeptically. I don't know, it sounds complicated. As far as I remember, Razor had a fair amount of magic. I don't think I can force him to spend it all in such a short amount of time. Issei blinked twice after remembering something important. By the way, how long did the time stretch out, Drake? Bearing in mind that you were very exhausted yesterday, and the transformation of your arm, I'd say about 3 minutes. That should be enough. Tiamat's answer made Issei look at her in surprise. Remember what you said about Razor, that he got upset after receiving your dragon shot. That's because he's never been in a real battle before and must have felt a little scared. From what I understand, Razor participated in several raiding games. That's not a real fight. The dragoness replied seriously. By a real fight, I mean a life-threatening one. You die, or he dies. Raiding games are nothing but games. It's more than obvious that guy didn't have any real confrontation in his life if he got desperate for an attack that was far from killing him thanks to his immortality. Issei nodded seriously. I get it, you want me to use that card to my advantage, don't you? That's right, Tiamat replied with satisfaction that her apprentice had caught on quickly. To accomplish that, you have to plant the seed of despair, both in his mind and in his heart. For that Tiamat stood up abruptly, her gaze would turn to an icy one as a very imposing and terrifying aura surrounded her completely, causing Issei to panic a little. The physical damage you implement must be on par with his psychological damage. Make sure you have a threatening posture at all times. If you have to say a few words, say just enough and necessary to sink him. Got it? Issei nodded repeatedly with a bit of fear at the sight of Tiamat's menacing figure. In that case his countenance changed to his usual typical one. That's all. If you make sure to use the combat techniques you learned with me, your victory is assured. The dragoness finished, planting her hands on her hips with great pride. Issei looked down at her hand seriously. I understand were the protagonist's simple words as her hand turned into a fist. Tiamat watched this with some interest, as she noticed in her apprentice's eyes a hint of doubt. What bad weather, the dragoness said dismissively, rubbing herself from the cold. She watched the snow fall with a grim look on her face. Issei picked up on this right away, so he decided to ask her, "Don't you get along with the snow?" The young man encircled Tiamat in the warm blankets, causing the dragoness to let out a small sigh of relief as she took advantage of the situation to cling to his body. It's a personal thing. It doesn't bring back good memories. Tiamat clung to Issei's arm, then glared at him. Perhaps this day will be lost to time. Issei rubbed his cheek with a smile at what he heard. In fact, I was thinking of putting training aside these last 2 days. I've already achieved the goal I wanted to reach, and I'd really like to spend time with you. Would you like to? Issei was surprised when he felt Tiamat wrap her arms around him. If that hadn't served as an answer, the sweet smile and force on Tiamat's face was enough to clear it up. I guess I can take that as a yes, Issei commented, returning her smile. Line jump. Issei fell resoundingly to the ground when he received a heavy snowball to the face. Damn, the protagonist exclaimed, jumping to his feet with a mischievous grin on his face. The little dragon just laughed at his reaction as he dodged a barrage of snowballs, courtesy of Issei. That pitched battle ended abruptly when they both received a heavy snowball to the face, causing them both to look to where the attack came from. The dragon's father was juggling more than 30 balls at the same time. Seeing this, they both widened their eyes, completely shocked. Retreat, Issei shouted, being followed by the dragoness shout. They both ran and threw themselves behind the nearest tree to dodge the rain of snow that rained down on them. Tiamat was watching everything from inside the cave along with the dragon's mother. She was watching attentively all the events. After a few seconds, she raised her gaze to the sky to see the snow slowly falling. Ever since Dragonfall happened to me, I see snow differently. Those little flakes that fall slowly until they reach the ground, with that silence that makes them inaudible. A melancholy look crossed Tiamat's eyes as she had a small flashback of her kneeling in a cave as tears fell from her face. She was crying completely silently, thinking about what she had done to deserve all that. She loved him, but that guy only saw her as a trophy. She herself heard that her ex-fiancé had said that no one would marry a woman as crazy and loud as she was, and for that very reason it was very easy to charm her, because the only thing attractive about her was her looks. He said that her ass and S were the only redeemable things she had, and for that very reason no one would fall in love with her. She was a monster among dragons, someone who didn't deserve to have such overwhelming power as she did. A monster, monster, those words repeated incessantly in his head, making his chest burn with pain, and his mind go completely blank due to the enormous emptiness he felt in his stomach, to the point of comparing himself to a huge black hole, where only negative emotions could fit. They always remind me of my tears the only time I ever cried. A long time has passed since then, but I can't forget how broken I was that day. Tiamat closed her eyes as a snowflake fell on her nose. It was snowing that day too, exactly as calmly as it is now. Tiamat lowered her gaze, to watch with a small smile as Issei was having the time of his life. But now it's different. She raised her gaze again, watching with a joyful gleam in her eyes as the snowflakes slowly fell, while Issei's voice and the roars of dragons decorated the atmosphere. Now when snow falls, it makes everything around me feel so warm, so familiar, so pleasant. I don't know why, but I don't care to know either. I just want to enjoy this moment. I want to enjoy it with them, I want to enjoy it with him. Just as she finished her thought, a snowball hit her face. Tiamat slowly took off the snowball with a friendless look on her face, to see how Issei was playing with a snowball. Want to play? Issei asked, then sharpened his smile. Rather, do you want revenge? After hearing Issei's words, a predatory smile decorated Tiamat's face, making the young man immediately alert. Tiamat soon emerged from the cave, creating a massive amount of snowballs with her magical affinity, causing Issei to blink in disbelief. He quickly moved behind a tree, covering his face as he heard a huge flock of snowballs hit the trunk. When he heard no more, he emerged from his hiding place, without first preparing a few snowballs. Issei watched with some surprise as Tiamat was relatively close to their position, so they both began to throw a large number of snowballs at each other, though much more gently than last time as they ran in a circle around each other, until finally it happened. Ahaha! Issei stopped dead in his tracks when he heard Tiamat's laughter. She had a huge smile on her face as she laughed in an angelic voice. Issei couldn't help but blush when he heard that melodious laugh, along with the beautiful smile that decorated her face. The whole approach gave her face a completely precious glow, which did not go unnoticed by him. True, I'd heard her laugh before, but that case was a bit too punctual. Cough, cough, making fun of D-Drag cough, corf. Instead, now she was laughing just because she was playing snowballs. As Issei was distracted, he received a heavy snowball to the face courtesy of Tiamat, causing him to stagger backwards. Tiamat's expression quickly changed to a worried one as she saw that Issei was about to fall. "Watch out," the dragoness exclaimed, grabbing his arm in an attempt to keep him upright. Unfortunately, they both fell because of this. Issei felt an extra weight on top of him. That doubt was quickly answered when he felt a warm hand brush the snow off his face, causing a small blush to shoot up his face instantly. Tiamat was on top of him, still with that smile on her face that made her so beautiful. Her face was just inches away from touching his, making him feel the warm, slightly accelerated breath hit his lips. Issei would have continued to stare at her longer had he not caught out of the corner of his eye how an unidentified white object was heading straight for Tiamat's face. "Watch out," Issei exclaimed, grabbing her very firmly by her waist, causing a small blush to decorate Tiamat's face as she felt the man's firm, warm grip. Issei rolled over, receiving the snowball in Tiamat's place, though instead of hitting her face, it hit her shoulder. Still, he had something else to worry about right now. "Thank you," Tiamat declared, feeling like her chest was starting to burn with a huge warmth. But unlike the other time, it was a warmth that was completely cocooning her, and most likely due to how their noses were in contact, along with Issei's grip on her hips, and adding that she was now the one bearing all of Issei's weight on top of her body, and it wasn't bad at all. "No problem," Issei replied, not finding the strength to pull away from Tiamat. For some strange reason, he was incredibly drawn to those beautiful cool light blue eyes that, oddly enough, gave off an enormous amount of comfort and warmth that was directed solely towards him, and it felt incredible. It was as if her gaze was calling out to him. It was telling him that he needed him right now, in this very place. And that vision wasn't far wrong, as Tiamat let him know in a subtle way. "Are you comfortable?" the dragoness asked with an amused tone in her voice, causing a huge blush to shoot up Issei's face, not only because of her words, but also because of how her hands wrapped around Issei's back, enclosing him in a deep embrace and making their torsos much more in contact. All in all, he could feel how her large padded ass were pressing tightly against his chest. Before Issei could reply with a resounding "I'm sorry," the snowball hit him hard in the face, sending him rolling to Tiamat's side. Tiamat looked in the direction of the giggling little dragon, while her parents slapped their faces disapprovingly. The Dragon Queen felt a little strange when Issei pulled away from her body. She wasn't sure what it was about, but if she could explain it with a feeling, it would be disappointment. "Why should I be disappointed?" she thought, frowning slightly. She looked down at the snow to see that her hair was completely strewn across it, causing her to give a small sigh. She would have to shake it out well to make sure there was no snow left in it. "Line jump. I'm finding it harder than usual to find food today," Issei commented with a heavy sigh of exhaustion at the end, observing how the mother dragon was accompanying him in the dark night with some fruits in her hand. Luckily, the snow had stopped, so that made things a little easier. Issei blinked twice as he remembered something extremely important. "Tomorrow is the last day. What should I do?" "What could I do?" Issei wondered as he put his hand to his chin, then looked at the dragon mother carefully. "Wait a minute, you guys are like family, aren't you?" The aforementioned looked at him curiously, nodding. "Does that mean you can also use magic circles to move from place to place?" She nodded again, causing a small smile to break out on Issei's face. "I need to ask you a favor." Hearing his words, the mama dragon watched him carefully. Line jump. In this last month, Tiamat managed to sleep totally August, despite not using her magic to cover herself. All this was thanks to Issei, since her heat gave him an impressive well-being, added to the blankets that surrounded them because they helped even more to capture the heat and smell of Issei. Being a dragon, her nose was very sensitive, so being able to smell Issei meant a lot more than she seemed. Even so, today she felt especially hot. It was kind of strange, since they were in the middle of nowhere, facing a winter that was scorching. In fact, it is for that very reason that she began to wake up. She opened her eyes slowly, and as always, she was snuggled into Issei's body while she had her face colliding with his, her hair scattered all over her mattress, giving her an incredibly pretty appearance. "Wait a second. Mattress." Tiamat poked half of her face above the covers, completely stunned by what she was seeing. It was a room. To be specific, a human habitation. It was full of photos of two people she didn't know, adding to the typical things that were in a double bedroom. She rolled her precious icy blue eyes in all directions, studying the place. She wasn't scared or alert as Issei was right next to her. It took her a few seconds to realize that said bedroom looked suspiciously familiar. "Isn't this the room that was on the first floor where Issei lived?" The woman wondered inwardly, her eyes slightly widening. "How the hell did we get to this place? Have you woken up yet?" Issei stuck her face out of her blanket, giving her a toothy smile. "How did we get here?" the dragon asked quickly, looking at him in genuine surprise. Issei only increased her smile even more after hearing the question. "When you were asleep, we moved to this place thanks to our little friends. I hope you like the surprise. How is it possible that you could move me from one place to another without me noticing?" Issei rubbed her hair with her smile still in force. "I just carried you in my arms." You were so asleep that you didn't realize it, you just murmured something and hugged me tightly. Upon hearing Issei's response, Tiamat hid her face again in her blanket so that she wouldn't see the small blush that had formed on her cheeks. Because Issei looked at her with some confusion due to her attitude, a confusion that was instantly dispelled. Today I plan to fulfill the promise I made you a month ago. Hearing this, Tiamat threw the covers off of her in one swift motion, impressing Issei. Shall we go out to eat? The dragon asked with her typical expression, although the sparkle of emotion that was present in both of her eyes indicated that she was happy. Exactly. I already have the park where we're going. We just need to bring my barbecue, some meat, and that's it. Issei replied with a big smile on her face. Barbecue. The dragon wondered aloud. There is no other device that cooks meat better than a barbecue, Issei exclaimed, holding up her thumb. Seeing this, Tiamat only responded with a small smile on her face. First, you have to prepare, he exclaimed again, jumping up from the bed. The first thing Issei did when she got up was to go to the kitchen and see the cell phone. 40 missed calls. The chestnut wondered incredulously. Who could have called him so many times, considering that his clubmates don't have his number? The answer came instantly. Matsuda, Madohama, Matsuda, Madohama, Matsuda, Madohama, Issei muttered under his breath as he had a blank expression on his face. Finally, he closed his cell phone and took a deep breath. When we meet again, I'll have to come up with a perfect excuse, the protagonist thought, rubbing his head in frustration. Everything is ready. Issei turned to see Tiamat. She had a backpack on her back, and her typical white outfit that was somewhat tight that highlighted her beautiful figure. Then let's not waste any more time, Issei exclaimed excitedly, making Tiamat nod with a small smile. Somehow, Issei had conveyed all of his emotion to her. Or rather, she was just so glad to be able to go out to eat with him and spend some pretty nice and comfortable time alone. Issei felt the same way as Tiamat, although he also had other reasons to be so excited, since he had only done this with his two friends. Doing it with a company as nice and beautiful as Tiamat was added many more points. Line jump. During the journey to buy food, Tiamat looked from one place to another, somewhat impressed. He had never seen the new way of living that humans had, since he had isolated himself for almost 2 millennia. He found it fascinating that each one goes on his own. The structure of the buildings seemed fascinating to him. The cars seemed fascinating to him. Absolutely everything he saw seemed fascinating to him. But, thanks to her neutral and serious personality, those emotions could only be distinguished by Issei himself, who already knew her quite well. They had lived for a month together, after all. Finally, they both arrived at the park that Issei had used for the purpose of training the last time he was there, but now the purpose was completely different. Issei and Tiamat were sitting in the middle of the park, on top of a square blanket that served as a kind of picnic. They were both watching intently as the food was being made. Issei mostly to make sure he didn't ruin anything, while Tiamat couldn't resist the fabulous aroma he gave off from the grill. Issei looked away from her to see Tiamat's completely emotionless face, something very common for her. He admired her for several seconds, being completely stunned by the great beauty that her hair, her face, her eyes, her body, her skin gave off. Our date. When did you take me to various places? You know what, it was so hard to pretend I was having a good time, ha ha ha. It was totally boring. And then you wonder why no woman notices you. Do not make me laugh. Rainer's words hit Issei's head, causing him to lower his head and grit his teeth, feeling a small sting in her chest. Why do I remember that now? He cursed himself at the thought of him. Something wrong. Issei looked up from him quickly upon hearing Tiamat's worried tone. He didn't want her to worry about such trivial matters. Still, he couldn't help but ask the question. Issei looked down at him regretfully and rubbed his cheek. Are you having fun? Tiamat blinked in confusion upon hearing the question. Not hearing an answer, Issei assumed what she was thinking without even looking at her face. Sorry, I made it sound like something cool at the time, but I guess there's nothing special about eating out. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry I got your hopes up for nothing, Issei yelled, squeezing his eyes shut. Who made you think that? Issei abruptly opened his eyes and looked at Tiamat's serious expression. Finally, Issei's shocked expression quickly softened. You realized? He asked, a bit embarrassed, and then lowered his head with some pain that did not go unnoticed by Tiamat. Do you remember that I had a girlfriend? Well, she told me that everything about me was completely boring, and for that very reason women don't like spending time with me. There was a rather awkward silence for Issei, which made him clench her fists from the discomfort of the moment. After a few seconds, a smile spread across Tiamat's face and she took Issei's hand, causing the brunette to look at her in surprise. The dragoness didn't say a word. She only began to slowly approach hers while using the chestnut's arm to encircle her waist, until she finally supported her body on it and affectionately rubbed her cheek against Issei's, making the chestnut blush. Tiamat, Issei asked with her blush still in force, not understanding why Tiamat had supported her face with hers after the affectionate caresses he received from her. Maybe she's right. Women may find you boring. But first and foremost, I'm a dragon, I'm a warrior, I'm a thirsty. Lastly, I'm a woman too, but that's the last priority in everything. The list of things that I am. So, you have to believe me when I tell you that this is a lot of fun. Why? Because we dragons don't usually have these kinds of outings. It's something totally new to me, Tiamat. She snuggled a little closer to Issei, resting her face on the brunette's shoulder so that he could see the sweet smile that was in effect on her face. Something new, which is very nice and fun. I'm sure that's because I'm experiencing it with you. Hearing his explanation, the painful pinch he felt in his chest was replaced by thousands of emotions spinning at a rapid speed in her chest, making him feel very warm in that place. A warmth that overwhelmed him in a good way. Since his body reacted that way, he couldn't help but feel honored by the dragoness. Are you serious? I wouldn't consider myself that important, Issei answered, rubbing his hair in embarrassment, while her face still remained a faint reddish color. You don't need to remember the words of that woman. I can assure you that she has no idea of love if she manipulated you like that. Issei just nodded seriously, agreeing with Tiamat's words. Just focus on what you were thinking earlier, Tiamat concluded, even with her sweet smile and force on his beautiful face. Issei nodded decisively. She wasn't going to let Rainier ruin her day. Okay. The brown-haired man put a hand to his chin, thinking carefully. What was I thinking? Issei snapped his fingers with a smile on her face. Right, I was just admiring your figure. Tiamat blinked in slight surprise as a blush shot across his face. You have the great beauty that comes from your hair, your face, your eyes, your body, your skin, your smile, your attitude, your way of being. Basically, your entire body and personality fit perfectly, making you the most beautiful woman I have ever met. When she finished her speech, Issei stirred slightly when she felt how Tiamat's ass pressed tightly against the side of her torso, feeling how her body was much closer to his while she received a strong hug from him. Her waist. When he tried to see Tiamat's face, he found that she had buried her face in the small cavity between the chestnut's neck and shoulder. Don't you like it when they talk about her appearance? Issei wondered with a raised eyebrow, not knowing that the dragon's reaction was due to her heart pounding, followed by great warmth filling the pit of her stomach and her chest, making her body a mess of heat. Feelings right now that even his mind couldn't fully process, and all that was generated just by a few simple words. Oh, the meat, Issei exclaimed, separating from Tiamat. What's happening to me? Tiamat wondered, putting a hand to her chest out of sheer instinct. It's kind of like when I was in love, but now it's much stronger, he thought to himself, taking his other hand to her chest as he looked at Issei, unable to take his eyes off her. Issei's words hit her mind again, making her body shake from the warmth that those emotions so strange to her transmitted to her. A completely yearning sigh escaped from her beautiful lips as she was accompanied by her desire-filled gaze. Luckily for her, Issei was too focused on the meat to listen to her. She continued to look at him throughout, until she finally felt strong enough to ask a question in her mind. I am beautiful. That's right. She found it incredible that someone would tell her that she is beautiful, after the words she heard coming out of her ex-fiancé's mouth so long ago. Line jump. Issei sat in the tub, stretching out his body in pleasure. Although the natural hot springs found in the family kingdom are very comfortable, there is no better place than your own bathtub. Her body was surrounded by a small towel that was responsible for covering her manhood. When she finished washing her hair, Issei slightly widened her eyes as she began to feel various strange things. It was a similar feeling to her when she had discovered her demon powers after reincarnating. Although this time, it was just a strange thing. Do I smell honey? Issei wondered, completely puzzled by the situation. His confusion increased even more when he could smell a rather strong mint smell coming from outside the bathroom. In fact, it was so strong that he felt a small aura being drawn in that direction. Mint. Wait, it's exactly the same as when I saw Tiamat's aura, although now there's also that smell. A slight blush appeared on Issei's face. Wait a minute, why is his presence so close? Issei's response was answered instantly when Tiamat opened the bathroom door. Luckily for her, she wasn't naked. She was wearing her white underwear. She fit her quite well, and it didn't seem like a tight-fitting garment. But because of her voluptuous body, her bra and panties fit her body a little too tightly. Do you mind if I take a bath with you? The dragon asked with her typical serious expression on her face. Issei just nodded with a small smile. It doesn't bother me. Tiamat watched him with a small smile as she saw her attitude change from her. I see that this month has served enough for you to no longer be ashamed to see me half naked. The dragoness commented, sitting on top of Issei to enter the shower because she was very small. Changing the subject, I think my body is undergoing a strange change. Now I can feel your aura and various scents, Issei said, caressing and washing Tiamat's hair, causing the dragoness to close her eyes in satisfaction. Perhaps it was because he was too focused on the new changes he was undergoing, and for that very reason he did not realize that Tiamat's creamy and soft skin was in contact with his. But Tiamat was not exempt from such information. It is a peculiarity of dragons to track other dragons. Only my kind can use said power. This process would sooner or later occur in your body, and most likely it came so early thanks to the fact that now your body has a special arm. Tiamat answered, wrapping her legs around Issei's and resting her back on the protagonist's chest with great satisfaction. Tracking only works if the dragon is using a ridiculous amount of power or if they're relatively close. I see, so dragon powers, Issei commented, imagining how many powers a dragon could have. First the dragon shot, and now this. The young man drifted so long in thought of him that he acted entirely on instinct as he wrapped his hands around Tiamat's abdomen and rested his chin on the head of the woman. Dragoness. A small blush shot across Tiamat's face as he felt the sudden contact, but he didn't bother about it. In fact, quite the opposite. A small smile appeared on his face as he leaned even more into Issei's embrace and joined his hands with the man's in a very affectionate gesture to the point of being loving. He acted so nervous before, and now he seems like a completely different person. Chances are he had problems with perversion before to get so nervous. Another option could be that he's a full-fledged virgin, but we wouldn't be in this position if that were the case. The memory of when Issei accidentally hit his butt flew into his mind, making him look down, feeling how his hips were perfectly positioned in the delicate spot for Issei. I wonder if that perversion would wake up now. Would feeling his member squeeze my butt feel even better than that time? After thinking about that situation, Tiamat couldn't help but squeeze his thighs with great force as she felt a tingle that she hadn't felt for a long time invaded her crotch and inside him. Issei snapped out of his thoughts and started sniffing like a dog. What is that? It smells like lemon. Issei wondered out loud with a raised eyebrow. Hearing Issei's words, Tiamat blinked in disbelief and quickly stopped squeezing his thighs. Smell of lemon? The dragoness asked with confusion. Issei blinked with the same expression as Tiamat. No, I think I got it wrong. I'm still new to this smell thing, he commented, rubbing his hair in embarrassment. I think we should leave now, Tiamat declared, rising from his new favorite seat. This time, I'll make dinner. I'd like to practice the things you've taught me. The dragoness finished, giving her a sidelong look. Issei could see the small smile from her, causing her to get up instantly. In that case, I'll go buy the products from you, Issei commented, getting out of the bathtub quickly and closing the sliding door. Tiamat only stared at the door for a few seconds, until he finally brought his hand to her intimate area, giving it a little squeeze and then raising his hand again. She watched her hand carefully, as if she was searching for something. If you looked at it with the naked eye, you could only see small drops of water. But looking deeper, she could see a strange thin slimy thread connecting her index finger to her middle finger. I can't believe she turned me on for something stupid, the dragoness thought with a slight frown, looking at the fluid with a bit of revulsion. Until she finally dropped the token on her. Wait, when was the last time I got turned on? The dragon wondered in great surprise. Line jump. Tiamat's meal had been a success. Even Issei was very surprised that he could reach a level almost as high as him, being the first time he had worked with said ingredients. Thanks to that, Issei could see a huge grateful smile from the dragoness, who indicated how grateful she was for her words. Still, all good things always come to an end. For the first time in a month, the two of them sleep separately, since it was not necessary to sleep together since the climate in the residence was perfect. Issei slept in his usual bed, while Tiamat borrowed his parents' bedroom. After spending a whole month sleeping with Issei, it was quite difficult for her to fall asleep in such a big bed. She just felt empty, and that feeling of emptiness is what made him have nightmares. I don't know what the hell you're thinking, but you better stop following me. You misunderstood things from the beginning. I only helped you because you hurt me. I'm warning you, you better not follow me anymore. I have a woman by my side. I'm not going to cheat on her, especially if it's someone like you. This is goodbye, and I hope I never see your face again, crazy. Don't make me regret saving you even more. Goodbye. Those were Drake's words that were engraved on the ground as a farewell message, totally befitting of her pedantic attitude when she was still alive. Those words were not only engraved on the earth, but also in the heart of Tiamat. She remembered those words in her dream, and she could only scream when she saw how a crimson dragon was flying high above. She didn't know why, but her wings didn't work, didn't respond to her. She couldn't reach it. After that day, she was sure that love was a term that should stay out of her life forever. First, someone who cheats on her, and then someone who abandons her. After that, they kill her mother and all of her friends in the war, except for Tannen. That emptiness that she had in her heart only increased to a great extent. She knew that she was to blame for not having been there for them, but the hatred that she felt towards Drake at that moment blinded her completely, and she simply blamed it on the celestial dragon. All her misfortunes were due to that foolish dragon. Without realizing it, Tiamat woke up and gave a great cry. He quickly looked around to see that she was in Issei's parents' room. Her heavy breathing and sweating were clear arguments of what she had been dreaming that night. She put both hands to her abdomen in an attempt to stop that agonizing emptiness that she felt in the pit of her stomach, which was so strong that it gave her the impression that her insides were going to tear into 1,000 different pieces. It was a completely unbearable feeling. Even so, the serious look continued to be in force on Tiamat's face. No matter what she dreamed, she had sworn that she would never cry again, and she would swallow all those horrible feelings to keep her promise. In any case, her impassive face was torn apart by the melancholic look that graced her beautiful light blue eyes, which were now being consumed by sadness. Still, she wouldn't cry. Tiamat. Issei burst into the room, completely alarmed after hearing Tiamat scream. The dragoness was in her underwear, but she didn't care in the slightest. What mattered to her at this moment was the agitation that her best friend had, added to the profuse sweating and the look full of sadness that adorned her face. He quickly went to her and sat on the edge of her bed, looking at her with great concern. What happened? Tiamat didn't answer her question. She simply hugged him tightly, causing the brunette to widen her eyes in surprise. Still, it didn't take me long to hug him back. Issei's embrace was so warm and strong that he began to absorb all the negative feelings from Tiamat's body. Quickly, that heartbreaking feeling of emptiness had transformed into a warm and rather cute feeling. He felt great, and she didn't understand how Issei had managed to cure her discomfort so quickly. "I'll sleep with you today. If you want, of course," Issei commented, stroking her hair to reassure her even more. Hearing those words, Tiamat hugged Issei even more tightly, burying her face in the brown chest while she nodded. Finally, they both went to bed in their underwear. Neither of them cared about that detail, they just wanted to feel comfortable with each other. Sleep without any problems. After several minutes, Issei managed to fall asleep, still holding a firm hug on Tiamat's body. The dragoness just watched him in silence for several seconds, feeling how her body was completely connected to his as usual, although this time with much less clothing. Still, she had her mind working on other things. "As I said before, you are a dragon of light." Tiamat delicately positioned her hand on Issei's cheek. A smile full of love and affection adorned Tiamat's face for the first time, while she did not take her eyes off her. "You are my dragon of light, because you managed to light up my world in just 1 month. When I was so depressed and so hurt, completely devastated by pain, you came to lift me up. When I am with you, I feel like my head smells miles high. When I was a puzzle, you came to put me back together." Tiamat joined her nose with Issei's, while he began to rub her cheek with caresses full of love. "As you said when we first met, life is a drink, and love is a drug. I had taken the wrong ones and was completely devastated, but you offered me the right ones in those first 3 days, and now I have known enough. You covered me with your beautiful white wings when I was so depressed." Tiamat closed her eyes deeply and brought her body closer to Issei's. Their lips were practically touching by that action. "You make me feel so drunk and high. So high, so high. I promise that I will help you in any way possible. Not only for helping me and showing me a better way, but also for allowing me to feel what a love is so healthy and true." Just when he was about to seal his lips with Issei's, memories flooded his head. "No one will love her. She is a crazy, deranged woman that the only good things she has are her ass and her butt. Don't come near me again. Goodbye." She abruptly separated her face from Issei's, having a somewhat sad look on her face. "No, you've helped me so much. You've become my best friend, and I wouldn't want us to part just because of my feelings." She deeply closed her eyes as a small smile spread across her face. "It's okay like that." She thought that, but a voice inside her constantly repeated, "How long is he going to be fine like this?" Although that little voice in her mind was tormenting her, it wasn't loud enough for her not to sleep with a small smile on her face. After everything she had lived through, having the man she loved by her side, someone as good as Issei, she didn't care if they didn't have that intimate relationship that she wanted so much right now. She just wanted to have him by her side and keep laughing with him. That's all she wanted. She wanted to be together with the light dragon of hers. Line jump. Hayadu Hayadu. Hearing an unfamiliar voice, they both sat up in bed quickly. Tiamat covered Issei, while threatening an outstretched hand towards the albino woman. Grafia noted how the two were in their underwear, though it didn't seem to affect her. "Sorry to interrupt, but it's almost time." "Oh, it's the servant woman," Issei exclaimed, recognizing the newcomer. It didn't take long for her to blush, as she finally realized she was in her underwear, due to the woman's words. "My name is Grafia, Mr. Hayaudu," the albino would comment, giving a small bow. "I'll be waiting for you outside the room. Don't forget to bring the pamphlet I gave you the first time we met." Issei just nodded, still embarrassed by the situation he found himself in. Finally, both Issei and Tiamat got dressed without saying a word. The tension in the air from nerves was almost palpable. "I guess I'll be going now," Issei commented, tucking the pamphlet into his trousers. Tiamat couldn't believe that he always wore his academy attire for everything, but this was no time to question the reason for that action. "Do you have something to say to me before you leave?" Tiamat asked, crossing her arms as she saw the serious, indecisive look in Issei's eyes, something rarely seen in him. Issei lowered his head with a hint of regret, while he raised his head with a nervous smile. "Do you think I can stop Razor with just 3 minutes?" Tiamat turned her back to him, looking at the window seriously as she still stood with her arms folded. "Taking down an enemy who possesses such an ability will be very difficult with your current level," the dragoness replied, causing Issei to lower her head sadly. "But," Issei looked up again in surprise, only to see Tiamat turn around to give him a big smile. "I believe in you," she finished, placing a hand on his shoulder to comfort him. Issei's surprise was replaced by a small smile. "What am I worrying about?" Issei wondered aloud, walking towards the door. He paused as he grabbed the doorknob to give Tiamat one last look. "I promise not to let you down," he exclaimed with a big grin between his teeth. Tiamat smiled back, giving him final parting words. "Good luck." Line jump. Stop. Issei's shout made everyone turn around, looking with great surprise at the boy who had appeared by kicking the door hard, practically kicking it off with one blow. His gauntlet was active, glaring at the fiancés who had yet to formalize their vows. The Gremory retinue smiled at this, knowing that it would come at some point. Rias could only watch in shock, while Razor seemed to begin to get angry at what was happening at his wedding. "What is the meaning of this?" Razor shouted, pointing at his subordinates. "What are you waiting for? Cut the nuisance out." Razor looked at his entourage with great surprise as he didn't move from his seat, causing him to grit his teeth. "Are you challenging me?" "It's not that, Razor." Razor watched as the Demon King positioned his hand on top of his shoulder. "What is the meaning of this, Sirzech? Have you already forgotten that anyone could break into the wedding?" Serzech questioned, his condescending smile ever present on his face. Razor blinked in surprise, only to have him start to laugh cautiously and finally burst out laughing. Even the nobles didn't have the guts to barge into this wedding, and you're telling me that stupid brat will do it. You can tell he's a complete fool, Razor exclaimed, finally finishing laughing. Brother, Riaz exclaimed, being stopped by Razor. Very well. You will be my last flame before I become a married man. Just be warned, I won't be as benevolent as last time. You did interrupt my wedding, after all, Razor commented with a smirk of superiority on his face, causing Issei to smile inwardly. First part of the plan successful. The battle will take place on one of the official rating game stages. You can use anything you have to your advantage, as long as it is no more than 2 items. The fight will end when the opponent is knocked unconscious, surrenders, or dies. Razor laughed at Serzech's words. I don't need items to polish the floor with a low-class demon. Issei walked towards the stairs until he stood in front of Razor. Same here, he commented with a small smile, making Razor visibly annoyed by this. Was he calling him a low-class demon? Was he? Wait, Issei, exclaimed Riaz with great concern, causing the aforementioned to give him a glare. Don't worry, President. I'll be done with this in 3 minutes. After saying those words, both Razor and Issei disappeared through a magic circle created by the Demon King. As soon as they disappeared, Riaz's worried look twisted into a satisfied smile as he watched his brother. Good job, Serzech murmured, positioning his hand on top of his sister's head, causing Riaz's smile to grow. I can't wait to see how those 2 idiots put on a great show for us. I just hope that show isn't ruined by another Razor victory. Riaz thought. Line jump. Issei looked around to see that he was standing on a huge piece of land that looked like a chessboard, though the pieces were spread out and many of them were in terrible condition. He quickly came into focus when he saw Razor appear a few feet away from him. Issei met his gaze instantly. For starters, promotion, bishop. A huge bishop piece appeared in front of him, disappearing in an instant. Razor watched him with a raised eyebrow. Are you a fool? Do you know well that promotion to queen strengthens all your stats, while bishop only improves your power and magic reserves? A small smile broke out on Issei's face. Yes, I know very well that queen promotion can grant you other benefits, but the power is distributed. The bishop, on the other hand, only concentrates on anything to do with magic. Razor gritted his teeth slightly as he listened to her explanation. Are you saying you only need to improve your magic to beat me? Issei replied with a bold grin on his face, making Razor start to get really annoyed. Are you ready to begin? The Demon King's voice echoed in place, causing them both to nod. Then begin. Razor clenched his fists tightly and shouted with great force, causing a small blizzard to rise around him. Soon he was surrounded by a thin yellow aura that gave off power. What do you think, brat? When I said I wouldn't have benevolence, I meant I would use all my power from the start. Well, Lord Razor plans to use all his power. Don't you think he's overreacting? He's fighting a low-class demon. He'll sweep the floor with it in less than 10 seconds, I'm sure. All the voices that could be heard only made Razor's smug grin increase even more. Don't worry, I'll make sure to control myself so you don't end up dying. Issei was just looking at him seriously, causing Razor to raise an eyebrow. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue. A smile broke out on Issei's face. Are you done? Because I'd like to go in with all my power too. Razor got a little twitch of his eyebrow. Do whatever you want. Totally, everything you do will be completely in vain. Issei clenched his fist tightly as he gave him one last mocking look. Such confidence, how easy will it be to take her down? Issei's gaze completely transformed to a perfectly composed one. Razor heard Issei's fists clench even tighter, making him pay real attention to her. Nothing I do will do. Surely he's a reincarnated demon if he thinks he can take on someone like the great Razor. He's an idiot. The good thing is, he'll get what he deserves, and he'll finally understand not to get involved in such important things. For the moment, let's see what a ridiculous thing he's about to do. Start the countdown, partner. Everyone in the audience was surprised to hear D-Drag's voice. Issei stretched his arms towards the ground with great force and finished with a huge shout to the sky. OHHAHHH. Razor was quick to cover his face from the huge blizzard that had been generated as he watched in complete amazement as a crimson aura completely surrounded Issei's body. The serious gaze of the protagonist was easily distinguishable through the huge whirlwind and the red aura that had been generated because of him. His eyes took on a green color for a second. His left foot flickered crimson, revealing a strong red armor in its place. Next to change was his head, which was covered by a crimson helmet. Then, his arms were also covered by the same armor. Before the party ended, his legs were completely surrounded by the crimson armor, causing the huge blizzard around him to intensify a little more. To end the show, a gem appeared in the middle of his chest, then flashed green and materialized the entire armor in his torso sector, ending the transformation and causing a huge red flash to completely blind Razor, along with the huge blizzard that had intensified even more, if that was possible. The audience was watching the screen that was completely red from the dense aura, causing their jaws to tremble at what they were witnessing. Without warning, the huge crimson glow dissipated along with the blizzard, causing Razor to finally catch a glimpse of Issei. When he saw her figure, his eyes could do nothing but tremble with shock. Welsh Dragon, Balance Breaker. Balance Breaker, Riaz exclaimed, shouted, completely shocked by what she was witnessing. Serzech just smiled sideways at his sister's reaction. This is better than I expected, the Demon King thought, a mysterious smile on his face as he stared at the Red Dragon Emperor. Razor could only continue to stare at him without being able to say a word. He was completely transfixed by what was happening in front of him. The threatening, suffocating crimson aura Issei was giving off didn't help either. Issei's helmet dematerialized, giving him a look that was identical to Tiamat's when she was angry or trying to assert herself. He had learned very well from his master. All Razor could think of was a forced smile. All that fuss just to put on that armor, the blonde commented, moving into an attack stance. You'd better put your helmet back on. He would add at last, his look much more serious than usual. He didn't know why, but that suffocating aura, along with Issei's stare, was putting him in a very bad mood, so he wasn't going to hold back in the slightest. A small smile broke out on Issei's face. The helmet. I won't need that to beat you. Hearing those words, Razor clenched his teeth tightly and trembled with anger. Tisk, have it your way, then don't reproach me when I knock your head off, shouted Razor fiercely, spreading his phoenix wings to lunge at Issei. Razor moved like a flash of light to where his foe stood, delivering a huge punch to Issei's face. Oh, at least, that's what everyone expected. What? Razor thought, blinking in complete shock as he saw how his fist had hit the air, as Issei had tilted his head to the side to dodge it, seemingly with great ease. Issei's tempered, piercing, and serious expression only made this fact annoy Razor even more. Issei jumped back a little and began to fly away, crossing his arms while still suffocating him with his gaze and aura. Razor just gritted his teeth hard and followed him swiftly, making numerous attacks that were aimed at the chestnut's face with impressive speed. Issei dodged all the blows with ease, swinging his body and ducking back and forth in the air, performing a great display of impressive movements, as if he were dancing. All Razor could do was grit his teeth more and more as he watched Issei dodge all his attacks, with his arms crossed and that cursed look still on his face. After several seconds with the same result, Razor decided to break away from him and tried to deliver a strong downward side kick that would be impossible to dodge, because if Issei tried it he would break him in half. Or so he thought. A great roar was heard as Issei parried the kick that was heading straight for his cheek with his forearm. It was a completely successful block, as his armor didn't even flinch from the impact. Razor could only stare at him in disbelief, unable to understand what was going on. But you only started 2 months ago. How were you able to parry and dodge my attacks? Issei merely remained silent, knocking Razor's leg off of him with a sharp movement of his arm, causing the phoenix to be forced to compose himself. Even so, he had no time to rest, as a strong punch was fired at his face, which he managed to dodge by the skin of his teeth by dodging to the side. Unbeknownst to the audience, the fight quickly turned in Issei's favor in less than a second, as he was throwing paws and punches left and right at Razor's face that were miraculously being dodged. Razor gave a small frustrated yelp as he saw an opportunity to counterattack, but it was nullified by Issei as his fist crashed hard into his own, causing both attacks to cancel each other out and create a very small shockwave at the center of the impact. Again, without anyone understanding anything, Razor and Issei began to collide all their punches, paws, and knees, creating small shockwaves throughout the arena due to how fast they were moving. What's going on? I can see them in a blur because of the speed. They're colliding all their attacks, canceling each other out. It's impressive. How is it that a low-class demon can match the attack strength and speed of a high-class demon? I don't know, but I must admit it's impressive. Surzich just laughed at the comments. Yes, evenly matched. Riaz could only watch the shockwaves with wide eyes, as could his entire entourage. They couldn't believe that Issei could be dealing with such a strong enemy, from their point of view. I don't get it. How can you keep up? Razor asked, shouted, at the end of his tether. He couldn't believe that a low-class demon was standing up to him. Issei looked him straight in the eyes, causing Razor to widen his own slightly from the look his opponent had held throughout the fight. Your movements are very slow and weak, so it's very easy to match them. Hearing Issei's explanation, Razor widened his eyes in great fury. His movements reached an even greater speed, as did his strength. Seeing the drastic change, Issei bent his back backwards to dodge a punch that was headed for his face. Razor appeared in front of him, clenching his fist tightly. Try to match this, he shouted with great force, delivering a hard punch to Issei's face that shook absolutely everything around him for a second. The protagonist's face was forced to turn sideways by the inertia produced from the blow, his eyes covered by his hair. The thirsty grin on Razor's face indicated how great it felt to land that blow. Without warning, yet another tremor was heard, sounding even louder than the last. Razor's smile faded instantly, and he slowly lowered his gaze to see Issei had pulled himself together without him even noticing, delivering a heavy blow to his abdomen that went all the way through him. Razor could only open his bleeding mouth in disbelief as he trembled in pain. He tried to fix the situation quickly, punching Issei in the face. Yet, he couldn't even finish raising his arm when Issei had already landed a huge punch to his jaw that sent him flying to the edge of the arena, crashing hard into the wall, and sending the already battered piece of horse completely crashing down on top of him. Issei merely lowered his fist and began to slowly advance towards Razor, for he knew that this was not over yet. A huge explosion of flames was released on the spot as an orange magic circle appeared above the rubble. When the smoke and dust cleared, Razor could be seen standing there, breathing heavily. His body was already healing at an enormous speed, but he still couldn't help staggering to his knees on the ground as he began to cry out in silent pain. Those 2 blows had left him with no stomach, half of his spine missing, and his jaw shattered. All in all, it was very painful. I don't understand. I swept the floor with him last time. How could he get so much better in such a short time? He thought with great anger and frustration. The accumulation of such emotions was so great that they had already completely flooded his mind, and his eyes showed it clearly. I don't care if you are the Securiute, I will kill you for this humiliation. He finished his thoughts, watching with great hatred as Issei stood a couple of feet away from him. Razor's eyes grew wide as Issei's figure became a blur to his eyes. He instinctively rolled to the side to dodge the kick that went straight for his chin. Still lying on the ground, Razor looked down at him, gritting his teeth tightly as he trembled in disbelief. Razor wasted no time and quickly got up to try and land a few kicks that went straight for Issei's face, but Issei himself blocked them with his forearm without flinching a bit. After a few seconds of the same, Issei bent his leg backwards and charged with all his might, letting out a scream at the end when he landed a hard kick to Razor's face that made him spit out a large amount of. If that wasn't enough, Razor ended up swallowing a large amount of the ground as he was dragged several meters by the momentum of the blow, leaving a line of destruction in his wake. Issei pulled himself together and looked at him carefully. Razor began to pick himself up from the ground with considerable difficulty as a large amount of fire surrounded his face, which helped him heal after a second. The Phoenix finished pulling himself together without much trouble, though his slightly ragged breathing and hate-filled gaze indicated that he was mentally unstable. "This is over," shouted Razor with great force, rising into the air and raising his right hand in Issei's direction, causing a small ball of fire to begin to be created in his hand. Within seconds, 3 magic circles of significant size were created in front of his hand. Murmurs began to rise in the audience. Will he use that attack? It's Lord Razor's second best attack. The boy will end up badly injured, or even dead. It's a pity, he had great potential. Come to think of it, it's normal for him to have such potential if we're talking about the same Securiute. It doesn't matter if he's low class. You're right, brother. Rias tugged at Surzet's robes, only to be surprised when she saw that her brother's face was still impassive as usual, forcing her to look at the screen to find out what she was waiting for. I don't care if you're the Securiute, you must pay for your insolence. Razor shouted at last, causing a small, but powerful fireball to shoot out of his hand, which turned a golden color as it passed through the 3 magic circles, indicating that there was a lot of concentrated magic. The attack was so fast that it left a glowing trail in its wake. Razor's maniacal grin did not waver for a second, while Issei still continued to cross his arms, holding that look on his face. The attack was over the trajectory in less than a second, and just when everyone thought Issei was about to be defeated, the exact opposite happened. Issei raised his hand and deflected the attack into the sky like it was nothing, rendering everyone completely speechless by the action. It only took a few seconds for Razor to speak. How did you become so strong in just a month? How did you learn to fight so well in such a short time? Razor waited for a few seconds for an answer that never came, as Issei just continued to stare at him with that impassive, suffocating stare that infuriated Razor to his utmost point, causing him to shut his eyes tightly and grit his teeth. Say something. The scream was so loud that even Razor's sister herself was surprised, as she had never seen her brother lose his temper in such a manner. Razor opened his eyes and began to gasp for breath, not only because of the scream, but also because of the large amount of magical reserves he had expended to throw the previous attack. He continued to watch Issei, who didn't seem to want to say a word. But just as he was about to shout again, Issei opened his mouth. If you don't surrender, I'll kill you. They were simple words, but those words were enough to make something inside Razor shake him completely. Something changed inside him. Those were his feelings of hatred, anger, and frustration that he felt because of that dragon boy. Those feelings were replaced, changed, by a specific one. And that was panic. Razor's face transformed into one of utter terror when he heard Issei's words. The expression on his face was impossible to imitate. It was an utterly icy, cutting terror. That feeling was the real hell. He wanted to shake it off as soon as possible. Razor rose even higher into the air, his utterly horrified face still palpable as he stared at Issei in sheer terror. Razor raised both his hands to the sky, beginning to create a huge fireball. I can't lose, I can't die, Razor thought in desperation, putting an immense amount of his magical reserves into the attack. About 3 magic circles appeared again, but this time they were spread across the entire path he had to take to get in front of Issei. Ugh! He unconsciously began to scream due to the large charge of energy he was using to prepare the attack. The large fireball grew larger and larger, to the point of being completely gigantic. The magnitude of the attack is immeasurable, it's going to kill him. Apparently it has angered Lord Razor. Otherwise, he wouldn't use that attack. Now he won't stand a chance. He can't dodge it, and it's multiple times stronger than the previous attack. It was a good fight. Brother, Rias asked uneasily as he watched the huge fireball that didn't seem to stop growing. Surzet's features were faltering for the first time in the entire fight. He spent that much magical power in a single attack. I didn't expect this, damn it. The Griffin won't be able to save him with such a large magnitude of explosion. He'll die with it. What the hell are you thinking, Razor? You know better than to let him die. As Serzech clenched his arms tightly in his hands, that's when Riaz realized that things stopped going as planned. Die, UFC King Reincarnated Demon! Razor shouted at the top of his lungs, throwing the giant ball towards Issei. Issei watched with his impassive gaze as the ball with a diameter of about 20 meters approached his position, passing through the magic circles, becoming more and more yellow because of it. When it was only a few meters from touching the ground, all the debris shot out in various directions, out of the enormous pressure generated by the attack. Serzech gritted his teeth slightly. It's over, and we haven't even started the plan. Serzech looked away, unwilling to see all his wonderful plans slip from his grasp. When the attack was only a meter away from Issei, the protagonist raised his right hand. Dragon shot, he shouted with great force at the end, causing a crimson bolt of lightning much smaller than Razor's attack to slam into the giant ball, stopping its advance in its tracks, and it didn't take long for it to advance towards Razor's direction. Everyone, even Razor himself, widened their eyes in complete shock at what they were witnessing. Issei had practically unleashed an attack with only a second's preparation and was overpowering the mini-sun that Razor had thrown in no time. No, Razor shouted, completely desperate as he threw a small amount of flames towards the attack to regain control, but the attack continued to slowly advance towards his direction. Impossible, this can't be happening, Razor said, completely terrified, creating a large magical circle that served as a barrier in a poor attempt to fend off the attack. Both magical attacks hit the barrier and shattered it in less than a second. This can't be happening, GAHHH. A completely blinding light illuminated Razor's figure, and then nothing could be seen of him, as he was completely enclosed within the attack. A second after that, the glow that surrounded the entire arena wavered for a second, only to expand into a huge golden explosion with crimson edges. The blast was so loud that it managed to be completely deafening. A huge whirlpool had been generated around the shockwave, which was responsible for shattering all the chess pieces in the arena. When the magnitude of the attack finally stopped expanding due to the containment barriers, which Serzech himself had placed in advance, the shockwave shrank and disappeared out of nowhere, leaving a huge curtain of dust all over the arena, leaving absolutely nothing to be seen. Murmurs began to be heard from the audience, completely disbelieving what they had just witnessed with their own eyes. As the dust began to dissipate, everyone stared intently at the screen, creating a huge silence in the room, which quickly turned into gasps of shocked people. Issei was standing in the middle of the arena with his helmet on. The armor would be severely damaged, but still it had not let its wearer take any damage. After a second, the armor self-regenerated and Issei's helmet dematerialized. Partner, we have 20 seconds. All right, Issei nodded earnestly. It's time to move on to the third phase. What do you plan to do to win? Drake asked, genuinely intrigued. A small smile appeared on Issei's face. The first thing Tiamat taught me, the feint. If that fails, I'll be sure to save some dragon shot for last. I see, sounds promising, Drake replied with an excited tone in his voice. He couldn't wait to see what his partner would do. Their chatter ended just as Issei managed to make out through the dust as a large amount of fire landed in front of him. After a few seconds, Razor's figure became visible. He was kneeling on the ground, his eyes completely lost in the panic of the moment as his body trembled in terror. He wanted to end it all quickly, and he couldn't do it. Beads of sweat were running down his face, while the faint gasps of exhaustion were present in the air, added to the moans of pain that could be heard coming out in between. That magical aura around him had completely disappeared, indicating that he had almost no tricks left up his sleeve. Issei wasted no valuable time and positioned himself in front of Razor in one swift move, causing the blonde to become very visibly alarmed and rise up to try and deliver a desperate blow to the protagonist, a blow that failed for obvious reasons. He then attempted another punch which Issei dodged with ease, causing a small smile to appear on his face as he saw how Razor's punches were already lacking in technique and were only desperate measures to escape his predicament. Issei wasted no time and approached him with that smile still on his face, causing Razor's eyes to widen in horror. Issei flexed his right arm and charged with all his might in an obvious attack, causing Razor to look at his prominent punch with anticipation. It's too obvious, shouted Razor, covering his left side and leaving his right side completely exposed. Issei's grin increased even more as he landed a hard left to the side of his ribs, causing him to spit out a large amount of and go flying, eventually ending up rolling on the floor. Razor got up with some ease, though his trembling never left his body. The wound on his mid-torso eventually healed, and he looked up again to see Issei. But when she did, she could only blink in disbelief when he was already in front of her again, charging her with yet another punch just like the last one. You won't fool me with your ridiculous feint this time, Razor thought, covering his left side with one hand and his right with the other. Although his reaction had been correct, he could not withstand the enormous pressure exerted by Issei's fist, so his forearm ended up giving way with a horrible crack, as it was ejected at a great speed by the force of the attack. As this time he flew into the sky, the only thing holding him back were the Serzech's barriers, as the battlefield was completely deserted for obvious reasons. Razor's body fell with a thud, which was completely broken when the sound of something shattering into 1,000 pieces reached everyone's ears. Time's up, Drake warned with a slight tone of concern in his voice. Issei would stagger from the breaking of the balance breaker as the loss of power hit him abruptly. Shit, he cursed to himself. I should have prepared some previous boost in my gauntlet so the difference wouldn't be so great, Issei thought as he leaned on his knee, but it was too late to think about it. The crimson energy surrounding Issei ended up fading away completely. The only thing that had not disappeared from his armor was his gauntlet. Razor began to stand up with difficulty due to the pain he was currently feeling. The smile on his face was indescribable. What happened? That power was so short-lived. Razor's smile was completely wiped away as his vision became somewhat blurry, and he ended up falling to his knees because of it. Issei's eyes grew wide at the sight. Mental exhaustion. This is my chance, he exclaimed, extending his hand towards Razor as a small ball began to grow larger and larger in his hand. You plan to throw it at me from 100 feet away. Your attack is very strong, but it's no use if you don't hit your target. Ha 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 ha. Razor laughed loudly as he tried to fully erect himself. Finally, the crimson ball managed to be large enough to fit into his palm. If it's that easy, then ski it. Dragon shot. Razor watched the attack with a smirk on his face, but his expression turned into a complete puzzle as he prepared to move. What's wrong? He wondered, staring at his legs in horror. I can't move them. Razor raised his hand and expended the last of his remaining magic to counter the attack. Issei's eyes widened in shock as another massive fireball materialized in his opponent's hands, but considerably smaller in size than the last. He still had that much magic. Unlike his previous attack, the fireball traversed its path in less than a second, impacting heavily against the dragon shot considerably weaker than the previous one, winning the clash by a very narrow margin and causing both attacks to explode very close to Issei, so it was inevitable that he would take some damage from the blast. He could only be seen to cover his face in vain, only to give a small cry of pain as he was enveloped by the edge of the blast. Razor watched the small curtain of dust as he gasped for breath. He was completely exhausted. Razor gritted his teeth and fell to his knees on the ground, clutching his head tightly as he felt that everything around him was a complete blur, and the enormous pain still lingered in his ribs on his right side. Wait a minute, they hadn't healed yet. Razor looked quickly at the stabbing area, only to widen his eyes in complete shock as he saw seeping from the wound from his broken ribs, and there was no flame covering it to heal him. Razor got up with great difficulty, staggering from side to side as he clutched his ribs with an expression of horror and pain on his face. He just hoped the boy was unconscious, because he didn't want this torment to last a second longer. When he finally arrived at the scene, his eyes widened as he saw Issei propped up on his knees. His shirt was in tatters, and his trousers were a bit battered. His skin was visibly bruised, but it was nothing serious. On his hand the gauntlet had just materialized, implying that the small gauntlet had managed to absorb most of the impact. Issei raised his gaze, causing Razor to unconsciously take a step back. This ends now. It was Issei's simple words that made Razor's teeth clench tightly. Issei lunged at Razor with a shout, charging his blow exactly as he had the last 2 times he had done so. Seeing this, Razor's eyes widened as wide as they could go. Now you don't possess the strength you had before, he shouted with a big grin on his face, catching Issei's right fist with difficulty as the strength was still evenly matched. Issei charged his left arm towards Razor's abdomen, being dodged by a millimeter thanks to the blonde's anticipation. I told you I wouldn't fall for your ridiculous feints anymore, shouted Razor with great force, starting to drive his fist straight for Issei's throat. I win. But what are you saying? Razor startled a little when he saw Issei's hardened gaze. You already lost when you let despair flood your mind and heart. Razor blinked in complete shock when he felt his attack stopped by Issei's hand as he grabbed his forearm, only to feel the chestnut open his fist and tighten his grip on Razor's other hand that had blocked him earlier. At that moment, all became silent and everything began to slow down. Issei's eyes could only visualize Razor's figure in front of him. Everything around him was black. He was looking at Razor, specifically at his chin. A loud deafening roar broke the silence. That loud, cutting, devastating roar had been originated when Issei's knee impacted with shattering force on Razor's chin. Time had come to a complete standstill at that precise moment, watching from different angles. All that, just for everyone to observe the magnitude of what that blow meant. The knee was repeated again and again and again and again in the reader's mind from different angles, until finally everything started to slow down again. The mouths of the whole audience were wide open, they couldn't believe their eyes. As everything was going much slower, the figure of Razor spitting out a large amount of with blank eyes was easily distinguishable. Meanwhile, Issei was still in the air just like Razor, his knee still bent, his vision completely obscured by his hair. Finally, the young man looked up with great seriousness to see Razor's body still slowly falling, about to hit the ground. Taking down an enemy who possesses such a skill will be very difficult with your current level. But, Issei's eyes recorded the moment as Razor's head began to rossar the ground. I believe in you. The first sound heard in that long silence would be Razor's body landing on the ground, crawling like a sack of rubbish a few feet, until his face fell limply to the side, denoting his eyes rolled back in his head. Issei finally landed, gazing intently at Razor. Our Razor Phoenix has been knocked unconscious. The winner is Hayao Issei, the Demon King exclaimed, declaring the end of the battle. After those words, another overwhelming silence followed. Hearing that, Issei raised his gaze to the sky, dropping his arms to his sides. Why do I feel this way? Issei closed his eyes in utter tranquility. I just won a battle against a strong guy. It was just a successful rematch against someone who had humiliated me. I only did it for the president. At that moment, that's when Tiamat's words came back into his head. If you find that moment, Issei raised his gauntlet to the sky and clenched it with great force. You will be completely fascinated by the true meaning of combat. YESSSS. Issei shouted with great force and shook his fist with great passion, to shake off all the fabulous emotions that were overwhelming his mind completely. Hearing his shout, Rias trembled with excitement, as he had been freed from the arranged marriage. Whoa, he beat Razor. Who is that guy? I have no idea, but apparently he's the bearer of the Welsh dragon. A great deal of muttering and shouting began to be heard from all the demons in the room, with the exception of Razor's retinue who rushed to his aid. Issei was forced to stop his revelry as he was teleported into the room, causing him to look to the front of him out of obligation as he saw the entire Razor squad quickly approach him, giving him various compliments and congratulations on how he had performed, causing a big toothy grin to break out on Issei's face as a slight blush shot across his face at the words of his friends, and as Kaneko stroked his hair with a hint of admiration on her face. That was amazing, Dragon Boy. Or should I call you Issei? Surzech walked over to him, clapping for his victory along with his sister, who greeted him with a tight hug. Issei, I was so worried, Rias exclaimed, hugging him even tighter. Issei broke away from the hug, shocking those present. You don't have to be anymore, now you're free to marry whoever you want, the protagonist exclaimed with a raised thumb. The Gremory entourage looked at each other seriously for a minute, even Surzech's face got a little serious. Seeing this, Issei looked at them all with confusion. Did I say something wrong? He asked, seeing everyone looking at him strangely. Issei, let's go talk outside, Surzech commented, being joined by Rias. The Gremory retinue looked at each other earnestly. I suppose Lord Surzech will resort to Plan B, Aquino commented, giving a small sigh of weariness. For the moment, we shouldn't worry. Everything went according to plan, with the exception of certain irregularities. Let's let Rias have a little trip with Issei, so they start getting closer. Kiba just nodded with a tired smile on his face. I just hope everything goes well. I wouldn't want to have to do certain things. I wouldn't mind, Kaneko commented, generating a magic circle at the feet of her friends. Me neither, Asia concluded with a mysterious smile on her face. A few demons looked at each other in confusion as Issei had left along with Surzech and her sister. That she is free to marry whomever she wants. Then why did he rescue her, knowing he would be engaged to her if he did? The other fully muscled demon with purple eyes bowed his shoulders. I don't know, I'm not that close with my cousin. The guy folded his arms with a defiant grin on his face. But that guy is most interesting. I hope we can talk soon. Line jump. I would like you to escort my sister to the academy. Escort. Wait, sister. Issei blinked in disbelief at the end. Now that I remember, Grafia had told me about this, Issei concluded, rubbing his chin. Surzech chuckled at Issei's nonchalant attitude. My name is Surzech Lucifer, I hope we get along, Ria's brother said, bowing his hand and being shaken by Issei immediately. Same here, replied the protagonist with a smile. Just as they finished introducing themselves, something glittered loudly in Issei's right pocket, causing him to let out a small cry of surprise as a strange bird appeared between him and Rias. By this I meant escorting her, Surzech commented, resting a hand on the griffin. I hope you take good care of her, brother, Rias exclaimed with a blush on his face, causing Issei to look at her in confusion and his brother to chuckle. In the end, they both climbed onto the griffin and raised their hand in a grand farewell, disappearing into the reddish sky of hell. When there was finally no sign of them, Surzech lowered his hand, and a grim smile graced his face. It's time to try the first step, Rias thought with an evil grin on his face that Issei didn't see as he was looking straight ahead. Knowing what Issei's attitude is like, I'm sure a right first step is to use some of my gifts. After all, I don't think Issei has changed that much in just a month. Rias hugged him tightly by his bare back, causing her slightly exposed cleavage to rub against Issei's rough skin from the recent battle. In a way, Rias was right. It's very hard for Issei to change all that perverted attitude in a month. What she didn't know was that her body looked like a plank if compared to the well-exercised and voluptuous body of a certain dragoness, who had the chance to see naked every day thanks to the natural hot springs. Somehow, that mysterious dragoness had served as a remedy to control that side of Issei to a great extent. That, and thanks to her new mentality, allowed her to face that one dark side she had in her heart. Rias blinked in surprise when Issei seemed unfazed by his action. Still, he didn't have time to get angry, as something came to his mind thanks to his earlier thought. Hey, Issei, where were you all last month? Issei looked over his shoulders to answer him. I was training in the family realm. Rias was visibly taken aback by the revelation. But, we looked everywhere for you there. Well, everywhere, except for the place where a monster lives that would be able to tear you apart in less than a second. The monster? Issei asked with a roll of his eyes. Well, in a way, that idea isn't quite right. He thought. Yes, Rias nodded. There's no telling what kind of monster it is, since no one survived to tell the tale. Everyone who tried to find out what's going on around that area ended up disappearing without a trace. Before Rias could continue his conversation, he could watch as Issei spoke through a small magic circle in his ear. You can teleport me. I'm looking forward to seeing you too, and thanking you. Issei gave Rias a quick embarrassed glance. I'm sorry, President, I must leave you alone. I know I promised her, but that person helped me too much, and it would be very cruel and ungrateful of me to keep her waiting. Before Rias could ask who it was, Issei disappeared in a celestial magic circle and made the girl fall to the front, since she didn't have the back of Issei's back. Make her. Rias frowned as he noticed that the word meant a lot more than it sounded. I'd better tell my brother about this. Looks like someone's going to have to go back to the academy alone. Line jump. As soon as he appeared in the cave, Issei felt very soft and delicate arms wrap around him completely, enclosing him in a deep embrace. The next thing he felt was how the cleavage protruding over an unbuttoned one pressed tightly to his chest, feeling a great warmth in that little triangle that was exposed, causing him to blush almost immediately. Still, he was much more focused on returning the hug. Congratulations, Tiamat exclaimed with great enthusiasm. He was so happy, even his little canine fangs decided to make an appearance. How do you know? Issei asked in great surprise, breaking away from the embrace a little to see Tiamat's beautiful smiling face. Tiamat gave him a small tap on the forehead as she laughed. Remember, we can feel what the other feels, silly. Then you know how I felt when I won, don't you? Tiamat nodded with a smile. Yes. You finally knew that courage you lacked to get caught up in the feeling of what a battle is like. It's exactly the same feeling as mine when I enter a fight, no matter who my opponent is. I guess you've rubbed off a thing or two on me, Issei added as they both continued to laugh. I wasn't the one who put that idea in you about replacing your demon arm with a dragon's, Tiamat exclaimed with a chuckle, until finally something important popped into her head. Wait a minute, do you feel something weird in your arm? Tiamat inquired seriously, touching Issei's arm with both her hands, looking for any part that was out of place. No, why? Asked Issei with great intrigue at the sudden change in attitude presented by her best friend and future lover. As I said before, a dragon's power is very corrosive. When you use it, there can also be serious consequences. Still, you seem to be fine, Tiamat concluded. Her gaze twisted to a more tender one as her touches began to transform into caresses, causing Issei to be surprised by the act. You have given your arm to save your mistress. She must be a very good woman for you to have decided to give away a part of your body to rescue her. Tiamat's gaze changed to a more delicate one as she continued to stroke his arm. It must be great to have someone who really appreciates you that much. If it were up to you, I'd give up my other arm. Tiamat raised her gaze, visibly impressed by what she had heard. And if that's not enough, I'd also give up both my legs. And then my right eye, I suppose. By now, Tiamat's feelings and emotions were running so fast they were impossible to describe. She just needed to expel them somewhere, in one place, otherwise she would explode. And for that very reason, Issei was receiving a big kiss on his forehead from Tiamat. Issei could only blush and feel his heart flutter out of control for such a stupid thing as a kiss on the forehead was. But he couldn't help but think that it felt very special. After a few seconds, Tiamat pulled away from Issei and gave him a big smile. That's very nice of you, but I won't allow you to give away parts of your body to save me. If anything, I'll be the one to save you, Tiamat concluded, positioning both hands on Issei's cheeks in a very affectionate manner. I won't be behind you forever, Issei exclaimed with a smile on his face, standing up suddenly and causing Tiamat to be surprised. I made a bet that I'll beat you, and I intend to win it. HMP, Tiamat said with an amused tone in her voice as she stood up straight. That I'll have to see for myself. But, for now, I will make sure you learn many other basic techniques that we left out because of your meager magic, and they are very important. With your new power, I'm sure you'll be able to master them. You bet, Issei exclaimed, clenching his fist tightly with conviction. Tiamat's determined expression would turn into a smirk. But before that, you have to make up all the classes you missed throughout all these days, you know what I mean? Tiamat asked, pulling out Issei's black briefcase from behind a stone. At the sight of the briefcase, Issei began to sweat profusely as a poker face dominated his expression, turning completely pale instantly. Tiamat waved the briefcase close to his face, further increasing her smirk as she saw him avert his gaze elsewhere. You know that, don't you? We were at the protagonist's home. It was 7 a.m. A day had passed since Issei's victory against Razor. The establishment was in complete silence, if not for the noise coming from the kitchen. Pretty hands were moving from one place to another, chopping and preparing different foods. The toaster removed the breads with a beep, causing the movement of the hands to stop dead in its tracks. One of the hands took a piece of toast and raised it to his mouth, taking a small bite. Although only the lower half of her face was visible, the small, satisfied smile that appeared on her face confirmed her identity. No one could smile like she did, after all. Wake up, or I'll cut you into 1,000 pieces. The alarm sounded loudly, causing a hand to reach out from inside the blanket and shut it off with a sharp thud. The guy peeked his face above the warm blankets, revealing the very sleepy face of our beloved protagonist. Ah, I want to see some. Issei quickly covered his mouth at her words. Shit, I thought I had it under control already. He cursed aloud to himself. Relax, partner. The thickest, proudest voice known to all spoke through the hand of its bearer. You used to think only of touching them all the time. Now, you only think about seeing them. It's great progress, Drake declared, quite proud that his bearer was coping so well with his greatest weakness. Issei rubbed his hair with a small, grateful smile on his face. Thank you. I can always count on you to lift my spirits, Drake. His chatter was interrupted when someone opened the door, causing Issei to pay special attention. Good morning, the highly regarded dragoness commented, carrying a large tray of food in her hands. I hope you're hungry. Woo! Issei exclaimed with starry eyes, almost jumping out of her bed at the sight of the endless food. That looks super delicious. Issei's words caused a small smile to break out on Tiamat's face as she closed the door. Yeah, today was going to be a pretty normal day. Beginning of Arc Chapter 12, Returning to the Academy. Ugh, Issei shouted in frustration, sinking his face into the books. Why did I have to leave the academy for over a month? This is a horror, he exclaimed, his tone rather dejected. The brown-haired man was in the living room, receiving lessons from Tiamat. At least, in every subject but history. It's amazing how humanity has changed over the last 1,000 years, Tiamat commented to herself, reading a book with some interest. Can I take a break? Issei asked, lifting his face from the books. Since yesterday all I do is study, plus eat and sleep. You won't even let me go to the bathroom by myself. Tiamat lowered the book a little, glaring at him. I can't risk it. You can escape through the vent. I don't think my body can fit in such a small place, Issei replied with a small drop of nervous sweat. Come on, you're only missing the last week, Tiamat said, hiding her face with the book again. That's right, Issei declared with renewed glee. The 14 hours a day of study was worth it after all. Issei sank his face into the physics book. After a few seconds, Tiamat lowered her book a little to give it a glance. She would stare at it for a while, until she finally found the words to speak to him. Your parents are coming back tomorrow. Yes, Issei replied, looking away from his book just to catch Tiamat's disappointed look. When we finish this, will you visit me again? She asked, her worried expression hidden thanks to the book. Of course. Issei's vigorous response caused Tiamat to lower her book immediately, denoting an impressed expression. You said yourself that I have many things to learn. Besides, a small blush appeared on Issei's face, averting his gaze from Tiamat's piercing eyes. I'd like to spend time with you here in an unfamiliar realm, not just training. You know, Issei looked back at Tiamat, to see her impressed expression increase even more. But if you just want to train me, I'll have no problem with it. A large amount of books fell to the ground, a product of Tiamat's big hug, which had taken Issei completely by surprise. Let's repeat what we did a few days ago, please, Tiamat exclaimed in a grateful voice, as a sweet smile graced her face. Thanks to the dragoness Pablaris, Issei was able to snap out of his state and responded to the embrace. Of course, it was great for me too. The young man's words only made Tiamat hug him even more happily. Line jump. It was already completely dark. Issei and Tiamat were making the final checks before the woman left for home. Issei raised his gaze for a second, looking at Tiamat. She quickly lowered her gaze and continued writing. What's wrong? Asked Tiamat, who had somehow caught Issei's gaze without taking her face from the book. Nothing, he said, rubbing his hair in a bit of frustration. I was just wondering how long it will take me to learn the basic magical moves. It'll take you a lot less time than reaching your balance breaker. Tiamat raised her gaze, watching him carefully. They're basic spells, you won't have much trouble with them. The only thing you'll have trouble with is being able to use them with low augmentations due to your current condition. You mean because of the almost scarce magic reserves? Issei asked, somewhat disgusted by his lack of magic. Exactly, Tiamat nodded. Still, it is something you must learn. To give you an example, spells that function as blocks could save your life. There are also those that allow you to boost your magical attacks to an even greater degree, among others. The dragoness concluded, waving her hand to indicate that the list was much longer. Shields, enhancers, Issei thought aloud, remembering that Razor had done something similar. I think in about 15 minutes I'll be leaving, Tiamat commented, looking at the clock hanging behind the TV already pointing to midnight. All right, Issei replied, then giving her a big smile, causing Tiamat to blink in mild surprise. Thanks for everything. The protagonist grabbed the dragoness' hand, causing a tiny blush to creep onto her face. Really, I don't know how to repay you. You've helped me so much lately, he commented, with a very sincere tone. If it wasn't for you, I don't know if I would have made it this far in such a short time. The grip on his hand slowly transformed into something more personal, as their fingers unconsciously intertwined. You've given me of your valuable time without asking for anything in return. Issei widened his smile even more, forcing Tiamat to smile at the cute words that were rattling her chest more than she expected. You're amazing. I couldn't have spent my time on anything else. Tiamat's response caused Issei to glare at her. Well, maybe I could have spent it picking a fight or two. But I don't regret anything. Spending time with you was quite enjoyable, plus you've helped me a lot too. She concluded with her beautiful smile still in force on her face, causing a small smile to creep onto Issei's face. You know something? Tiamat blinked, watching him carefully. When we first met, you hardly ever smiled. You always acted so serious, and even a little cold at times. But now, you smile a lot more often. I'm glad to see that, because you look so much prettier when you're happy. Tiamat couldn't help but blush faintly at the chestnut's innocent words, causing the woman's smile to increase even more. That's because of you. Tiamat's words, adding to the warm squeeze she gave her intertwined hands, caused Issei to look at her with a small blush. If you hadn't been so good to me, chances are I would have never gone back to feeling so special. When he concluded his words, they both stared directly into each other's eyes, without any kind of interruption. The smile still remained in force on their faces, making the comforting silence that had been generated between the two of them noticeably more comfortable. The squeeze was further tightened, this time by Issei. Unfortunately, the lovely atmosphere they had generated between them was completely shattered when the noise and lights of a car appeared outside the house, causing Issei to become visibly alarmed and separate his hand with Tiamat's in a jerky motion. "Shit," he exclaimed, holding his hands to his head. "It's my parents. Why are they here at this hour? They were supposed to be here in the wee hours of the morning. I'm leaving right now," Tiamat said earnestly, creating a magic circle at her feet. "I wouldn't want to cause you any trouble with your parents by my presence." Before disappearing, the dragoness raised her hand as a gesture of greeting as a small smile appeared on her face. "See you later." Issei simply smiled at her, then threw his face above the books. Issei's parents entered the house, and the first thing they saw was Issei sleeping on top of the books. Neither of them thought anything of it and went up to the first floor with the idea of going to bed as soon as possible. After a few seconds, Issei opened one of his eyes to check that the ground was safe. Finally, he looked up the stairs and breathed a huge sigh of relief. "In these special cases, my parents' disaffection always saves me." Line jump. "I'm on my way out to the academy," Issei said quietly as he cupped his ear to keep the small light blue magic circle out of sight. "Okay. Did your parents say anything about your absence?" Tiamat's voice echoed through the communicator, causing Issei to raise his gaze to the sky. "Although they don't pay much attention to me, it's very strange that they haven't received a message from the academy. Most likely the president took over somehow. That's what sounds most logical. See you after the academy." The communication cut off, causing Issei to lower his hand. "Long time no see," Issei thought somewhat wistfully as he looked at the academy from the gate. "Isse, oh eyes." The shout, clearly recognized by the protagon sight, caused him to visibly startle. Issei was caught up in a flash by his two friends, who left a trail of dust in their wake. "Issei, are you all right?" Madohama asked, adjusting his glasses as he watched his companion with some concern. "We were informed that you had gone on a trip with your parents on an urgent matter, but that's no excuse for not answering the flames, friend," Matsuda said, resting his hand on Issei's shoulder. Sorry. Issei looked in several directions, searching for a valid excuse. "I forgot my mobile phone at home." "Oh, brother, you're a real mess," Matsuda commented, giving him a small slap on the back. Issei could only smile nervously at such a statement. "Look, it's the pervert duo, how disgusting." Issei blinked in confusion at the whisper from one of the women in his class, causing him to look at the two of them with special attention. Matsuda rubbed his bald head with a nervous smile, while Matsuda adjusted his glasses, ready to reply. "You see, we've earned ourselves a certain reputation in this time you've been away. I guess that's not something you should be proud of," Issei commented, seeing that Madohama seemed to be proud of his nickname. "Hey, is that guy with them?" The whisper from one of the girls made Issei roll his eyes. "No, I don't think so. If I remember correctly, he never participated in all the disgusting things the two of them did when he was still at the academy. But he's always with them, so maybe we should be a little careful, just in case." "Great, I didn't even do anything at the academy, and they already see me as a freak," Issei thought with a roll of his eyes. Still, a small smile appeared on Issei's face. "Not that it bothers me much. I've never stood out in institutions for being someone sociable, and for that very reason is why I ended up with Matsuda and Madohama." Issei watched as Matsuda and Madohama smiled at him while talking about different topics. "They may be hopeless perverts, but they are very good friends." The protagonist closed his eyes happily. "I don't regret anything." Line jump. Issei looked down at his notebook with a frown, then shook his hair out in frustration. That was to be expected. I can't learn everything I missed in a month with only 28 hours. Especially if we're talking about maths, he thought, with a tired expression at the end. "Hey, Issei." The aforementioned turned around to see his friend Matsuda. "We're going on a little expedition where the kendo girls are changing. Want to join us?" He whispered quietly as he looked in various directions. "No thanks," Issei replied, with a shaky smile. "I wouldn't want to get beaten up by so many women." As you wish," Matsuda said, with a raised eyebrow as he saw that his friend had changed his attitude a lot these past few days. Issei looked straight ahead again and gave a small sigh of exhaustion. As he got up from his chair to go get some fresh air, Kiba appeared in the living room, causing all the women to give a small sigh. Seeing this, Issei immediately became serious. Line jump. "So, you've been trained by your familiar," Riaz commented with some surprise in her words, keeping her eyebrow raised. "Must be a rare familiar you have, because it's strange to find familiars willing to join you, being that you're weaker than them to begin with." Riaz lowered her gaze, staring at Issei. "By the way, with your current strength, do you think you can overcome her?" "Not at all," Issei replied firmly. "She's very strong." "I see," Riaz said, a hand on her chin. "She's interesting, no doubt," she commented with a smile. "Guys, what do you think?" The entire entourage nodded, indicating that they agreed with Riaz. "President, if you want, I can show you the place where we were training. And also, I could meet her," Issei commented with a smile, standing up from the couch. "How about it?" You had said earlier that she didn't get along well with the demons. It would be best to wait for her to come on her own, don't you think? Asia asked, giving her view of the subject. Issei rubbed his hair, mulling over the answer. I think you're right. She might feel uncomfortable. She seems like someone complicated, Kaneko commented, causing Issei to smile nervously. Well, when we first met, she had a bit of a strong character. But she's someone very good when you get to know her well, I assure you. Issei exclaimed with a big toothy grin on his face. By all this, does she have a name? Akino asked with great interest. Issei opened his mouth to answer, but was interrupted by Rias. Let's better not talk about trivia anymore. We need to concentrate on what summoned us today. Rias commented seriously. Kaneko. Yes, President. The albino said, looking at everyone more seriously than usual. Yesterday I managed to pick up the presence of 2 exorcists in our territory. I don't know why they're here, but it's most likely nothing good. We don't want to start any conflict with God. Rias clarified with an implacable tone. We'll just keep an eye on them until they leave here or we find out what their real plans are. Rias folded her arms in an imposing manner. We have already suffered many casualties in the war 1,000 years ago. I don't want demon to flow again because of us. Guard them, Kiba asked, somewhat disagreeing with his mistress. I agree with not escalating the violence, but we could demand an explanation from them. They're in our territory, and they'd have to be pretty dumb not to know that. Good point, Kiba, Rias stated with a smile, agreeing with his servant. Good. In that case, you will follow Kiba's plan. Remember, don't create conflict over superficial things. Yes, they all replied with a smile. President. They all looked at Issei, seeing how he was raising his hand with a nervous smile. What's wrong, Issei? I haven't finished my training yet. Do you think it would be possible to obviate me from this job, at least until I'm done with my exercises? Issei asked, rubbing his hair nervously. Rias looked at him in silence for a few seconds, pondering his answer. It's all right. This is a fairly simple mission, so there's no need for all of us to get involved. Issei clenched his fist tightly with a smile after Ria's words. Nevertheless, Ria's tone made Issei turn serious immediately. Make sure you come every day to the academy and participate in the club meetings. I won't be as lenient as last time, is that clear? Yes, boss, shouted Issei in a military pose. Perfect, Rias concluded with a smile. Everyone else, you know what to do after class. In the meantime, I need to talk to my brother for personal matters. I trust you. Yes, they replied again, leaving the room. Once they were all gone, Rias sat back down and let out a big sigh. First, we have that familiar woman interfering with my brother's prearranged plans. And now, followers of God just happen to arrive where the Sekyryute is. Rias thought wearily, twirling her pen. If I think about it, it's still a bit early for the angels to have discovered Hayatu's existence. Besides, God would never send a few simple priests to send him the message. In fact, it would be utter madness for him to tell the secret to people other than his archangels. Rias raised his gaze with a mysterious glint in his eyes. Most likely they came for another reason. The question is, which one? Line jump. Interesting, Tiamat thought, watching as Issei had created a magic circle of a violet color, which was just as big as he was. He has his own magic circle. That means he's not as bound to his mistress as I thought. I can't believe he did it the first time. Issei thought aloud, completely surprised. When Tiamat explained it to me, I swear it seems so much more complicated. Flashback. To create blocks, magical powers, and other things, you'll need to materialize your magic circle. Tiamat explained, creating a small celestial magic circle to serve as an example. Due to your low magic reserve, you cannot create magic circles. But, if you use Balance Breaker, your stats shoot up considerably. However, you shouldn't be overconfident. Your magic reserves will still be very small, so you must be sure to use every drop of magic for a valid, thoughtful, and consistent purpose. If you don't, the consequences will be very serious. End of flashback. Good job, Tiamat complimented with a small smile, leaning closer. This process is the easiest to accomplish. The others are a bit more conflicting, because you have to materialize those ideas into reality using the magic circle as a medium. Issei's armor shattered into 1,000 pieces, causing Issei to stagger a little. Damn, the protagonist cursed to himself. Don't you think it would be better to just use all the augmentations of my boosted gear and be done with it? I can only go for 3 minutes in the armor, he insisted, a little annoyed at his weak condition. No, Issei looked at Tiamat with some surprise. It's a good idea if you want to master these techniques in a day, but that's not the point now. Ideally, you should learn these techniques while developing a higher tolerance for your balance breaker. Even if you don't have proper training for sacred gear control, it will help you get used to the armor a bit, and your duration will most likely be extended by a couple of seconds due to accumulating less wear and tear over time. I agree, partner. Still, we should find someone who understands how sacred gear works, otherwise, you won't be able to progress any further. I'd help you myself, if I didn't find myself locked in this stupid gauntlet, Drake clarified with some helplessness at the end. That reminds me, Tiamat fixed her gaze on Issei's right arm. Don't overstretch your limit. You may possess a strange affinity with my kind, but if you overstep too far, I'm sure your dragon arm will make you make up very badly. Issei looked at his arm with a slight frown. What can I do to remedy that? Don't worry, Tiamat replied with conviction. I can heal you. Issei breathed a small sigh of relief. That's good to know. To tell you the truth, it's something I was starting to worry about. Hey, Issei. Issei looked up with intrigue after hearing Tiamat's slightly worried tone. What are we going to do when you finish your training? The dragoness asked, completely expectant of her future lover's response. Issei hummed earnestly. I know. He snapped his fingers. Would you like to go to the movies? Sounds interesting, replied the dragoness with a small smile. Line jump. Shit, Issei thought with a violet face, seeing the amount of money he had. I should have seen how much yen I had left before I invited her. The protagonist flopped down on the bed, heaving a big sigh. I can't even afford a ticket. I guess I have no choice but to cancel when I get there. Issei blinked once at his own words. Wait a minute, how will he arrive? I don't think I thought of just showing up at the house with a magic circle, knowing that my parents are. The doorbell echoing through the home was the answer that immediately fell, causing Issei to turn pale. Who could it be at this hour? Issei's father wondered, seeing that it was 8 p.m. When he opened the door, he was a little startled to see a slightly tall woman, with long light blue hair, along with a white dress that resembled that of a teacher. The somewhat cold light blue eyes made the man unconsciously swallow deeply. What can I do for you, miss? I've come to fetch Issei, was the dragoness' simple reply, causing Mr. Hayaru's eyes to widen slightly. Issei, what did she do now? Questioned Mrs. Hayaru, stepping into the conversation with a grim look on her face. Noticing the woman's great beauty, she sighed. Let me guess, did he try to spy on her when she was naked or something? What? The dragoness questioned with a neutral expression as she shoved her hands in her pockets. He promised me to go out somewhere today, she replied, as she looked inside the establishment in search of Issei, obliviously ignoring the Mizm's parents. He promised you to go out. Both parents would ask each other, looking at each other with a raised eyebrow. How did you meet our son? The two would ask again. The dragoness blinked in boredom and gave them a look. We are friends. At this point, Issei's parents were beginning to wonder at what point Issei had a friend, and secondly, why the hell she wanted to hang out with him at this hour. She's my tutor. Issei would shout from the stairs, making everyone look at him. I pay her out of my allowance, so don't worry. They're up on. The brown-haired man made a few hand signals, indicating for the woman to come in. Before going to Issei, Tiamat lowered her head slightly in greeting to her father and mother. Conversation wasn't her thing. She was only interested in engaging in conversation with people who were actually worth talking to, as far as she was concerned. The parents stared genuinely impressed as Issei seemed to be apologizing for something, while the beautiful woman didn't seem to mind. Finally, they both entered the Browns' bedroom without saying a word to their parents. Honey, since when did Issei get an allowance? I don't know, but I'm fine with him paying for his education. If he's serious about it, maybe he'll do well in life when he turns 18. Oh, I hope so, because I'm not taking care of him for 2 more years. Line jump. The light in the room would be off. The only thing on in the room would be the computer that her 2 friends had given her for her last birthday. Both Tiamat and Issei were sitting on the bed, watching a movie on the monitor. I blew it. I should have looked at my savings before I made a promise I couldn't keep, Issei thought, disappointed in himself. The protagonist rubbed his hair nervously. I just hope he doesn't get too bored, he concluded, not having the courage to see Tiamat's face. The dragoness was blinking her eyes heavily, indicating that she was drifting off to sleep. It had definitely been a disaster. After a few seconds of nodding, she lowered her guard for a second and rested her face on Issei's shoulder. The protagonist was slightly startled by the action, as was Tiamat. I'm sorry, the dragoness commented, rubbing her eyes at her. No, I'm the one who should apologize, she answered Issei with a slightly down smile. If you're sleepy, you can sleep. All right, she answered, resting her face on the chestnut shoulder with great affection, making Issei visibly startled. I meant sleeping on the bed, Issei thought with a nervous smile on her face. Tiamat opened her eyes when he felt how Issei's hands carefully took her face and her hips and dragged her with great delicacy, leaving the dragoness's head above the man's legs. This is more comfortable, right? Issei asked with a small smile. Yes, Tiamat replied, snuggling as much as possible as a smile appeared on his face. This is so much better. You are a perfect pillow. Thanks, I think. She snuggled even more when she felt Issei caress her head. A small blush appeared on her face as her smile widened even more. Unfortunately, Issei was watching the movie as if to catch the rather cute reaction the dragoness had. Line jump. And good. The voice of the renowned Surzech Lucifer was heard in the occult club, waiting for a response from his sister, who was in the usual seat. They haven't returned yet. The latest information was given to me by Kaneko 2 hours ago, saying that they had just been found. Riaz answered seriously. Perfect. The Mao nodded. And as for the other problem, first I prefer to solve this. I consider it as a priority problem. Hayaru's familiar can wait until then, Riaz replied, looking towards the window with a lost look. The chances are very low, but if they come for the Sekyute, it would be a big problem. Riaz turned her gaze to his brother. Don't you think so? We agree on that. Surzech put his hand to his chin. I think it's inevitable that Issei finds out about the prophecy. What really bothers me is the fact that the angels have been able to guess the little trick that we devils have in hand. Because if God decided to tell the secret of the prophecy to some mere priests, it means that he is already aware of our plans. Who were those aware of the prophecy? Riaz asked quite curiously. Only the faction leaders and the archangels of God. Also, it is possible that the Hakuryuku knows about it. Of course, they don't know that I am in charge of transmitting the message. The Mao commented, with a mischievous smile at the end. So does that mean one of our own has betrayed us? Riaz asked with a frown. Do not rush, Sirzech replied sternly. We still don't know why they are here. The Mao would give a small sigh of exhaustion, looking towards the window. And as for the familiar girl, if she's just a very close friend of Issei's, there won't be any problem. The man frowned visibly. But, if she becomes much more than that, I'll have to kill her. Without the Sekiryude finding out about her, of course. You're sure? Riaz asked with a bit of concern. From what Hayato told me, she's quite a strong familiar. Don't worry, sister. The Mao placed his hand on Riaz's head with a smile. There is no familiar that is stronger than a faction leader. It was the last words of the demon, before he disappeared in a magic circle while he waved his hand with a smile. A second later, the calm was completely broken. Laughs. Akino rushed in, carrying Kaniko's unconscious body. Asia appeared supporting an almost unconscious Kiba due to the great damage he had on his body. What happened? Riaz almost jumped up from his seat upon seeing the condition of two of his servants. Luckily, we got there just in time. Sona. Riaz widened her eyes after seeing the Citri clan heiress accompanying her entourage. We were training new group techniques in the forest when we felt a strange energy coming from the south. It was covered, but it was so big that we could feel it thanks to the proximity. Does that mean he was an archangel? Riaz bit her finger hard as she felt that things were getting too complicated. Yes, but it's not what you think. He was a fallen angel. Sona's answer made Riaz look at her in complete surprise. Apparently, he is looking to start a war. He plans to control the Excalibur and kill us both in our territory to achieve his goal. Asia tightly clenched her fists. She only let us go because Issei wasn't with us. He said it would be a lot more boring if he wasn't around. Wait, the fallen angels already know about the Sekiryute? Riaz asked in complete disbelief. Remember that Rainier followed orders, Sona said, adjusting her glasses. Surely the Cotter must have received some information, and I come to the conclusion that Issei is the Sekiryute. How many shards does he have? Riaz asked, regaining her calm. Only one. Who is the Cotter? Kakabil. What happened to the exorcists? There were 2 women. They only suffered minimal damage. They were carrying 2 fragments of the Excalibur, but Kakabil didn't seem interested in taking them at the moment. Probably because he thought it would be more interesting to have more enemies in the final battle. Why did my entourage end up getting involved in a fight that didn't belong to our faction, when none of you knew Kakabil's true objective to begin with? It was Kiba. He couldn't help but chase after them when the exorcist sensed the presence of a holy sword. Akino answered seriously. Riaz looked at Kiba with a slight frown, then sighed. I imagined. Riaz, shall we tell your brother? Sona asked seriously. No, she answered quickly. My brother is busy with a lot of trouble, and I wouldn't want to add another pile of work to him. Besides, this is my chance to show him that my entourage is much stronger than before. She finished, with a small smile at the end. Riaz, you won't be able to take on a Cotter. Sona argued sternly. I can't do it alone, but with you I'm sure I can. Sona took a deep breath. You always get me into trouble. A small smile would appear on the Citri heiress. Okay, but I warn you that if things get complicated, I won't hesitate to call our brothers. Okay, Riaz agreed. What happened to the exorcists? Most likely they are looking for Kakabil. From what I know, I temporarily abandoned Kyo to find the other Excalibur shards. Sona argued with her typical apathetic expression. Guys, they all looked at Kiba after hearing his words, only to see him fall to the ground, unconscious. This is bad. I'll have to talk to him before he decides to act on his behalf. Riaz thought with a slight frown. At last, shouted Issei with a great sigh of relief. A day of rest, he concluded, sprawling out on the bench regardless of Tiamat standing next to him. They were both in the park from last time, preparing another barbecue for lunch. You've done very well this past week. You've mastered all the basic spells already. Tiamat nodded to herself, proud of her student's progress. Still, that doesn't mean you're using it deliberately. Remember your position, she added, with great seriousness as she looked at Issei. I know Issei sat back down properly on the bench while grimacing slightly. My magic reserves are a big problem. Tiamat rested her hand on Issei's shoulder, causing Issei to look at her expectantly. Don't worry, the dragoness commented with a small smile. Once you manage to have a large number of stable augmenters, your magic reserves will no longer be a problem. Mind you, you'll have to train a lot to get to that point. Tiamat brought her hand to Issei's abdomen and gave it a slight squeeze, causing Issei to start laughing. Stop, please, the chestnut commented with a chuckle. You're tickling me. See, the dragoness asked with a slightly bigger grin as she saw Issei's reaction. Your body is still not trained enough. It will take a long time for you to take on a physique befitting your needs. The dragoness continued to touch his abdomen for a while longer to tease him, starting to giggle a little. I get it, you can let go. Please. Finally, Tiamat gave in to Issei's pleas as she covered her laughter with one of her hands. Seeing this, the protagonist couldn't help but smile at her. She had changed so much in such a short time she seemed like a different person. At least, she was different when she was with him. Tiamat's melodic laughter stopped suddenly as she saw that many men and women were looking at them with some intrigue, though they quickly averted their gazes. Those looks, the dragoness commented rather seriously, denoting her discomfort. Why do humans look at us like we're weirdos? I mean, I think we're well camouflaged. He whispered in Issei's ear, making the latter aware of his surroundings. That's right, Issei rubbed his hair as he looked around. Last time we came on a weekday and very early, so there was hardly anyone in the park. The young man thought aloud. I think they see us this way because it's strange for them. Strange? Tiamat blinked as she couldn't find any logic in it. You know, Issei rubbed his hair with a nervous smile. Humans live between 80 to 90 years, so the age difference is very different from the supernatural. In their eyes, you're a 25-year-old woman talking alone with a 17-year-old minor. Do you understand? Not quite, Tiamat commented, holding a hand to her chin. The age difference of humans is far more conflicting than that of supernatural beings. Let's leave it at that, Issei stated, silencing the conversation. I see. Tiamat placed both hands on her legs and lowered her head slightly. If you want, we'll leave. I wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable because of me. Are you kidding? Issei's question caused Tiamat to raise her gaze in mild surprise. I don't exactly care what anyone else thinks. We're having a good time, and that's what matters. A big, toothy grin glimpsed across Issei's face. Don't you think so? Tiamat's features slowly transformed into a cute smile. You're right. She stood up, heading towards the barbecue. Issei just watched her with a smile as he saw that she had managed to clear her discomfort, though he never got a chance to see the small blush that had formed on the dragoness's face. Come to think of it, Issei thought, as he watched Tiamat begin to remove the meat. When I turn 21 I will stop aging. I'll most likely have to move to the underworld so they won't suspect or brainwash everyone. Issei lowered his head with a somewhat sad look on his face. Somehow or other, I'll be separated from Matsuda and Madohama in 4 years. Did you get any information about what happened recently? Tiamat shoved a piece of meat into his mouth, causing Issei to snap out of his little world. Issei took the meat and set it down on the plate, giving her a small smile at Tiamat's actions, which quickly faded to utter seriousness. At the moment, none. It's been a week, and there hasn't even been a trace of that cotter or the exorcists. I understand. Tiamat nodded, looking up at the sky. If you need help with that guy, don't hesitate to call me, she concluded, opening her mouth to reveal her beautiful fangs, taking a large bite out of the piece of meat. Issei could only watch with a smile as Tiamat seemed to enjoy the meat with great satisfaction. A fallen angel, a cotter, Issei thought, repeating Tiamat's action. I was only following orders from my boss. Issei frowned slightly after remembering Rainer's words. I wonder if that guy had something to do with it. Line jump. Riaz, it's already Saturday. It's been a week, Sona commented seriously. Are you seriously planning on not saying anything to your brother? Don't worry, Sona, Riaz replied, moving a chess piece. Everything will be fine if we cooperate. Both women were alone in the occult club, playing chess at the president's very distinctive table. I understand that, but I'm saying that no one will be in danger of dying if we ask for more help. Not necessarily your brother. Sona looked up, adjusting her glasses. I'm talking about Azazel. Riaz looked up with wide eyes. Azazel? Yes, Sona nodded. He's a pretty laid-back guy, and he's not interested in the war at all. I'm sure he's not involved in Kakabil's plans and could be of some help to us. No, Riaz's withering reply immediately silenced Sona. First, we would have to go to England to visit him in Grigori, a very difficult thing to do, considering that we must leave Kuo. Second, there's no guarantee that he won't tell my brother what's going on. I'd prefer to keep him out of the equation. Sona looked at her seriously for a few seconds, until she finally sighed. As you wish. Their conversation was interrupted when they heard someone open the door. You sent for me, President? Issei asked, bowing slightly to the two women present. Yes, Riaz replied with a smile. I need you to complete an errand. Riaz handed him the pamphlet, causing Issei to look at it quizzically. The others are already on their own jobs, so this one will be for you. Riaz handed him a big smile. I trust you'll make it this time, Issei. Yes, President. The man exclaimed in a military pose. Very well. Riaz closed his eyes in glee. Akino's bicycle is waiting for you outside. Issei just nodded and walked out of the room, leaving Riaz and Sona completely alone. Do you think he can defeat the cotter? Sona asked, wagging her horse. He is the Sekiryude, his potential knows no bounds. I can tell by the vast improvement he showed in the last battle against Razor. Riaz took one of his pawns and began to play with it. I'm sure this last week he wasn't wasting any time. Issei hopped on Akino's bike, opting for absolute seriousness. I could use the new ability Tiamat taught me and appear as any demon would. But I don't want to spend that much magic for a stupid thing. You never know what might happen. Issei thought, taking off at an enormous speed with the bike, as usual. Line jump. They'll ask again why a demon rings the doorbell, won't they? Issei wondered, looking at the light blue door with gold stripes of the small flat. Issei only had to wait a few seconds for the door to open, so he gave an energetic greeting. Hello, you summoned a demon, didn't you? The young man waved his hands quickly. Is he confused? Of course you are, aren't you? I'd really like to get out of the magic circle, but Issei rubbed his cheek with a nervous smile. I have a little problem with it. Well, come on in. Huh? Issei looked visibly confused as the man seemed not surprised in the slightest. Issei studied the fellow's appearance well, seeing that he was a man in his late 30s. He wore a gray kimono, along with completely black hair, except for the front, which was a blondish color. His eyes were a soft violet color, along with a neatly trimmed and manicured beard. "You're a demon, aren't you?" The man narrowed his eyes slightly, giving a rather mysterious look to Issei's eyes. I even swear it was even a little terrifying. Line jump. Amazing, Issei thought aloud, after sitting down in one of the 3 incredibly comfortable armchairs that were found in the small flat. It doesn't look like it's from here. This design doesn't belong in Japan, he thought aloud again, surveying the entire room in quite awe. Absolutely all the furniture was exported. What did this person work from? Well, let's have a drink. The man appeared leaning against one of the doors, while holding a tray with 2 glasses, a cooler and a decanter that looked quite luxurious. I'm still underage, I see, the guy commented, sitting down on the armchair in the front and setting the tray down on the small table in the middle. I wanted someone to share a drink with. Is that your wish? Can't you? No, Issei replied quickly in defense. The contract will be made when I grant your request, and you are fully satisfied. I have only whiskey. The man arranged the glasses, then delivered a passive glare to the chestnut. Will you be all right with water? Why, yes, Issei replied, a little surprised by the guy's request. The sound of ice falling into the glass was the last thing heard. 3 hours later. Hey, so you're riding a bike to see humans just because you don't have enough magic reserves. The blush from the alcohol was already visible on the man. Yeah, well, what a guy, the man shouted, then laughed. His voice is starting to irritate me, Issei thought, looking away with a pouty face. But I need this contract. He took a big gulp of water. That was fun, the man declared in a satisfied voice. What do you want as compensation? Already? Issei would ask, completely surprised by the simplicity. The demon wants my soul, the fellow asked, narrowing his eyes with a smirk. No way. Issei waved his hands in defense. Conversing with someone doesn't make up for that. Oh, you are generous. My mistress prefers fair transactions, the protagonist commented, one finger raised for emphasis on his words. So, how about that? The man pointed behind his back, denoting a painting of flowers. It's not a copy, but it looks very expensive. I don't have anything else on hand now. The subject gave him a passive look again as he held up his hands. If you don't want it, I can give you my soul. Then I'll keep the painting, Issei exclaimed, a little startled. The man stood up from his seat with a sideways grin. Perfect. Issei gave a small sigh and looked back at the man as he removed the painting. What a strange guy. Just as he was about to receive the painting, a call echoed through his mobile phone. President, Issei wondered aloud, taking the call. President, Issei, I just wanted to tell you that we're going to an abandoned factory. Kaneko tracked a wandering demon at that location. Send me the location. No, Riaz instantly interrupted Issei, causing the young man to blink in surprise. We'll take care of it. If you're done with your assignment, leave the compensation at the club and continue training. We'll need you as strong as possible for when the kata returns to Kyoto. Agreed, President. Issei cut the call and gave the man one last smile before taking his leave. The subject followed him with a mysterious look, even when he had already closed the door. The man took the last sip of his drink, leaving the glass on the table. This is going to be an interesting holiday. Line jump. Issei and Tiamat were in the ladies' home along with the little dragons, watching as the protagonist was doing his final magic circle rehearsals for the day. Tiamat was leaning against the doorway, watching him with her hands in her pockets as she thought carefully. I see you have progressed as I had intended. Her gaze continued to fixate on his every move, as did the sweat running seductively down his face. Seeing you so focused on your training reminded me of a couple of things. Tiamat raised her gaze to the sky, a small smile breaking out on her face. Now that I'm totally clear of everything that happened to me, my desire to fight is crying out for me to find an opponent. It's exactly the same feeling I constantly had in the past. Tiamat looked at Issei again, increasing her small smile a little more. I think I owe it to him. It's nice to have what you're known for again. The dragoness put a hand to her chin with great seriousness, only to expel a sigh after a few seconds. I'd love to have a real confrontation with someone and kill them, Tiamat thought aloud, making it so Issei could hear her. Kill your opponent? Issei asked, abandoning his training and looking at her in complete disbelief. That's wrong. I don't think you need to kill someone to enjoy a fight, exclaimed Issei, scowling as he approached Tiamat. The dragoness watched him with both eyebrows raised as she realized he had spoken his last words aloud. Is it wrong for you to kill your opponent? Tiamat asked, glaring at him. Of course. Issei nodded several times, for emphasis on his words, while Tiamat opted for a more serious look than usual, approaching Issei in a somewhat menacing manner. For me, killing your enemy is not bad, she commented matter-of-factly, her face just inches away from Issei's. How can you say that? Issei asked, completely shocked. To you, your opponent's life has no value. Of course not. Tiamat's immediate, curt reply made Issei look at her with even more disbelief. He is my enemy, so his life is of no value to me whatsoever. No matter what you tell me, you won't change my mind. Tiamat moved a little closer to Issei's face, causing their noses to brush. In fact, I find your reasoning utterly stupid. Tiamat raised an eyebrow. What will you do when an enemy comes with the intention of killing you? Will you tell him you just want to have a friendly confrontation? Do you think he'll listen to you? Do you think he thinks your life has any kind of value? Why would he think that, if you're standing in his way? But, do you really think that without killing your enemies you will succeed in fulfilling your greatest ambition? At that moment, Issei's somewhat enraged look changed to a shocked one. My ambition? To protect your loved ones. Tiamat's last words made Issei look away, unable to say anything back to her about it. You won't use all your power to kill him, knowing that this person can kill everyone you love. You'll only do it to keep those absurd ethics intact. You'll let your own values destroy your life. Tiamat turned away from Issei's face, her hardened gaze transforming into a much more compassionate one as she rested her hand lovingly on Issei's cheek. Listen to me carefully, Issei. The protagonist gave him a look that was full of doubt and infighting. When you plunged into the supernatural world, you abandoned your everyday way of life, you abandoned your humanity. Now, you must adapt to this new world. Especially you, who are the bearer of the underdeveloped lizard. Thousands of enemies will come with the intention to harm you, directly or indirectly. They will not stop until they see you dead. Therefore, why would you have to deal with the death of subjects who have no value? Tiamat rested her other hand on Issei's cheek, forcing him to look her in the eye. How do I know that their lives have no value? That's very simple, Issei. That's because you're someone very good. Tiamat finally smiled with breathtaking purity, making Issei's eyes widen beyond belief. How could a person as good as you have enemies that have values? And if, in a remote case, that is the case, I'm sure it won't be long before they understand each other. Issei lowered his gaze, not knowing what exactly to answer. But Tiamat lowered her hands to the protagonist's shoulders, giving them a gentle squeeze, causing Issei to look up at her immediately. Listen to me well. I know it will be very difficult for you to kill coldly, due to the fact that life is much more valued under human society's point of view. I'm not saying you understand now, because I'm sure you will when the time comes. Tiamat's smile quickly twisted into a commanding look. I only hope you understand in time. Those last words caused Issei to give him a look full of confusion, which was completely appeased when Tiamat gave him a small friendly slap. Don't give it another thought, the dragoness exclaimed with a cute smile, which denoted her fangs. Now, the important thing is that you get a good rest and come back tomorrow with all your batteries. I'd like to show you a couple of new things. Issei cupped his bruised cheek with a somewhat surprised look, which eventually turned into a smile. Okay, line jump. Issei threw himself onto the bed, as if he were a sack of potatoes due to his mental and physical exhaustion. He closed his eyes with the intention of falling asleep, but was unable to do so thanks to Tiamat's words that continued to rattle around in his head. Issei fixed his gaze on the ceiling, his eyes reflecting his doubts. I have killed wandering demons with the president before, but she herself says that death for them is their salvation, so I never thought of them as someone, but as mere puppets, completely empty inside. The protagonist gave a big, restrained sigh. It's very different to kill someone who has a reason to live. I only killed you because my boss ordered it. The broken female voice, thanks to crying in intense pain, tormented Issei's mind. He brought his hand to his face, intending to cover his eyes. Why did I have to remember that? He wondered, clearly referring to Rainier. Line jump. Sorry to interrupt your morning training, boys, but something very important has come up. No problem, President. They all declared in unison. The only one who didn't was Kiba, who seemed to be buried in thought. None of the people present missed this, not even Issei, who was the most clueless of them all in that regard. Kiba, Issei wondered quietly, seeing his companion's strange attitude. He's been like this ever since Kakabil came to Kyo. Kaneko whispered, causing Issei to look at her. His attitude has gotten progressively worse. Yesterday was the point of no return, though. The point of no return? Issei asked quietly, very quizzical. He wasn't attentive in the fight, and that resulted in disaster. Asia almost got hurt because of him, so Rias punished him with 100 lashes. Issei widened his eyes in shock. 100 lashes, he thought, unaware that the president was so strict in punishments. We have found no trace of Kakabil, nor of his 2 assistants. But recently, Kaneko claimed to see both exorcists hanging around Kyo, but she lost sight of them. As soon as she finished saying those words, Kiba suddenly stood up from his seat and didn't take a second to open the door leading to the exit. Kiba, Issei shouted, standing up from his seat. The others stood up almost at the same time, seeing the blonde's reaction. Kiba didn't say a single word, just closed the door and disappeared from the room. Damn, Issei cursed him, clearly intending to force him back. Let him go, Issei. Ria's focused words made the young man stop in his tracks. President, Issei asked, rather surprised. His companions reacted in kind to their mistress' words. It won't do any good to hold him back now. You guys just make sure to do the search together, because we don't know how strong those 2 exorcists can be. Rias ordered. But why is he acting like that? Issei asked, worried about Kiba. Don't worry, commented the redhead with a smile. When this is all over, he'll be back to his old self. Why? That's something only he can tell you, Issei. Akino interrupted Issei, causing him to lower his gaze with even more hesitation. Line jump. I believe that in these days you have already learned to use each spell at the right moment. Tiamat commented, clearly pleased with the result. There is only one more thing left for me to teach you. With that, the training will end for now. The dragoness concluded, with a dangerous little smile at her last words. Great, Issei exclaimed, clenching her fist in glee. What would be the last thing you want to show me? he asked, with great curiosity. Let's move away from the cave for a bit. I wouldn't want to destroy it, Tiamat commented rather innocently, starting to walk away. Destroy the cave, Issei thought, really confused. I think at this distance it's fine, the dragoness stated, seeing that they were at the edge of their small territory. Before we start, I'd like to tell you something, the dragoness added, placing both hands on her hips. Every supernatural being has a healing power. Some are more effective than others. Some are not even good at healing a small wound effectively. Do I possess that ability as well? Issei pointed out to himself rather curiously. When I say everyone has it, it's everyone, Tiamat clarified. But the vast majority have very poor healing skills, and there are many others who don't even discover such an ability. For example, Tiamat raised her hand, creating a small cube of ice that floated in circles. I can use my own ice to heal wounds, but it is only effective on very superficial wounds. I see, Issei replied, following the small ice cube with his eyes. Another thing you should know is that when you heal someone, you not only heal their wounds, but you also replenish their magical reserves. Do you know where I'm going with this? The dragoness asked, narrowing her eyes. Issei looked down slightly. That means I'll have to spend a great deal of magic. Exactly, and you're not one to have much to spare. You should use it carefully. Agreed, Issei replied earnestly, then raised both his hands eagerly. Now, can you show me? Tiamat closed her eyes and looked away. No idea. Huh. In each person it can be presented by a different factor. It can be through magic, touch, blah, 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 the dragoness indicated, widening one of her eyes. It is impossible to know what your healing factor is. The only way to know is trial and error. But that doesn't matter now. Tiamat's last words caused Issei to look at her with slight surprise. There's no point in finding your healing factor as long as you don't have enough augmentations to bring your magic reserves up to a stat, at least, that's considered above average. You know something? Issei lowered his head with a small depressive aura around him. This not having a lot of magic reserves is starting to bother me quite a bit. Tiamat dropped her hand into the brown's hair, causing him to raise his gaze in slight surprise. Don't worry, the dragoness commented with a small smile. First, you need to improve your physical condition as much as you can. Then, we'll find someone who can help you with your control over the balance breaker. I'm sure that once you get full control of the armor, all your stats will explode to their limits. Of course, this also includes your magic reserves. I'll do my best, Issei shouted decisively. Tiamat nodded with a sideways smile at the sheer determination of her future lover. Now, I'd like to show you what to do when your magical reserves are much larger. Tiamat's gaze hardened from one second to the next, causing Issei to take a step back. Step back a bit, the dragoness commanded, raising one of her fists. The first thing you need to do is to build up a large amount of magic in your hand. Issei was visibly startled as she watched Tiamat's fist begin to charge with a massive amount of magical power, which began to shake everything around her. The second point is to shape it. Tiny cyclones surrounded the dragoness hand at different points, causing the blizzard to intensify even more, creating an utterly icy and menacing aura around Tiamat. And the easiest, Tiamat would turn her back to Issei, facing the forest. Release the strike towards your target. Tiamat flexed his arm back, charging a great force into his attack, which was even audible thanks to the sound of his fist clenching. Just before releasing his attack, Tiamat suddenly widened his eyes. Grave of ice. Tiamat brought his hand down towards the ground in one swift motion, creating a huge icy blast that forced Issei to take cover due to the magnitude of the attack. The only thing Issei could hear was the huge, deafening rumbling that such an attack produced, since he couldn't even open his eyes from the ice debris that was shot in all directions. After a few seconds, the blizzard suddenly disappeared, along with the huge sound of the explosion, which was still resounding like a huge echo. What do you think about it? Tiamat asked with an amused smile, seeing that a part of Issei's body was covered in ice. Hey, at least you would have warned me to get away a bit. Issei finally uncovered his face, being completely frozen by what he was witnessing. Further, there was a huge straight line behind Tiamat that was absolutely frozen. Huge ice cliffs rose where there had been trees, not to mention the clear drop that had now taken that area. Apparently, Tiamat's attack had generated a huge line of destruction that devastated everything in its path, replacing everything destroyed with those huge ice spikes. Seeing that Issei could not formulate a word for what he had witnessed, Tiamat decided to speak. Do you like ice? He asked playfully as he winked, blowing his palm in his direction, creating ice particles. Line jump. That man again. Issei wondered, receiving a pamphlet from Rias. Apparently you've got a regular customer, Issei. Rias commented with a smile. He has sent for you 5 times, counting this last one. Yeah, Issei replied, rubbing his hair. He is a very strange guy, all the orders of him are very strange. He thought to himself, completely puzzled. When you complete this request, I would like you to join the others in continuing the search for the exorcists. Has there been any news from Kiba? Issei asked instantly. Rias's expression changed instantly. No. Been completely missing for the last 5 days. Issei took a big breath. I hope that idiot is okay. Don't worry about it. If we find the exorcists, sooner or later we'll meet him. Yes, I know, Issei commented, rubbing his hair irritably. What I can't understand is why you let him go without telling him anything. Because I told you to investigate the whereabouts of the exorcists. Hearing her answer, Issei looked at her in confusion. Even though Kiba is away from me, he won't be in danger because technically he is under one of my orders. Do you understand? Not really. Issei looked down at him, trying to find the answer. If he's under my command, he won't challenge his master. If I don't challenge his master, he won't be considered a wandering demon. Issei looked up from him wide-eyed at the answer. Do you understand now? I see. Issei slapped his hands in understanding. You are awesome, President. You always think of everything. Issei exclaimed with a chuckle. Now, don't waste any more time and go. Rias waved his hand sweetly, receiving a quick nod from the brunette. Line jump. I wonder what that guy wants now. Issei thought as she walked through the park, heading towards the mysterious man's house. I always drink with him, or we play cards. If you're feeling so lonely, why don't you find cheaper company? Being so wrapped up in his thoughts, he couldn't see someone turn in his direction, crashing imminently. Oh, Issei groaned as he fell to the ground, rubbing his head in pain. Wait, Issei blinked in confusion. That didn't hurt in the slightest. In fact, he felt quite fluffy and comfortable. The protagonist fixed his gaze on a pair of black heels, now knowing that it was a woman. Issei slowly looked up from him upon discovering that the woman hadn't even flinched from the shock. How big? He thought with his eyes wide open, seeing how two huge mounds that looked like small mountains stood out quite a bit in the figure of said woman. They are noticeably larger than Tiamat's, and Tiamat's are already larger than Ria's. In short, they were monstrous. Are you okay? Suddenly, the woman's S completely faded into the background for Issei when he could see her beautiful face. Specifically, because of her crimson-red eyes that gave off absolute discipline. I apologize, I did not see you. The woman crouched down and held out her hand. Thanks to that, Issei was able to get a full view of her beautiful face. Her pale, fine skin made a perfect contrast to her long black hair with violet highlights that spread finely along her figure, reaching to the ground in her current position. She had somewhat unruly triangular bangs that fell freely across her entire forehead, which made her look quite pretty. Pretty delicate, and small lips that made you want to steal a kiss from her if the opportunity presented itself. Her great beauty was in perfect contrast to her voluptuous figure, and her black secretary outfit only made the lady look even sexier. Issei shook his head at her, realizing that he had rambled on the lady's figure too much. Don't apologize, it's my fault for not paying attention to the road. Issei accepted the woman's soft hand with gusto. No problem, the woman answered matter-of-factly, helping Issei. The woman fixed her gaze on the pamphlet she had picked up for a brief second, though she quickly returned it to him. Thanks, Penemue, that's my name. Penemue, that's my name, clarified the woman, fixing her hair. You're a delivery boy. Huh, Issei rubbed her hair in great surprise. How did you know? That's why. Penemue pointed to the pamphlet, causing Issei to look at her with even more surprise. Does that mean you know about the demons? Issei whispered. Something like that, the beautiful woman commented, looking to her sides as if searching for something or someone. I know someone from England who likes to do business with demons. Issei looked at her with slight intrigue at her words. Well, at least he was like that before. When he was 25, he hired female demons to learn to control his lust. Hey, is he by any chance a guy with blonde fringes? Issei pointed to his hair to emphasize his words. Penemue fixed his gaze on Issei and grabbed him tightly by the shoulders, catching him completely off guard. Where is he staying? Calm down. Issei raised his hands in defense. Actually, I was on my way to his flat. You can come with me if you want, Issei commented with a nervous smile. All right. Penemue released him, then lowered his head slightly. Thanks. Line jump. Issei knocked on the flat door, only to be answered by the guy almost instantly. You're right on time as usual, Brett, he commented, the door ajar revealing a bit of his face and the fishing rods he carried in one of his hands. Azazel looked to Issei's side, seeing a woman taller than him with a look of few friends. Keeping his expression calm, Azazel slammed the door shut without a word. Huh, Issei blinked in confusion. Without him even being able to turn away, Penemue kicked the door shut, causing Issei's eyes to widen like saucers. How hard, the protagonist exclaimed with a strange pose. Penemue walked past Issei with furious strides. Azazel, you son of a bitch, shouted Penemue, grabbing him by the shukata with great force. Hey? Issei's mind exploded as he tried to decipher what was happening right now. Relax, you look like a child, Azazel commented with great calmness as he raised both hands in defense. I look like a child, Penemue ranted with clear anger, says the idiot who left a pile of papers and homework unresolved again for the 12th time. Penemue began to lash out a little, though the now recognized Azazel didn't seem to be affected. I'm not doing your homework again. You're coming with me, now. Penemue stopped shaking him and brought her face close to his, glaring at him. Did you hear me? Azazel stopped cleaning his ear, giving him a passive look. Did you say something? Penemue's eyes flashed dangerously. You why bastard. Realizing that Penemue had the intentions of hitting him, his gaze turned serious for the first time so far. Wait, don't do anything stupid. Hearing Azazel's unusual response, Penemue was visibly surprised. Understood. Azazel averted his gaze for a second to Issei, causing Penemue to give him a sidelong glance. Penemue finally sighed and left Azazel. What's the job? It's a very interesting one. Azazel waved his shukata to fix it from the earlier jiggle. I'd love to explain, but it's best we discuss it privately another day. Penemue looked at Issei for a second, causing the young man to give him a confused look. Very well. she finally replied. But I'll settle in here to make sure you do what you need to do, she finished, with eyes that indicated a lot of pain if he ran away again. All right, Azazel replied, ignoring her death stare outright. Now, I'm going with the brat to go fishing. Azazel hugged Issei by the shoulder as if he were his lifelong best friend. In the meantime, you can fix the door for me. Penemue folded his arms and spat on the ground. FCKU. Line jump. Thank you for joining me this week, Azazel commented, sitting very comfortably as he waited for a fish to bite. No problem, that's what you call me for, Issei replied with a small smile. Speaking of which, Azazel gave him a sidelong glance. You haven't heard of us before, have you? Issei looked at him with confusion at the question. No, why do you say that? Are you guys some kind of big company or something? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Something like that, Azazel replied, seeming to be even more relaxed that Issei had no idea of his identity. I'm the boss, and Penemue is my secretary. Since it's always busy, there are days when I decide to take a holiday. I see, Issei replied, then gave a look that gave off suspicion. He looks like a bum. Issei blinked as a realization hit him. Wait a second. Azazel looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Why did you come to Kyoto? The protagonist asked, rubbing his hair. There are many vacation spots all over the world, and this is far from being one of them. I'm not here by a fluke. Azazel's response along with his mysterious look left Issei with 1,000 questions. Oh, you snagged one, Azazel exclaimed, causing Issei to pay attention and catch the fish, though it fell into the water as a result of his distraction. Line jump. Issei appeared through a purple magic circle in Tiamat's cave. The protagonist had a bored look on his face as he had both hands on the back of his neck. That guy is such a pain sometimes. Always so mysterious, Issei commented to no one in particular. Who are you talking about? D-Drake's voice echoed in the small cave. If you didn't spend all day sleeping when I'm not training, you'd know. Issei glared at the gauntlet after his words. D-Drake cleared his throat. Sorry, mate. Human life doesn't hold my attention in the slightest. I thought as much. But if you tell me his name, maybe I can remember it. Wait a minute, Issei rubbed his chin as he stepped out of the cave. I'm sure that woman had said her name, but I don't remember it because of the bizarre situation. Issei stopped in his tracks and widened his eyes as he saw that outside the cave was Tiamat. He couldn't formulate a word, he could only observe. Tiamat was doing some training, visualizing an opponent in front of her. Her arms and legs were moving in an impressive rhythm, along with her chest and hips making splendid movements. His eyes focused and completely immersed in his imaginary opponent made the light sweat running down his face give him an incredibly beautiful reflection. Issei had never had the chance to see her like this, and right now he was really happy to be able to witness his master's training routine. Amazing, was all Issei could say without being able to take his eyes off her, especially from her face, as she looked really attractive right now. Tiamat held out her hand once more after hearing the chestnut's voice. Issei, Tiamat asked, watching him with mild surprise. I thought you were taking the day off today, the dragoness concluded, turning around completely and wiping the sweat from her face, arranging her long hair in the process. She didn't realize she added to her attractiveness when she did so. Ah, yes, Issei exclaimed, in a lame attempt to respond. Tiamat looked at him with slight confusion, causing the protagonist to be forced to look away by such a cute expression from the dragoness. It's my day off, and so I had thought I'd ask you out. Are you sure? The dragoness asked, bringing both hands to her hips. Fine with me, I'd be happy to. But I don't want you to be burdened by my presence. After all, we see each other's faces every day. What? I could never get tired of seeing you. A small blush decorated the dragoness' face after hearing those words. Wouldn't you like to go see another movie? Issei held out her hand. Tiamat held her hand to her chest. She seemed to be thinking whether to accept or not. Matsuda and Madohama will be free today. You could meet them once and for all, concluded the man with a huge toothy grin. Tiamat remained silent for a few seconds with her typical serious expression, until she finally smiled. All right, the dragoness took Issei's hand affectionately. That affection was answered by Issei with an even more radiant smile. Just as they had closed the plans, something happened. Hey, Akino. Issei brought her free hand to her ear. Issei, we need you to come now. We found the location of the exorcists. They're with Kiba at a restaurant. Kaneko will pass you the address by mobile phone. Okay, Issei nodded earnestly. I'll be right there. The call cut off, leaving Issei a little nervous as he saw a hint of disappointment in Tiamat's gaze. I promise that when this is all over, I'll take you wherever you want to go, he exclaimed with great conviction, denoting a smile so focused and certain that it matched his words perfectly. Don't worry, she gave him a gentle squeeze in his tender grasp. Just be careful, and if you need help, don't hesitate to call me, okay? I promise. The young man held up his thumb with a toothy grin as he disappeared with a light blue magic circle courtesy of Tiamat. When she was finally left alone, the dragoness couldn't help but think of Issei's smile. Oh, rather, her many smiles. She brought both hands to her chest and a loving smile decorated her face. There is no longer any doubt in my mind. His smile is what I like most about him. Line jump. I hope I got there in time. Issei came running up, standing in front of his companions. Yes, Kaneko replied simply. They haven't left yet. How about we go now, before Kiba makes a mess? Akino asked with her typical smile. All right, Issei nodded, being joined by the other three. I guess the president already knows, he commented, before entering the premises. That's right, Aquino nodded. She didn't come because she wants to decide what to do about Sona. So, I guess we're just here to get some information, Issei concluded, looking at the two hooded women seriously. Still, it didn't take long for his gaze to twist towards Kiba. He had a lot of things to ask him. Can we sit down? Aquino asked, with his typical condescending smile. More demons, the woman who could see a small green fringe of fringes sighed. All right, I want to set the record straight from now on. I don't think I can do it with this blonde demon here, since he won't listen to reason. Very well. Issei sat down next to Kiba, giving him a sidelong glance. The blonde barely minded the intrusion. He had only one thing on his mind. Or rather, one goal. We want to know how many sacred swords Cockabeel has in his possession. Taniko spoke with her typical utter apathy. Why should I answer them? The woman with the green fringes spoke again. This is a matter of the church. Demons should not meddle in what does not concern them. Need I remind you that this is our mistress's territory? Asia asked with a somewhat false smile on her face. Asia Argento. The other girl finally spoke, her tone quite cheerful and fiery, unlike her companion. You're a nun who became a heretic and transformed into a reincarnated demon. The girl spoke quite matter-of-factly, not noticing that this was a delicate subject, or so Issei saw it. Aren't you sorry for your sins? Don't you still feel a little devotion to God? Aren't you ashamed that you've become a demon? That's enough. Issei slammed the table loudly, drawing the stares of those around him, though he seemed to care little. I don't care. Huh? Issei looked at Asia with wide eyes after hearing her answer. Having become a demon, it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. To hell with God. A somewhat gloomy look adorned Asia's face, causing Issei and the smaller exorcist to startle a little. Why would you ask a demon that, Irina? The older exorcist asked. Have you forgotten the effects of demon corruption already? There is no such thing as a demon that is right. But, Zenobia, Irina exclaimed in a plaintive tone. Remember that their attitudes changed in this last millennium. They even say that demon corruption has disappeared in the post-war generation. They are just that, mere rumors. We don't know for sure. Zenobia looked at them again, clearing her throat. Anyway, beat it. We have nothing to talk about with demons. I'm not leaving until you hand over those swords. Kiba finally spoke, getting everyone's attention. I'm not giving two holy swords to a demon. Zenobia replied, clenching her fist slightly, indicating that everything could get out of control. Isn't there some way we can engage in conversation without wanting to kill each other all the time? Aquino asked, covering her smile with her hand. The answer to her question came in the form of a huge roar, the product of both exorcists' stomachs. Zenobia, I'm starving. The smaller exorcist threw herself onto the table as an aura of the dead began to surround her. Meanwhile, Zenobia tried to remain serious, but the huge blush of embarrassment on her face only made it easier to mock her. This wouldn't be happening if you hadn't spent all of our funds on that stupid painting. I guess we can talk while we eat. Aquino pulled a wallet out of her pocket, denoting a large amount of yen. What do you say, Kiba? Are you hungry too? She asked, looking more serious than usual. All right, Kiba replied. This past week I haven't eaten very well. Line jump. I can't believe we took a bribe from the demons. Zenobia commented, finally with her hood down as she ate with a large appetite. Did you enjoy the food? Aquino asked, clearly intent on getting the information they came for. Zenobia wiped her lips and looked at her seriously. Cockabeel already has all the fragments of the Excalibur. They all looked at her with slight surprise at her answer. The only two missing parts are the ones we have. Why did he return to Kyo? If you guys are following him, I don't see the need for that guy to come back. Issei asked with great interest. As you may be aware, Cockabeel is looking to start a war. Another war that is exactly like the one 1,000 years ago. Zenobia removed a completely bandaged object from her back, making all the demons feel slightly uncomfortable by the faint aura it emanated. Cockabeel seeks to repair the Excalibur and take it over in order to anger the angels. His second target is the Mao sister and the sister of the current Leviathan to get the demons involved as well. Wait a moment, Issei protested. Why on earth would a fallen angel, with such a high position, be so eager to start a war? It makes no sense. That's very simple. Irina replied simply, making Issei pay special attention to her. That's because his original sin is murder. Original sin. Issei wondered internally, unable to find an answer. Then why don't we solve this problem right now? Kiba stood up from his seat, holding out his hand. Give me the shards. Are you deaf? Zenobia frowned slightly. As I said before, demons have no part in the affairs of the sacred sword. Besides, a small smile would appear on Zenobia's face. Why should I bestow the remaining fragments to someone who is much weaker than me? You want to try it? Kiba questioned with a small smile. A showdown? Zenobia stood up from her seat with a smile. All right, it'll be a 2-on-2 fight. She held out her hand. If you guys win, you can order whatever you want. And if you guys win? Kiba asked, watching the hand with his arms crossed. Your dear mistress will leave Kyo with her dogs. Everyone was surprised at the answer, except for Kiba. If we take one of her targets away, Cockabeel might rethink her plans. Sounds good to me. Kiba shook the exorcist's hand, receiving a stunned look from his companions. Kiba, exclaimed Aquino. It was obvious he disapproved of her pedantic attitude. Well, Zenobia looked at everyone with a smile. Who will be the other one? Issei stood up from his seat, not saying a word. He just looked at Kiba and the exorcist seriously. Very well, Zenobia commented, without reproach. Line jump. Everyone was outside the restaurant, in an alternate dimension to carry out the fight smoothly. Before we begin, Zenobia drew her sword, looking at Kiba with great seriousness. Why do you want to take the Excalibur shards? Kiba's gaze twisted into one filled with hatred, being something that took Issei by surprise. Those swords are the personification of my kidnappers, of what they did to me and my friends. I want those swords to destroy them. I see. The sword's bandages fell, revealing a rather strong holy aura around it. But, as I said before, there's no point in handing these swords over to someone weaker than me. Kiba narrowed his eyes with a mischievous look. That remains to be seen, he threatened, causing a large number of swords to appear around him. My ability comes from the hatred I have for my kidnappers. My hatred increases more and more just by having to see or remember them. He picked up one of his swords, glaring at it. I will use this hatred to destroy the Excalibur, the people who were involved in the experiment, and anyone who tries to stand in my way of revenge. I won't stop until I finish them all off. That's why Kiba was chasing them, Issei thought aloud, remaining with his hands in his pockets. I guess I can't stay mad at him for defying the president's orders. How about we begin our combat, Issei? Irina removed her tunic and removed her bandages from her sword, revealing a beautiful face of a young woman with light brown hair and eyes. She looked to be about Issei's age. Oh, Issei was startled. I know you. The protagonist pointed at her brazenly. Irina's face lit up for a second at his words. Who were you? He put a hand to his chin, leaving Irina on the verge of tears. You don't remember me, she shouted, clearly offended. We were best friends when we were kids. Issei snapped his fingers. That's right, I remember now. The protagonist folded his arms, activating his gauntlet. But I thought you were a man before. I see you've changed quite a bit. He put his hand to his chin, studying her body. Still, you don't even come close to Tiamat's heels. Issei blinked, completely taken aback by his thoughts. Why the hell am I comparing them? Oh, knew our reunion would be so sad. Irina hugged herself as small tears welled up in her eyes. You succumbed to your darker side and joined the demons. What happened to you, Issei? She pointed at him with the sword that appeared to be a whip. But don't worry, I'll take care of exorcising you, and I'm sure you'll end up in heaven, because God forgives everyone. Irina clasped her hands together quickly and raised her gaze to heaven, praying. Isn't that right, God? Please have mercy on this sinful soul. What a strange girl, Issei thought aloud, as a bead of nervous sweat trickled down his head. Strange, Irina asked. Is it strange that I admire God? Right. She patted her face, as if she had found the greatest answer in the universe. You're a demon. It's only natural that prayers and faith are rare for you. Irina pointed her gun at him again, scowling. Repent of your sins, son of the devil. Let me think about it, Issei said with a sly grin. No one had noticed that all this time, his gauntlet had been flashing green. Really? A glint decorated Irina's eyes. In that case, I'll give you a minute to think about it, she exclaimed, with a very cheerful smile. Thank you, Issei replied, as his gauntlet continued to flicker. Their conversation was interrupted when a huge explosion was felt in the place. Everyone looked completely shocked at the huge crater Zenobia had left behind. Kiba seemed to have escaped the range by the skin of his teeth, watching intently at his opponent who stood in the center of the crater. There is a reason why the Excalibur destruction is called the Sacred Sword of Destruction, Zenobia explained as she pointed the huge sword at Kiba. Only one part of the seven has so much power, Kiba thought aloud, somewhat surprised. Destroying all seven is going to be an uphill battle, he concluded, with a fake smile on his face. No way I managed to concentrate so much power in just 1 second, Aquino commented, being the one who seemed to be the most surprised, along with Asia. Why are they so surprised? Issei thought, with a raised eyebrow. It was no big deal. Let's see what's stronger. Kiba materialized a large sword. Whether your sacred sword or my demonic sword. Only one part of the seven has so much power, Kiba thought aloud, somewhat surprised. Destroying all seven is going to be an uphill battle, he concluded, with a fake smile on his face. No way I managed to concentrate so much power in just 1 second, Aquino commented, being the one who seemed to be the most surprised, along with Asia. Why are they so surprised? Issei thought, with a raised eyebrow. It was no big deal. Let's see what's stronger. Kiba materialized a large sword. Whether your sacred sword or my demonic sword. Kiba rushed towards Zenobia with the intention of cutting her into 1,000 pieces, but the woman moved much faster than him and managed to dodge him with no trouble, taking a big leap backwards. Not yet. Kiba thrust his sword deep into the ground, causing a massive amount of blades to fly in his direction. It's a pity Zenobia closed her eyes, charging a large amount of holy magic into the sword. As the multiple swords were about to reach their destination, Zenobia waved her sword in Kiba's direction, creating a small, highly condensed D-shaped holy magic attack that destroyed all the swords and passed through without a problem. Kiba blinked in disbelief as he saw that the attack was about to hit him. The blonde materialized another sword to give him a better chance to defend himself, but it was all in vain. Kiba's demon swords took no more than 2 seconds to shatter, taking the full impact. Kiba screamed in great pain, being dragged down by the sheer force of the attack, until he finally crashed into the restaurant and a small explosion erupted on the spot. Tiba, all his friends shouted, alarmed by the force of the attack. Issei stayed in place, still with his arms crossed, while Asia went to the aid of the unconscious Kiba, who lay with severe wounds all over his body, especially where the attack hit. It looked like some kind of weird magic slash, but it turned out to be a mere destructive magic attack, like the dragon shot. Issei thought, carefully analyzing the attack. If I had concentrated that attack to a more precise level, perhaps. Issei blinked in slight surprise as he found something interesting. Wait a minute, are the swords capable of creating magic cuts? It might be achievable, but I would need to concentrate magic without a spell beforehand, just like Tiamat taught me last time. That would be very interesting, he concluded, feeling a small urge to practice with swords. Only you are left. Issei awoke from his thoughts after hearing Zenobia. What will you do? I don't think you want to face me, after what you saw. All set, partner. Diedreg spoke in Issei's mind, causing the brown-haired man to smile. Thanks, Diedreg, he thought, noting that the gauntlet had already stopped blinking. Wait, Zenobia, Irina exclaimed, causing the aforementioned to look at her with a raised eyebrow. Issei is planning to surrender himself to God's grace. Really? Zenobia looked at Issei with wide eyes. It's certainly very interesting to see a demon accept God. That. A small smile appeared on Issei's face. I was only joking. What? Shouted Irina, on the verge of tears. How can you make fun of the Lord? It was to be expected, Zenobia commented, preparing to give him a great thrust with her sword. Even if you are a demon, we will not forgive this offense. A very menacing golden aura completely surrounded Zenobia's body as the tip of the sword pointed at Issei's chest. Don't worry, I promise not to attack you with my full power. Killing you would only give us more unnecessary trouble. The ground began to crack dangerously, causing everyone present to stare at her in shock, even her companion. The only one who didn't seem surprised was Issei. The protagonist still continued with his arms crossed, his smile twisted into a serious look as he watched her intently. Get ready, Zenobia shouted, raising the sword over her shoulder, causing a blizzard to rise around her. Wait, I don't think it's necessary to go that far, Irina exclaimed, in complete disagreement. This will teach him not to insult God. Zenobia stepped forward, with clear intentions to lunge at Issei, but something very strange happened. Just as the exorcist swung her sword forward to begin the attack, a huge tremor came over the place, along with a dull impact that echoed throughout the place. Zenobia's eyes grew wide and her mouth opened abruptly, vomiting a large amount in the process. Rule number 1, never underestimate your opponent under any circumstances. That's what my master taught me, Issei commented with a smile. His casual expression was completely overshadowed, thanks to his hand being completely sunk into Zenobia's abdomen. Irina could only widen her eyes in shock at what she witnessed. Issei finally pulled away slowly, leaving Zenobia to catch her breath. Zenobia dropped her sword in pain and clutched her stomach tightly as a gasp dulled by the lack of air escaped her lips. Her eyes twitched as she seemed to be writhing in pain from just one blow. Zenobia, are you okay? Irina quickly arrived to help her, with great concern. When she seemed to have gotten the pain under control because she had stopped screaming, Irina's concern grew even more as Zenobia fell to her knees on the ground. What was that? Zenobia thought, her eyes twitching in pain. I didn't even see when he moved. Zenobia. Irina helped her to her feet. Thank you, I think I can continue now. Zenobia replied, picking up the sword from the ground. Oh okay, Irina replied, not quite agreeing with the idea of continuing the fight. Irina, we'll go all out. Zenobia fixed her gaze on Issei. Both of us at once. Issei folded his arms. I wonder how strong they'll be with combined attacks. Zenobia narrowed her eyes. It doesn't seem to bother him in the slightest that we both attack at the same time, she thought. Irina. The young woman looked at her intently. First, let's try to make him dizzy and then attack him. Irina just nodded, agreeing with the plan. They both dashed off at a high speed towards Issei, coming within inches of touching him. They repeated the sequence several times, passing very close to him, causing the brown's hair to flutter in several directions due to the great speed. Still, there was something odd. What? Irina's eyebrows twitched as she passed close to Issei again. It's not moving at all. Can't it see us? Was that hit just luck? No, it can't be that. Zenobia braked out of nowhere a few feet away from Issei and extended her arm, throwing the sword at an enormous speed. The exorcist widened her eyes in shock as the sword pierced Issei's body, seemingly. Irina positioned herself right behind Issei's back and used the length of her whip to her advantage to land several blows from afar, which ended up having the same result as the previous one. All of the attacks pierced Issei's body as if it were an illusion. What the? Irina exclaimed, stopping his attacks. The attacks pierced through it like it's nothing. That gauntlet, Zenobia thought carefully. I'm sure I've seen it somewhere before. Zenobia cried out in pain as Issei appeared out of nowhere and punched her in the face. Zenobia took several steps back as she covered her face and her body shook with pain. Are you serious? Issei asked, still with his fist outstretched. I'm sure I didn't use much force, he said to himself, looking at his hand with a raised eyebrow. Again, I couldn't see it, Irina thought to herself, clutching her weapon even tighter as she watched him in disbelief. It was definitely not a lucky thing. Zenobia finally stopped stepping backwards, though her body continued to tremble slightly. Began to seep between his hands, and when he uncovered his face he could see that his nose was bleeding too much. Zenobia began to sigh, with the thought of getting used to the pain. Damn you, she spat angrily. Now you'll see. She reached her hand out to the side and closed her eyes. Petra, Batrius, Dionysius, and Holy Mary, I beg you to hear my cry. After saying those words, a golden magic circle appeared, from which a blue-colored sword began to emerge and was chained. And with this sword of punishment, grant me freedom. Zenobia took the sword, breaking all the chains in the process. Holy sword, Delandol. Delandol, Issei wondered with a raised eyebrow. It is a holy sword above even Excalibur itself. Zenobia replied. I see, sounds interesting. Issei replied, holding a hand to his chin. You're not serious, huh? Zenobia asked, then widened her eyes dangerously. It'll cost you. Zenobia tried to give him a great thrust, just as Irina attacked him with her sacred sword. Issei spun around at a great speed and slightly crouched down, positioned his hands perfectly, and caught the two swords before they could touch his body, creating a small crater at his feet. With his bare hand, Zenobia thought, completely incredulous. Irina didn't even have time to protest, as Issei attempted to give her a side kick that she dodged with a leap. His kick continued as if it were the hand of a clock, until it reached Zenobia. She too was able to dodge it with a small jump. Issei gave a small jump and spun around, ending up on his feet while his arms remained crossed in X. Issei threw his arms out sharply to the sides, creating a huge blizzard along with a bright red light. The two women flew off at an enormous speed without warning, due to the massive blizzard. What the FCK? Zenobia thought as she covered her face from all the debris that had flown out after such an explosion of power. Irina ended up smashing into the restaurant, while Zenobia was able to get back on her feet when the unstoppable blizzard finally subsided. Zenobia got to her feet, while Irina rejoined her friend as quickly as possible. The dust finally began to dissipate, causing both of them to widen their eyes in shock at what they were witnessing. A thin crimson aura surrounded the armor that now protected Issei. The Brown still stood in the same position as always, waiting for his next move. It's obvious we won't be able to beat him in a melee battle. Zenobia made her point. Irina nodded seriously, having learned what her partner was planning. They both began to create small magic circles. The amount was such that they ended up covering her figure completely. They both shouted loudly, releasing a large amount of small magical attacks that were directed towards a single target. Issei continued to fold his arms. All he did was materialize his helmet. All of the attacks began to impact against Issei, though his armor didn't seem to receive even the slightest scratch. Just as the magical attack stopped, Zenobia appeared at Issei's side out of nowhere, charging the same attack she did to Kiba on her sword. Let's see if your armor can take this, she shouted, throwing the attack at him, which was visibly much stronger than the previous one. Issei just watched as the attack came towards him, then frowned. Do you think I'm an idiot? The chestnut shouted, deflecting the attack with his hand as if it was nothing. Still, his gauntlet had been damaged quite a bit. Irina's eyes widened as she saw the attack headed towards her position, narrowly dodging it. The girl watched the explosion caused as beads of sweat began to adorn her face. Good thing you dodged it. Ugh, Irina gasped, completely terrified when she saw that Issei was almost glued to her back. The small smile on the protagonist's face did not match the situation. Don't scare me like that, she shouted again, unleashing a barrage of thrusts, all being dodged by Issei without any trouble whatsoever. Don't let him get away, Irina, Zenobia commanded, quickly rushing to her friend and beginning to perform various thrusts endlessly across Issei's back, completely surrounding him. Still, that was far too far to be enough. The two women were attacking at a speed that not even their expectant followers could keep up with. Anyway, Issei was moving his body, ducking and swaying from side to side, dodging all of it without any trouble whatsoever. He dodged absolutely all of her attacks with uncanny speed, and the most incredible thing was that he could dodge Zenobia's thrusts without even looking at her. After being like that for a few seconds, Issei's face turned serious and disappeared out of nowhere, causing Irina to strike Zenobia with her whip, and both of them were completely entangled. Do they surrender? They both raised their gazes to see Issei watching from the sky. Irina, distract him while I prepare the attack, whispered Zenobia before untying herself. Issei lowered to the ground and watched them, seeing that they still had the will to fight. I don't have much more time to drag this out. We have to share the information with the president, Issei thought, creating a small ball of crimson energy in his hand. Now, Irina, Zenobia shouted, swinging her sword back, charging the same powerful attack as last time. Here I come. Irina swooped in at a great speed, though it didn't go as she had hoped. Issei lunged towards her when she was halfway there, receiving a strong kick to the chest that made her cough up a large amount of. Irina went flying in Zenobia's direction, so she was forced to drop her sword and grab her friend to keep from falling next to her. Are you all right, Irina? Zenobia smiled as she saw Irina open her eyes, but her smile instantly vanished when she saw that Issei was in front of the two of them, with a small magical orb pointed at their heads. Put your heads down, were the opponent's simple words. The girls had no choice but to obey. Dragon shot. D-Drag's voice was accompanied by a huge screeching vibration, along with a gigantic roar that seemed to have no end in sight. The exorcist's eyes were wide as saucers after hearing such a huge explosion. And the most shocked of all was undoubtedly Irina, as she was witnessing what had caused such an explosion. I remember. Zenobia turned her face to see how the restaurant had disappeared without a trace. That gauntlet, only the bearers of the Welsh dragon have it. I would never have guessed that the bearer of the Welsh dragon belonged to the demons, Zenobia commented as they were resting even in the created dimension, along with Irina. It's a long story, Issei replied. He was sitting on the grass along with the exorcists, as he waited for them and Kiba to recover. Looking back on it now, I guess it wasn't so bad talking to you guys. Zenobia's comment made everyone look at her in mild astonishment. If you're with the Sekiryude, it means your chances of winning weren't as imaginary as I thought. Don't try to deflect the topic. Kiba, all of his teammates exclaimed, seeing that he had finally woken up. You guys lost. Hold up your end of the bargain and hand over the swords to me. Kiba commented with a certain coldness in his words. Huh, Irina exclaimed, completely startled. We shouldn't have been so confident, Zenobia. Her companion reprimanded, causing Zenobia to lower her head. She was clearly sorry that she had let herself get carried away with her apparent superiority. I'm sorry, Irina. Zenobia apologized, looking away. They all looked too weak. The exorcist fixed her gaze on Issei. I didn't imagine that the weakest of them could manage to multiply their levels in such an absurd way. Zenobia withdrew the sword from her back, intending to hand it to Issei. Issei stared at the sword for a few seconds, thinking carefully. I was the one who won, so that means I get to decide what the deal will be, doesn't it? Issei asked, receiving a look of intrigue from Zenobia. Well, yes, that's what we had agreed on. But weren't you both looking for the same thing? She asked, looking at Kiba. The blonde looked at Issei, clenching his fist slightly for obvious reasons. On second thought, I'd like to make another kind of deal. Kiba tried to get up to interrupt him, but was stopped by Kaneko. This is not the time for you to get carried away with your emotions, Kiba. The albino reprimanded him, causing Kiba to only grit his teeth. What kind of deal? Zenobia asked with clear interest in the subject. You can keep the swords, he commented, a sly smile beginning to appear on his face. But they must fight alongside us to stop Cockabeel. What? Absolutely everyone shouted, without exception. Issei, it's absurd for the followers of God and demons to fight together. Aquino exclaimed, in a very disapproving tone. Do you know what that means? What's wrong with that? Issei asked with an innocent smile on his face. We accept. The demons looked at Zenobia with great surprise. A deal is a deal, he said simply. And Blondie, she mentioned, causing Kiba to look at her coldly. When this is all over, you can do whatever you want with the Excalibur shards. Hearing this, the blonde blinked in surprise. A sword that has caused so many people to suffer does not deserve to bear the title of Holy Sword, she concluded, rising to her feet. Hey. Irina squatted down at a frighteningly fast speed towards Issei, causing him to panic. Why are you agreeing to help some exorcists? I don't want anyone to die, Issei commented, flustered by the sudden approach. The two exorcists were visibly surprised by his response. Not even us? Irina asked, a cheerful gleam in her eyes. Of course not, Issei replied seriously. That's why I invited them to form a temporary team. I know there are differences between us, but we all seek the same goal. And what is that goal? Zenobia asked, looking over her shoulders at him. Not to let innocent people die for this, Issei stated with great seriousness. The decisiveness and firmness in his words made the two exorcists stare at him for a short second. Let's go now, Irina, Zenobia commented, looking straight ahead. Yeah, replied Irina, jumping to her feet. I'll see you tomorrow at the academy after school to make plans, Zenobia commented. Both women started to leave, but before they left, Zenobia gave Issei one last look. I almost forgot. Sekiryude, I have a message for you. Hearing this, Issei watched her with great intrigue. The Hakuryuku has already awakened. After hearing that name, Issei could feel every inch of her skin bristle all over. He didn't know why, but just hearing that made his entire body go into a deep shiver that seemed to have no end. Issei didn't understand why he had reacted like that, but if he could be sure of one thing, that reaction couldn't indicate anything good. Line jump. Join the exorcists. Ria stares at them, thinking calmly. I think that's not a very bad idea. At least, just this once, declared the president, observing all her servants. The only ones not on site were Kiba and Issei. We need all the help we can get to stop Cockabeel, and only someone with a very bad temper wouldn't accept help. She finished, with a smile as she saw that things were turning out better than she expected. How do you plan to use them? Asia asked curiously. From what I was informed, they are much stronger than Kiba. Therefore, they would serve on the front line. Riaz narrowed his eyes somewhat darkly. That way, if anyone dies, it will be them and not us. Riaz, I have a doubt, Kaneko commented, with her typical neutrality. I hear you. How do we know we'll be enough to defeat Cockabeel? From what I understand, his power is much higher than Razor. The albino commented, making it clear that they did not know the potential of a Cotter. In Cockabeel's case, he is known to be the weakest Cotter. That doesn't mean it won't be a problem, but I think all of us together and with Hayaru's help it will be a piece of cake. Ria sorted through his papers, giving them all one last look. If things get complicated, Sona will take care of calling my brother and Serafal. Obviously, I wouldn't want to go that far, because I'd like to prove to Surzech that my nobility is powerful enough to enter the raiding games, despite not being complete. Of course, I hadn't thought of that last one, Aquino clarified, ducking his head. It's a perfect opportunity for you to rise above the other demons of your generation. That's right, Rias nodded, with an ambitious smile. I want to prove to the demon world that I am far better than my cousin. But, for them to accept those terms, you'll need a ridiculously strong servant. Kaneko made her point, taking a sweet. Speaking of which, Rias raised his gaze, denoting great intrigue. Where's Issei? The three women looked at each other seriously, then turned their gaze to their mistress. We think the matter may be a bit delicate. Rias blinked expectantly after listening to Akino, waiting for the answer. Line jump. Concentrating a large amount of magic without using a magic circle is very tricky. Don't bother if you don't even get it in a few months, Tiamat commented, studying with her gaze as Issei was trying to release all his magical reserves in his hand, but he was barely carrying a small violet orb that was barely visible. Personally, it took me over 4 months to be able to perfect the attack I demonstrated to you earlier. Seconds passed, and he got no response from Issei, which she found very strange. She looked up, to see that Issei's face seemed to be different than usual. He seemed to be very worried about something. Obviously, this was something Tiamat wasn't going to let go of, being someone so important to her. Hey, Issei, are you listening to me? Tiamat asked, standing up and passing her hand in front of his eyes, causing Issei to wake up. Though, the protagonist exclaimed, destroying what little concentration he had, causing the small robe to disappear from his hands. I'm sorry, he apologized, looking away. It's just that I heard something. Hearing this, Tiamat quickly sat down in front of him. What's troubling you? She asked, hoping she could help him. Yes, Issei rubbed his hair, giving a big sigh. It's the Hakuryuku, he's already woken up. And, I honestly don't know what to think. Ddrag has always told me that all the bearers end up killing each other. The battle to the death between them is fated. Issei looked Tiamat in the eye, denoting great uncertainty in his gaze. Being one of the two bearers, I suppose my fight against him won't take too long to happen. Are you afraid? Tiamat's question made Issei's eyes widen beyond belief. Afraid? He wondered aloud to himself. Yes, Tiamat replied. Fear of dying. Issei rubbed his hair as he thought carefully about the question. I think so. Issei lowered his gaze, a depressing smile on his face. I'm a coward, aren't I? Tiamat looked at him for a short second without saying a word, until finally a smile appeared on her face. She rested her hand on Issei's shoulder, giving it a small comforting squeeze, causing the young man to look at her with great surprise. That's not true, the dragoness declared with great conviction. Being afraid of death doesn't make you a coward, it makes you someone. It makes me someone, Issei asked, not quite understanding what she was referring to. Tiamat brought her hand to Issei's cheek. It makes you someone, because you can feel. Tiamat used her free hand to bring Issei's hand to her chest, making him able to feel her heartbeat. Do you feel it? The dragoness asked. Issei couldn't help but avert his gaze with a small blush, but he was still able to answer. Yes. Now, tell me this time. Tiamat brought Issei's hand to his chest, entwining her hand with his so that they could both feel the heartbeat. Do you feel anything? After the question, Issei couldn't help but look up at her to answer her. At that moment, it was when he could notice the small blush that accompanied her cute smile. Her light blue eyes were shining with an uncharacteristic intensity. It only made her look more and more beautiful. In fact, the impact was so great for Issei that all sound became inaudible, accompanied by absolute darkness. All she could see and hear was Tiamat's beautiful figure, along with the beating of her heart. Suddenly, the voices of his friends Matsuda and Madohama began to be heard in his mind, only to be followed by the voices of his precious club mates. I can feel it, Issei replied, with a smile. I know why I'm afraid of dying. I wouldn't like to forget my best friends, I wouldn't like to forget my mates, I wouldn't like to forget my mistress. Issei would fix his gaze on Tiamat's face, causing her to blink with intrigue. But above all things, I would not like to forget you. Issei would give her a tight hug, causing a large blush to shoot across Tiamat's face at his action and his cute words. Even so, she didn't take long to respond to him, showing him how fond she was of him with a single hug. I can feel, thanks to you. I wouldn't want to forget you for anything in the world either. She would cling even tighter to the embrace, sinking her face into Issei's neck. And I wouldn't want to lose you for anything in the world either. That's why I'll protect you as often as it takes. That will be so, only until I become stronger than you. Issei commented with some amusement, drawing a small chuckle from Tiamat. The dragoness broke away from Issei slightly to look him in the eyes. Still not giving up, huh? I'm not going to, Issei exclaimed with a toothy grin. It'll be hilarious when he finds out I'm one of the 4 Dragon Kings, Tiamat thought. Well, shall we get back to training? Issei asked with renewed energy. No, Tiamat replied, separating herself completely from Issei. This caused the chestnut to look at her with confusion. Being afraid is fine. What's not fine is letting yourself be controlled by fear, declared the dragoness more seriously than usual. At least for today, we will be doing special training. Special training? Issei asked with slight enthusiasm, though it was quickly overshadowed by a growing terror as she watched a large, icy, terrifying aura begin to surround Tiamat. That's right, Tiamat would cross her arms, just as a grim look graced her face. Special training to control your fear. Several hours later, Tiamat would appear in Issei's room via a celestial magic circle, laying the brown-haired man down on his bed. You could clearly see how Issei's soul wanted to leave his body at all costs. I think I've gone too far. Tiamat would rub her hair, seeing how Issei was feeling. Just as he was about to leave, she gave him one last look. Her eyes glowed warmly and she proceeded to cover him. "See you," she said softly, giving him a small kiss on the forehead. Line jump. "I still find it incredible that you agreed to work alongside them," Irina commented, moving her feet happily on one of the pews of the church that had been vandalized long ago. "As I said before, a deal is a deal," Zenobia clarified seriously, eating the noodles calmly. "Besides, I must admit that the Security's help will come in handy." The exorcist looked up from her, narrowing her eyes seriously. "When we attacked him, he was moving so fast that we couldn't even see his movement. In fact, it seemed like he was using some kind of magic to get our attacks through him. It was impressive." "Do you think that will be enough to defeat Cockabeel?" Irina asked, starting to eat with her friend. "I don't know. I'm sure the Security used all of his power against us, but I can't say the same for Cockabeel," Zenobia replied, looking intently at her noodles. "For that reason, we must not trust each other." "Yeah," Irina exclaimed, raising her hand with joy. Zenobia started to stir her noodles, remembering the talk she had with Issei. To be more specific, she remembered the very noble goal that she had mentioned. "Do you know something?" Irina looked at her friend with great intrigue after hearing her tone of voice. "After what your childhood friend told me, he makes me believe that the disappearance of the demonic corruption are not mere rumors," she concluded, with a small smile on her face. "No demon would want to defend innocent people." "You think so too?" Irina exclaimed with a big smile on her face, being answered by a nod from Zenobia. Line jump. "Have we all met yet?" Riaz asked with his typical smile, seeing that his servants and the exorcists were sitting on the chairs, while all the Sona nobility was at the entrance together with the aforementioned. The only one missing from the meeting was Kiba. "What do you think if we organize the plans and don't waste any more time?" Zenobia asked, clearly uncomfortable being surrounded by so many devils. Luckily for her, she'd had to share a place with the only demon she'd liked so far. "She is right." Issei nodded. "Cockabeel is already in the city. We don't know if he could attack in a week or today. There's no need to be so uptight," Riaz clarified with a nervous smile. "We already discussed everything with Sona. We know what roles each one will have in the fight. Considering that the Academy is our territory headquarters, Cockabeel will attack this place without a doubt," Sona stated seriously. "The plan is for me and my peerage to create a powerful shield so that no one can teleport from the inside out, and vice versa." "I get it. That way, the enemies won't be able to escape," Zenobia said. "But are you well aware of the risks involved?" "Of course." Sona adjusted her glasses. "If the situation becomes critical, I will remove the spell and call the Mao and my sister." "And why not do it now?" Zenobia asked, narrowing her eyes in great suspicion. "We would save ourselves a lot of trouble." "What do the details matter?" Riaz answered her, making Zenobia look at her carefully. "You lost the previous bet, so you don't have the right to question anything." Riaz put her hand to her face, giving a small sigh. "If you want to know the answer so badly, Sirzech and Serafal are too busy to attend to a problem like this." The tension began to be felt in the air, making Issei swallow hard. After Zenobia and Riaz were staring at each other, the exorcist finally relented and closed her eyes. "I guess you're right. It's not my concern what the demons do. Oh, more, what they don't do." A small mocking smile shot onto Zenobia's face after her last words. "I think you have a lot of experience with it," Aquino declared, covering her mouth to hide her typical smile. "After all, they have completely failed to recover the Excalibur fragments. Can we focus, please?" Issei got up from her seat with a big jump, cutting off the heavy atmosphere that was being generated in the small room. "You're right, Issei," Riaz sighed. "This is no time for silly discussions," she clarified with great seriousness. "Listen well. As we already know, Cockabeel is in league with that Freed guy and the creator of the Holy Sword Project, Galilei. The latter won't be a problem, but Freed is something else. He will use the already unified Excalibur fragments to fight, and that will be a big problem for the devils." Riaz looked at Zenobia and Irina. "For that reason, I want you two to lead the attack on him, while we take care of Cockabeel. I'll also take care of Freed and Galilei." Everyone looked towards the entrance in surprise after hearing a familiar voice. "Kiba," Issei exclaimed with joy after seeing her partner again at the club after several days. "I'm glad you're back, Kiba," Kaneko commented with a small smile, something out of the ordinary for her. Issei looked at him expectantly at the mention of him. "At first, I was angry with you for denying me the chance to destroy 2 fragments of the Excalibur. But then I thought about it with a colder mind, and I think you're right." Kiba tightly clenched his fists. "The best option is this." "Very good, Kiba." Riaz cleared her throat of her, causing the blonde to look at her with a bit of pity. "President," he said, not even being able to look at her face. "Don't worry, we can fix our misunderstanding later," Riaz clarified, causing Kiba to look up from her in genuine surprise. "Then, you two will fight alongside the exorcists." "Yeah," she responded without delaying more than a second, kneeling down to show him respect. Issei could only smirk seeing that the team seemed to be back. "Issei." "Yeah." The protagonist immediately turned his attention to his mistress after hearing her call. "You will be the most important in the operation." Riaz's words caught him a bit off guard. "We will support you, you have to kill." Riaz could not finish issuing his orders since a huge tremor occurred in the club. "What the hell is going on?" Saji exclaimed, after almost falling over due to the huge tremor in the place. "It's here," Sona declared with absolute seriousness, making everyone stand up from their seats and grab their respective weapons. You know the plan, let's go, ordered Rias, receiving a nod from everyone. Line jump. Cockabeel was sitting on top of Kuo Academy, waiting for his potential victims while tapping on the roof with his fingers, indicating his impatience. After waiting for several seconds, a big Machiavellian smile appeared on his face when he saw how Rias appeared running from the Academy's garden, along with his entourage. You finally show up, Cockabeel declared with his smile still valid. I was beginning to get impatient on this long night. Cockabeel, Rias exclaimed, looking towards the top of the academy. Cockabeel's smile twisted into a serious look when he noticed something strange. Wait a minute, the fallen angel searched his gaze. Where is the brat Citri? I can still feel her energy around this place. The answer fell instantly as a huge violet-colored barrier completely covered the entire academy, causing Cockabeel to take a small surprise. I see, he said seriously, and then a creepy smile appeared on his face. So, some mere reincarnated devils and the bratty Gremory think they can beat me? He asked himself, laughing at them. It's the least I could expect. After all, the Gremory is a spoiled brat who has no idea of the power I possess. But I didn't expect that from the Citri, since she had a reputation for being more or less intelligent. Cockabeel thought with a mocking smile. Sure, she's runny, she must have convinced her. Cockabeel thought, fixing his gaze on Rias. After all, they both live in a bubble. I'll be very amused when they deeply regret not calling their brothers from the beginning. Cockabeel raised his hand, making a small snap with his fingers. But for now, I think I can have some fun. Rias and his entourage watched as two figures made an appearance after Cockabeel's snap. Oh, Freed was the first to speak, fixing his gaze on Issei. Long time no see. How have you been, UFC King Demon? Freed asked, with his typical psycho smile. Did they teleport in with the barrier? No, they're already at the academy before, thought Rias, slightly serious his gaze. I wonder if he's hiding something else. We will be your opponents. Zenobia, Irina, and Kiba stepped forward, pointing their respective swords at him. Oh, I see, Freed exclaimed, waving his sword like a moron. The three of you want a rematch. They can come at the same time, I don't care. The result will be the same, declared the deranged exorcist, making his sword shine with great intensity. The only thing I ask of you is that you don't get in my way, Kiba declared, taking a step forward. That should say me, Zenobia replied, imitating the blonde's action. By the power of the church, and by the power of God, you will be punished for your crimes, Irina exclaimed, joining the duo. That remains to be seen, whore, Freed yelled, disappearing from the place like the other three, starting their fight. Cockabeel lowered to the ground, causing the remaining people to look at the cotter cautiously. The fallen angel looked up from him, denoting an evil smile on his face, a smile that had to be slaked with. Do you think they'll be able to make it? Saji asked, being able to keep the barrier active with some difficulty. The only thing we can do is trust them, Sona declared solemnly. I guess the numbers don't favor you too much, Cockabeel. Rias sneered, crossing her arms with a smile. Numbers? Do you think I would need more allies to kill vermin like you? Cockabeel asked, laughing at Ria's baseless confidence. But you're right, a sinister smile graced the cotter's face. If we even up the numbers a bit, this will be a lot more fun and interesting. Rias blinked in disbelief at his words. What do you mean pair up? Cockabeel's smile intensified even more at the question. The cotter raised his hand to the front, creating two magic circles where two terrifying dogs with three large heads appeared. Summon Cerberos from the 12 gates of hell, Rias exclaimed in complete disbelief. Only ultimate-class devils are supposed to have access to the inner abyss of hell. Ha ha ha, Cockabeel laughed out loud. That's right, killing that wimpy demon in the Great War at the end was of any use to him, he exclaimed with a sadistic smile on his face. One of the Cerberus went in the direction where Freed was fighting, causing the fight to be interrupted. Thanks, I really needed a little hand, boss, the exorcist exclaimed with a mad smile on his face. How annoying, Zenobia whispered under her breath. Irina, take care of the damn dog. Okay, the exorcist exclaimed with a big smile on her face. I guess there's no other choice, Rias said to herself. Issei will take care of the Cerberus. Okay, Issei took a big leap, sliding behind the Cerberus with ease. Oh, Cockabeel put a hand to his chin with a smile. Do you have that much trust in this guy? I'll make sure to subdue him until he gives up, President, Issei exclaimed, putting the gauntlet in front of her face to emphasize her words. A reddish energy completely surrounded him, indicating that he had been accumulating a large amount of augments without anyone noticing. Issei, this is not a raiding game, Rias yelled at him, dodging an attack from the Cerberus. This is a real enemy, you can't risk it. You have to kill him. Hearing those words, Issei's eyes widened. Kill him. That gauntlet, Cockabeel thought aloud in amazement. I see it wasn't just rumors, he concluded, making a huge sick smile appear on her face. This could be much more interesting than I imagined from the beginning. Partner, this is not the time to hesitate, Dedrag exclaimed, releasing Issei from her internal fight. Why yes, Issei's answer only made Dedrag worry even more. If he continues with those human thoughts, this won't end well, Dedrag thought, gritting his teeth. Let's see what you're made of, wielder of Dedrag, Cockabeel commented, crossing his arms. But before we start, I'd like to make you a proposition. Issei looked at him with great curiosity. I can let you live after our fight, if you agree to join me. Cockabeel raised both of his hands with a big toothy grin. What do you say? In addition to having exciting and unforgettable battles every day, I also promise you all the women you want. Do not be ridiculous. As Cockabeel looked genuinely surprised. Hardly anyone dared to insult him. Do you think I'm going to abandon my classmates and friends just to save my butt? Issei's question sounded more like a threat, causing Cockabeel to look at him in astonishment. HM. Ha 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 ha. Cockabeel laughed out loud at the unexpected attitude of his opponent. Very interesting. Cockabeel got into a fighting stance. A serious expression graced his face for the first time. So let's get started. Issei tightly clenched both of his fists, trembling slightly. What the hell are you doing, partner? Use balance breaker. Diedrag yelled in his mind. No, first I want to see if it's necessary, maybe I can come to my senses with him. Damn, there is no way to reason with a guy who is blinded and obsessed by shed. Don't be naive. Diedrag tried to make him reason, but his words were of no avail. Issei quickly charged at the cotter with various kicks and punches. The fallen angel was able to block each of them with great ease. His serious look turned to a disappointed one, thinking that he had expected too much from the guy in front of him. You don't even make me sweat, Cockabeel commented, blocking all the attacks without breaking a sweat. Are you really the Sekiryude? The cotter sneered, clearly disappointed in the demonstration he was receiving from Issei. Be quiet. It was the only thing Issei could say, trying to hit him in vain. Cockabeel was having it easier. He even took the trouble to look away from him to Fried to see how his fight was going. Stop moving so much, UFC king bitch. Fried yelled, attempting to slash Zenobia with the Excalibur fragments that had been assembled. Without a doubt, combat is made much more difficult with the Excalibur's abilities combined. He declared the exorcist, doing a backflip, then rolling on the ground to dodge various slashes, finally jumping up to clash his sword with Fried's. It would be a big problem if she was fighting alone. She finished, with a smirk. Fried gritted his teeth as Kiba appeared from behind him, hoping to end the match by splitting him in half with his demon sword. Seeing this, Cockabeel caught Issei's fist as he blocked it. Following that, the protagonist punched him with all his might in the abdomen that did not flinch the cotter, causing Issei to widen her eyes in disbelief. Cockabeel raised her hand to where Kiba was, creating a small magic circle that began to materialize a strong ball of golden energy. Kiba, watch out. Issei yelled, intending to get in the way of the attack, but since Cockabeel was grabbing him, it was impossible for him. The attack went off in less than a second, creating a huge explosion on the spot. Fried and Zenobia flew out of the dust, but they hadn't taken any damage. After a few seconds, the dust completely dissipated, seeing that there was a crater of considerable size, where Kiba seemed to be fairly well. Or so it seemed, since he was standing with light scratches on his body. His sword was missing, apparently. That cockroach, Cockabeel said with a smile. He just deflected the path of his sword to block the attack. He survived by a miracle. Kiba wiped the sweat from his face, while trying to control his erratic breathing. I heard that an experimental subject managed to escape. Kiba looked up from him, clenching his teeth tightly. And of all things, he became a demon. Galilei commented, approaching the weakened Kiba. I have to say that I am grateful, because thanks to you my goal was achieved. Did it come true? Kiba asked, not understanding what he meant. The holy will that the experimental subject said was not enough for a holy sword. Galilei raised his finger to emphasize his next words. Then, I came to a conclusion. I just had to divert that subject's will. He clarified with a sadistic expression on his face. Hearing this, Kiba couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. And I did that, crystallizing it. Galilei removed a small blue crystal from his pocket. This is the crystallized holy will of that moment. Kiba looked at the stone with a frozen expression. And now this is the last one left. Fried laughed out loud, getting up from the floor. Except me. All the bodies broke and died trying to integrate the crystal into their souls. Fried raised the Excalibur with great pride. When you look at it like this, you'll see that I'm really super special. That's what someone puts on when performing the ritual to use a holy sword. Zenobia thought, remembering that she and Irina had to use it. Those hypocrites tried to get rid of me, while shamelessly taking the results of my research. Galilei explained with a maniacal grin on his face. Now they try to divert the holy will without killing the subjects. I conclude, laughing. That means there was no need for us to die back then, Kiba declared, getting fully to his feet as he glared at him with great hatred. Because, you were just experimental material. Galilei shrugged. We had to get rid of you once the objective was achieved. We always believed it was a just death. Kiba clenched his fists tightly, trembling with hatred. We were just disposable materials. Kiba wondered, unable to believe everything he was hearing. Galilei threw the stone at his feet. You can keep it if you want, he commented with complete confidence. We are capable of mass-producing something much more refined than that. Kiba grabbed the crystal as a melancholy look crossed his face. Please, leave us and run. The voices of his friends came like a painful memory to his mind, causing him to squeeze the glass tightly with both hands. How could he have done something so cruel? Issei wondered out loud, not being able to believe what she was hearing. This is the supernatural world, Brett. Cockabeel's words made Issei look at him. It is normal for misfortune to persecute the weakest. All of us. Kiba squeezed the crystal even harder, causing it to start to glow. We die. Kiba started to mumble, his face remaining obscured by his hair. Didn't you listen? Fried asked with a psychotic smile. You died in vain. he yelled with great joy, causing Kiba's body to start trembling greatly. Do you want me to repeat it to you again? The sadistic tone in his voice was unbearable. His maniacal laughter was cut off instantly when he saw something strange about the blonde. The blue aura began to change into a black one, expanding around Kiba. Hate. You hate it. Kill him. Destroy it. Finish it. Tear it to pieces. Don't leave anything of him. Voices began to haunt Kiba's head, making the hatred in his heart intensify even more, increasing the black aura that was surrounding him. Galilei watched all this with wide-eyed eyes. He couldn't understand what was happening. Kiba opened his hand slightly, revealing that the blue crystal slowly began to turn black. When the darkness took over the crystal completely, the darkness that was around Kiba entered his body, and the crystal shattered into pieces. It doesn't matter that you are in league with a Cotter. Vengeance will be mine. Kiba fixed his gaze on Galilei, making the old man take a step back, startled. Doesn't that remind you of something, Issei? D-Drag's words made the protagonist listen to his mind. It's the same as when you got your balance breaker. The only thing different is that you got it through goodwill. Kakabia looked at the blonde with crossed arms. I'll make sure Kiba materialized a completely black sword, which contained a thin golden line down the center. To avenge them. It's all of them. It's us. Kiba pointed his sword at Galilei, intending to cut him into 1,000 pieces. Free. Galilei yelled with great fear, being instantly attended to by the aforementioned, getting in the way of Kiba. Kiba, smash the Excalibur. Issei's scream made Kiba look at him. Show that your balance breaker is stronger than that cursed sword. Show that your will is stronger. Issei exclaimed with great confidence. Issei. Kiba looked towards his enemy, flashing a small murderous smile. Of course my will is strong. Otherwise, I would never have gotten here. If I hadn't had a strong will, I would never have sold my soul to the devil. The blonde thought, increasing his smile a little more. Everything, to savor this moment. Of course you will, Kiba, Riaz declared, releasing a great power through a magic circle that finished destroying Cerberus at last. You are the knight of the Gremory clan. A holy sword like Excalibur is nothing to you. Kiba just nodded at his master's words. I guess my time to get serious has come as well, Zenobia commented, throwing the Excalibur shard at Kiba's feet, then taking out Durandal through a magic circle. That sword, Galilei yelled, taking a step back. Duranda, Kakabia wondered with a smile. Interesting, he concluded, starting to get bored of blocking all of Issei's punches. Are you seriously going to use Durandal? Irina asked, dealing with the Cerberus with a bit of difficulty. It's better for me, so you end that fight quickly and help me finish off this rude dog, she concluded, dodging the bite of all three heads in one leap. Seeing this, Riaz and the rest of her decided to help her to finish off her less important enemies quickly. Kiba looked at the Excalibur shard seriously, then gave a slightly evil smile, and breaking her into 1,000 pieces with his sword. That, Fried yelled with great exaggeration, jumping back. There's one he would say to himself, fixing his gaze on Fried. The deranged exorcist would glare at him with great rage, pointing his sword at him. Remember that your opponents are two, Zenobia commented, joining Kiba. Damn, Fried whispered seriously, then flashed his psychopathic smile as usual. It cuts them into 1,000 little pieces. I'm starting to get bored, Kakabil exclaimed with great impatience, grabbing Issei's face with great force, making the young man cry out in pain. I can't believe that such an interesting guy is being the most boring in my last battle before the Second Holy War starts. Kakabil threw him with great force to the ground. Issei clutched his head as she got up off the floor, watching as Kakabil slowly approached him with a disgusted look on her face. What the hell are you doing, Hayatu Issei? Zenobia yelled, cornering Fried with great ease thanks to his skill and sword. Use Balance Breaker once and for all. Balance Breaker. Kakabil wondered with wide eyes. So, if you can be much stronger, the Cotter broke into a huge smile. I see, don't you plan to use it? Kakabil disappeared from Issei's sight, making the protagonist blink in disbelief at such speed. Shit, am I seriously going to die for FC King reincarnated devil and a whore? Fried yelled with great rage, being completely cornered by the two swordsmen. Just as Zenobia and Kiba jumped in to finish him off, the guy disappeared without a trace. That, Irina and those of the Riaz nobility shouted when they saw that the Cerberus had also disappeared. If you don't plan to use it, I guess I have no choice but to force you. Kakabil's voice made everyone look up at him, seeing how Kakabil was flying, noting for the first time his pair of wings. The other two were standing on top of magic circles, waiting for the show to start. Damned, Kiba started to fly in the direction of Galilei, intending to cut him into 1,000 pieces. You won't escape. Kiba, wait, Riaz shouted, but it was already too late. How naive, Kakabil declared, raising both hands with a creepy smile on his face. When his hands reached the top, everything went into slow motion. A strong purple light completely covered the entire site. Kiba slowly widened his eyes in horror as a huge amount of purple magic circles covered the entire place. All the others reacted much the same way as the blonde, completely frozen by what they were seeing. Even the Citri nobility were completely speechless at what they witnessed. The blinding purple glow intensified even more, causing Kakabil's smile to intensify even more. Before the purple glow completely blinded the place, it could be seen how Issei ran towards her companions in slow motion, while a red glow completely surrounded him. The last thing that could be seen was Irina throwing herself on top of Zenobia to protect her. After the entire site was decorated by a purple light, Cockabill's next words were heard. Let the Second Great War begin. A huge crash was followed by a large amount of dust, dirt, and debris that covered the entire barrier. The magical barrier did not take a second longer to break, hearing numerous screams from the Citri nobility. Having nothing to contain it, all the destruction caused by the attack dispersed even beyond the area with great rapidity due to the magnitude of the attack, resembling a second burst. The sound of the numerous explosions finally subsided, at the same time that the earth and the debris stopped advancing, falling to the ground. The consequence of that devastating attack was a huge curtain of dust that had left everyone completely blind, if anyone had survived such an attack. After several seconds of silence, a red aura could be distinguished from the dust and debris. They are fine, Issei yelled loudly. His figure was slowly revealed, seeing himself with his crimson armor on, except for his helmet. Yeah, Riaz declared, seeing that her friends were also in perfect condition. You arrived just in time to defend us. I finished, trying to make out something among all the dust, just like the others. Issei remained with his arms open, ready to create another barrier over his companions if necessary. Look, Asia pointed, making everyone look in the direction. Everyone widened their eyes in shock when they could see that Kyo Academy had been completely destroyed, leaving only a few pillars and rubble scattered around the place. It didn't even take him a second to prepare the attack. Akino said what everyone was thinking, unable to believe the rate of destruction he had caused. If it hadn't been for Issei, Kaneko stated, seeing how all around her was destruction. Shit, Kiba, Issei exclaimed, widening his eyes like he couldn't. A feeling of utter tranquility invaded his body when he could make out how Kiba emerged from the rubble of Kyo Academy. Though he quickly fell to his knees on the ground, gasping for air as a large number of grievous wounds graced his body. Hold in there, Issei shouted, with the intention of going to help him. Awesome. Cockabill's voice made Issei stop instantly, looking in various directions. After much of the dust cleared, Issei and the others were able to watch as Cockabill and his companions landed unscathed on the ground. This time it wasn't for the sword. Cockabill crossed his arms, keeping a serious look. It's amazing that he could withstand the attack. A big sadistic smile flashed across his face after looking at Kiba's injuries. Although he managed to survive by sheer miracle, Irina, everyone, without exception, shifted their gaze to Zenobia, who was screaming inconsolably. Issei's eyes slowly widened, opting for a completely transfixed, flabbergasted expression. Her eyes sparkled, reflecting the figure of how Zenobia tightly hugged the limp and bleeding body of her friend as tears ran down her face. Zenobia's broken gaze glared at Cockabill's neutral face with great rage. Damned. She got up, carefully supporting her friend's body on the ground. God won't let you get away with it, she screamed loudly, grabbing Durandal off the ground. Who? Cockabill asked, wiping away a hate. Do you plan for a dead man to stop my plans? Zenobia widened her eyes in shock after hearing that. What did you say? Oops, I'm not supposed to say that, Cockabill exclaimed, then covered his face and began to laugh out loud. But I'm starting another war, so it doesn't matter anymore. God died during the First Great War. Zenobia's eyes began to twitch at what she heard, slowly approaching madness. God, is he dead? Riaz widened her eyes as she couldn't after hearing what she heard. It can't be. You have to be lying. Zenobia's legs started to shake. With the death of God, pure angels cannot reproduce or be created. Pure devils and pure fallen angels are rare. Right, Cockabill commented with a gloomy look on his face. Didn't you find it weird that the three factions started recruiting humans after the Great War? That's because all three of them stooped so low. Zenobia's legs increased in trembling of hers, falling to her knees on the ground. The angels, and fallen angels who heard the news, decided to keep the secret to protect all humans who believe in God. Lie, you lie, Zenobia declared, on the verge of fainting from all the mixed emotions. That doesn't matter now, Cockabill stated, clearly annoyed. What really annoyed me is that because of the death of the Demon Lord and God, everyone decided to stop the Great Holy War. Cockabill put her hand to his chest, taking it strongly. I can't take it. I can't. I need to kill. I need another war that lasts forever. I want to quench my endless lust. Cockabill's eyes filled with uncontrollable fury. All because of the idiot boss we have, and the stupid woman who abandoned her lust for killing a human girl. FCK but the prayers he always received them, Zenobia stated, still trembling. HMPH. A small smile appeared on Cockabill's face. Michael is doing great. It can't be. Zenobia slowly turned her face to Irina's body, making her eyes go dull. You died protecting a lie. Those were her last words, as she fell completely fainted to the ground. I already understand it, Galilei exclaimed, raising both hands with a maniacal grin. That explains why the blonde brat can use a holy demonic sword. Indeed, Cockabill agreed. It's obvious that his sword is tainted by demonic power, but it still has a small drop of holy power on it. They all seemed completely overwhelmed by the talk. Everyone except Issei. The protagonist cared little about the death of God. He still couldn't take in what had happened. Shesha's dead. Issei continued to stare at her, his face expressionless. Why did he kill her? For pleasure, he asked himself. Does he dirty her spirit, just for taste? Does this guy's taste equal life itself from her point of view? Issei slowly turned her face, fixing his gaze on his opponents. Who will be next to sate her taste? Are you listening to me? Hey, Cockabeel yelled at Issei, giving a small sigh when he saw that he didn't answer. I guess my plan to make this more fun won't do. What's the point of using your balance breaker just to save your teammates? Cockabeel crossed his arms, completely indignant. Issei could only limit himself to watching him. His mind was not blank. His mind was completely saturated. There was a knot that he needed to break so that he could move. That knot was his morale. Untired of talking, Freed flashed a big murderous grin. It's time for me to pay you back, UFC King Blonde. Riaz and the others widened their eyes in horror when they saw how Freed charged at Kiba with a huge leap at full speed, using the power of the Excalibur. Kiba tried to get up, but couldn't even materialize a sword. He could only watch as the Excalibur was a few meters from going through his head. He only expected the end. Do you think that without killing anyone you will be able to protect your loved ones? Will you protect your ethics and morals, no matter if it destroys your life? Is there any value in someone who does not value the lives of others? When the sword was about to touch Kiba's face, Issei appeared out of nowhere on top of Freed, breaking his spine with one blow and destroying his entire body with just the impact, generating a huge crater on the ground. Issei raised his face while Freed soaked into his face, glaring at Cockabeel. Cockabeel raised both eyebrows at what he had witnessed. One by one, they all opened their mouths in complete shock at what they had just witnessed. He killed him with one hit. He killed him. That's right, the memory of the talk with Tiamat had managed to break that knot completely. President, Saji shouted, coughing from the large amount of dust and dirt in the area. I'm fine. Sona appeared through the dust, shaking her clothes to shake off the dirt. The damage was minimal, the Citri commented, then looked towards the center of the fight with great seriousness. Although, I could not say for certain how they are where the attack was unleashed. Sona adjusted her glasses with a worried look. Most likely it was a critical hit. What do we do, Sona? Tsubaki appeared, being accompanied by the rest of the nobility. I'll call them Mau, Sona stated earnestly. It is obvious that Cockabeel's power is at a completely different level than we assumed. Sona narrowed her eyes. I knew the Cotter shouldn't be a joke, they have that position for a reason. Sona blinked in utter amazement after hearing Ria's voice through the small red magic circle that appeared in her ear. Riaz, Sona asked, somewhat surprised that she didn't even have her voice a little shaken. I know what you're thinking. A huge grin broke out on Ria's face, fixing his gaze on Issei. He had just killed Freed a second ago, still glaring at Cockabeel. I'm asking you to give us 10 more minutes. Sona looked up at the sky, then let out a huge sigh. I hope I don't regret this. Chapter 16, Until the Last Breath, Dragon vs. Cotter. Cockabeel's surprised look changed to a completely serious expression, though a small smile could be discerned on his face. I think this is where the interesting part begins, Cotter stated quietly, signaling for his remaining Cerberus to attack. The Cerberus began sprinting towards its target with mind-boggling speed. Still, Issei waited for it to stand on Freed's body without making a move. The center head opened its mouth as wide as possible to eat him. When one of its teeth was about to touch Issei's head, the young man blinked and his expression became extremely serious. The beast slammed into Issei like a bull, dragging its target a couple of meters, until it stopped dead in its tracks after a few seconds of the onslaught. Everyone's eyes widened as they saw that when the dust cleared, Issei was holding the Cerberus back with a one-handed grip on one of its teeth. Issei didn't hesitate for a second, throwing the beast into the sky with all his might with one hand, demonstrating brutal strength. When the monster had finally reached its maximum altitude, Issei extended his palm towards the sky, only to have a small crimson orb appear in his hand. Dragon shot. A large crimson energy shot like a bolt of lightning towards the Cerberus, causing its body to completely disappear due to the magnitude of the attack. Interesting, shouted Cockabeel with a large maniacal grin on his face as he extended both his hands out in front of him. Let's see how you do with two. He shouted again, extending a huge purple magic circle from the ground, causing two Cerberus to emerge, which didn't take a second to rush out towards Issei. Seeing this, the protagonist frowned and proceeded to materialize his helmet as a precaution. Both Cerberus rushed at Issei to tear him apart, but he created two magical barriers just a second before, causing the beast to make a full impact and fall to the ground stunned. Issei took advantage of this and unraveled his barriers, rushing forward while extending both arms out to his sides. He opened his fists, denoting a small crimson orb in both hands. Dragon shot. G-Drag's voice again echoed through the place, unleashing two massive blasts of power that completely eradicated the Cerberus. Galilei took a step back as Issei disappeared out of nowhere and reappeared in front of him, but it was too late to react. The young man punched him with a strong punch that went all the way through his stomach. Galilei's eyes widened in horror and he spat out a huge amount of, only to be blown away by the force of the attack. Cockabeel watched indifferently as Galilei's body rolled and fell behind him. How much power, the Cotter thought seriously. Were you so eager to fight to the death? Issei shouted, dematerializing his helmet. So, Issei took a great leap and aimed at him with a great firmness in his hand, not caring that he was several meters away. Now don't run away like a coward. Dragon shot. The attack began to advance from the sky towards Cockabeel with promising speed, but very easy for the Cotter to dodge. Cockabeel watched as the magical attack slowly approached his figure, and he responded with a simple motion. He crossed his arms. Just as it was about to hit him, he could see the fallen angel smirk sideways. The attack slammed hard into its target, causing a huge blizzard to blow through the place. The dragon shot exploded a second time with great energy, creating a huge sphere of crimson that gave off pure magic. What? Issei blinked in shock. The attack was supposed to have shattered the ground. It shouldn't have had that effect. The chestnut thought with great seriousness, keeping a great distance in the air to make sure he didn't have any unpleasant surprises. The dragon shot's shockwave spread out a little further, creating another final mini-explosion, causing the impact site to be covered in dirt and dust. Did it work? Issei thought, staring at the impact zone. The protagonist was able to catch a pure miracle as something approached towards his position thanks to the dust and dirt making a strange movement. Issei crossed his arms in X by pure instinct. Just the second Cockabeel appeared in front of him, without a scratch. Issei managed to cover himself from the punch, and then tried to kick him, but Cockabeel dodged it without much trouble. Thus, a barrage of punches and kicks began to unfold in the air. Both opponents blocked and countered, without managing to land a blow on their opponent. The speed was such that their spectators could barely follow them with their eyes. That amount of power is not enough. D-Drag exclaimed seriously. You need to increase your power. And how do I do that? Issei exclaimed, finding it increasingly difficult to block Cockabeel's attacks due to the fact that he was slowly increasing his strength. I'm already using all my power. It's time, Rhea said quietly, creating a magic circle where a black energy with a crimson edge began to create itself. Rhea's, Aquino asked with great surprise. You cannot use the power of destruction. Remember that your brother forbade it due to the little control you possess over it. Aquino turned her gaze back into the fight, frowning. Besides, Issei will most likely get hurt as well. Never mind that, Rhea replied, opting for a completely nonchalant look. The important thing is to stop it. Then we'll cure Hayato with a phoenix tear. Aquino gave a sigh, but decided not to say anything about it. Rhea narrowed his eyes with great conviction, unleashing a powerful attack that made a horrifying sound when it was released. Hearing the sound, Cockabeel looked in the direction of the attack. He swiftly kicked Issei hard, causing the young man to blink in shock at the cotter's inordinate increase in speed. After knocking Issei to the ground, Cockabeel turned around and met the Grimoire's attack with a strong kick, deflecting it into the sky practically in a second. When she did, you could see that her shoe was completely shattered, as were her toes, which completely disappeared just from coming into contact with the highly condensed energy. What? Cried Rhea in complete disbelief, only to be visibly startled when Cockabeel appeared in front of her out of nowhere. Listen to me well, Grimoire brat, Cockabeel declared with an aura of death around her. The next time you intervene in my combat, I will kill you. He concluded, causing Rhea to shiver at the cold, shadowy look the cotter gave him. Cockabeel quickly turned around, using his forearm to cover Issei's blow. After that, they both leapt backwards and began clashing punches and kicks again, with the difference that they were now on the ground. Another major difference was that Issei was no longer fighting back, he was only defending himself. Shit, I can't go on much longer, Issei thought, gritting his teeth hard as he noticed that his block was gradually being shattered by Cockabeel's strength. To increase your power through augmentations, you have to use your emotions, D-Drake shouted in his mind. Bear in mind that your mind is like a dragon's, so your emotions are 10 times stronger. You have to find some negative thought to help you expel your full potential. A negative feeling. Issei's mind was filled with negative memories. His relationship with his parents, his poor ability to integrate into society, being known as the weakest Sekiryude. He even thought of the most recent of all, the death of Irina, his childhood friend. With all that, it should have been more than enough. After all, her heart was covered in bad feelings right now. Why isn't it working? D-Drake thought, gritting his teeth tightly. With such negative energy, there's supposed to be an explosion of power. All my previous carriers have always been run on anger and hate. Cockabeel laughed loudly, not letting Issei rest for a second. I had thought that a human with sacred gear with his power barely awakened would have been very boring. But I see I was completely wrong. A grim smile graced his face. Luckily, those stupid demons were watching you the whole time, and ended up reviving you. Hearing this, Issei blinked in complete shock. How do you know? The protagonist felt his skin slowly begin to bristle with uncontrollable hatred. How do I know? The sadistic, horrified grin on Cockabeel's face grew even wider. Who do you think ordered your death? He shouted with great sadism and finally broke through Issei's defense, creating a spear of light to pierce through his skull. In those moments, total darkness adorned Issei's heart. Everything around him became dark and inaudible. He closed his eyes, remembering Rainer's last words to him. My boss ordered me to kill you. Cockabeel rolled the spear over his hand, heading at a great speed towards Issei's face. Boost! Cockabeel widened his eyes in disbelief as his spear of light was completely destroyed by Issei's hand. The protagonist dematerialized his helmet, fixing his gaze on Cockabeel with uncontainable rage. From one second to the next, the fight took a 180-degree turn, courtesy of Issei, who began to lash out with extremely strong punches. Cockabeel could only step back, while his arms remained in an X shape to cover his opponent's first 5 hard blows that forced him to retreat. Still, his block was not enough in the face of such force. Cockabeel was covered by a side kick that went straight to his cheek, forcing him to widen his eyes in astonishment as he felt that the blow carried so much power that it overwhelmed him completely. That ended up in him going flying from the inertia of the kick, rolling several meters backwards on the ground. Cockabeel looked up from the ground, staring at Issei's big attack with great surprise. In the protagonist's hand, a large red orb could be seen covering his entire hand. The attack emanated a somewhat screeching and threatening sound. "Are you sure about this, partner?" D-Drag asked, then gritted his teeth slightly. "Just a race." He thought, there should have been a hell of a lot more. "There's no choice but to use Plan B," Issei pointed towards Cockabeel. "I know it's very risky, but it's the only way to win." "I agree, partner," D-Drag declared earnestly. "Take that," Issei shouted loudly, throwing the attack. Dragon shot. The attack came off Issei's hand with abysmal power. The magnitude of the attack was so great that it shattered the ground where he was standing. The attack advanced towards its target, generating a huge line of destruction in its path that wiped out everything it touched. "It's much bigger and more powerful than the last one," Cockabeel thought, seeing that the length of the attack was so great that it was impossible for him to dodge it, considering that he still had to get up from the ground. Cockabeel buried both hands in the ground, creating a huge purple magic circle, where 3 Cerberus came out in front of him. Akata rose from the ground, watching as the 3 creatures were completely devoured by the attack, creating a cloud of dust in front of him. When he thought the attack was finally over, Cockabeel widened his eyes, completely shocked. "Another one," Cotter exclaimed, watching as another dragon shot of the same strength as the previous one pierced through the thick curtain of dirt. Cockabeel didn't take a second to respond, bringing both hands forward to create a barrier. The attack hit the barrier hard, creating a huge crater at Cockabeel's feet, along with the sound of a deafening bang as the 2 forces came into contact. The attack seemed to be very powerful, but it was visible that the Cotter wasn't having much trouble holding it back. Just as Issei's attack was about to fade, Cockabeel was once again taken by surprise as he could see a shadow swoop down from above him. The Cotter raised his gaze to the sky in complete amazement, watching as Issei was flying a few feet away from him, having another very strong dragon shot at the ready. Cockabeel moved one of his hands to where Issei was, causing a magic circle to materialize, summoning a Cerberus that swallowed Issei in one bite. Just when she thought the problem had been solved, Cockabeel's eyes widened in shock. Dragon shot. The powerful attack went through the Cerberus head with no problem, going straight towards Cockabeel, creating a huge shockwave from the explosion. Issei was thrown several meters away by the power of the attack, rolling on the ground without stopping for a few seconds, until he was finally left lying in the rubble of the academy. The protagonist looked up, seeing how the attack was expanding like a sphere, only to explode with great force, causing everyone to be covered by the enormous amount of dust and dirt that was shot out. Issei slowly stood up, trying to look around in vain, as the dust would not allow him to do so. Finally, his armor shattered into 1,000 pieces, causing him to fall to his knees while breathing heavily. "You've used up a lot of magic in one go, partner. You won't be able to fight for the day," D-Drag declared with great seriousness. "What do you say, D-Drag?" Issei commented with a faint smile on his face. "I can still continue." Issei materialized his gauntlet, only to cry out loudly as he felt his entire hand receive a sharp, painful spasm, breaking the gauntlet in the process. "That's what I meant," D-Drag clarified, a worried tone in his voice. "You haven't suffered from it until now, but having a dragon's arm has many consequences." Issei continued to breathe heavily, trying to catch his breath. Instead of recovering, though, he felt more and more dizzy. Unfortunately, his troubles didn't end there. Issei blinked in shock when Cockabeel appeared out of nowhere, grabbing him tightly by the neck and burying him in the ground, creating a small crater. The fallen angel wasted no time, stomping down hard on both of his arms, then burying a spear of light into his stomach, completely immobilizing him. Issei couldn't help but vomit up a large amount as he felt an excruciating pain hovering in his stomach and spreading throughout his body. Issei could only stare at Cockabeel helplessly, seeing that the previous attack had only given him a couple of scratches and faint burns all over his body. "That hurt, Sekiryude," Cockabeel commented. From his tone of voice, it was clearly more of a compliment than a threat. "It's been a lot of fun, but I see you can't entertain me anymore," he concluded, looking around to try and visualize something amidst the dust. "Listen to me well, this will be your last chance. You can decide to join me, and I promise I will kill all your companions before the dust dissipates. That way, you won't have to see them." A smile appeared on Issei's face as he spat on his opponent's badly damaged foot. "FCKU." Cockabeel watched the spit in silence, then closed her eyes deeply. "I see, that's a pity." Cockabeel fixed her gaze on Issei's face, denoting an expression that indicated suffering. "In that case, suffer as you watch all your friends die in front of your eyes," he finished, turning around, walking away at a slow pace to find his victims. Issei clenched his fists tightly, then let out a heavy sigh. "I guess I have no choice." Issei looked down at his right hand, only to have a feeling of despair begin to blossom in his heart. Wait a minute, how do I go about summoning her if I can't use what little remaining magic I have left? The answer came immediately, as all the dust dissipated seemingly out of nowhere, causing Cockabeel to look in all directions in clear surprise. Issei blinked in shock as a guy in white armor landed in front of him. The protagonist tried to raise his gaze to look at the guy, but it was useless due to the fact that he was still pinned to the ground. I can't believe it, Cockabeel stated with clear emotion in his words, turning around to look at the subject with a big thirsty grin on his face. Of all the guys, I was expecting anyone but the Albion bearer. Upon hearing that name, Issei couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. The energy of the man in front of him began to seep into his body, causing a completely irrational fear to take over his body. Without a doubt, this guy was his ultimate rival, his ultimate enemy. This made the fear move easily through his whole body, flooding him with that feeling. Beautiful deep blue eyes opened with great seriousness. Being so focused on the subject, Issei didn't notice that the seal on his hand appeared and began to glow a light blue color. "Are you so eager to do crazy things, Cockabeel?" asked the teenager, who seemed to be of a similar age to Issei because of his voice. The subject raised his hand, preparing a small magic circle of a faint light blue color, more akin to white. "I guess the fun is far from over," Cockabeel commented, moving into an attack stance. The cotter blinked in complete surprise as the Hakuryuku deflected his attack towards the spear that held Issei captive, freeing him from his prison. The man spoke, fixing his gaze on Asia, who stood several feet away. "Take him away. I don't want her to die before our fight." "Why yes." Asia quickly complied with the order, not even thinking to question the subject. Issei. Asia brought her hands to her companion's abdomen with great seriousness. "I will heal you," she commented with conviction. "Thank you, Asia," Issei commented with a somewhat weakened tone, but he was still fully conscious. "That guy," Issei thought, fixing his gaze on the Hakuryuku. "He's coming to help us." "That's surprising," Rias thought, watching Issei with great attention. After being pierced by a light attack, he can still be conscious. "Thank you for saving me, Issei." Kiba arrived along with the others, noticing an improvement in his condition thanks to Asia. "No problem, Kiba," the protagonist commented with a smile. "By the way," Issei Akino called out to him with great intrigue, fixing her gaze on Issei's hand. "Why is your hand glowing?" "What?" Issei looked down at his hand, seeing how the light blue seal was glowing brightly. "What?" he shouted, making absolutely everyone look at him like he was an idiot. "What's wrong with him?" the Hakuryuku wondered. "No idea." Cockabeel bowed his shoulders. "Anyway, going about our business," he added with a mischievous grin on his face. "Apparently you don't want Azazel to give you a second chance," the Hakuryuku would state with a sigh, completely digging in. "I guess I'll have to drag you away by force." "Oh," Cockabeel scoffed. "Try it if you can," he concluded with a big grin, getting into an attack stance. "I can tell you have no idea," scoffed the Hakuryuku, getting into a defensive stance. Cockabeel quickly lashed out at him. "How slow," thought the Hakuryuku amusedly, watching as Cockabeel was only a meter away. But just before the fight was about to begin, Cockabeel stopped dead in his tracks, raising his gaze to the sky. The Hakuryuku mimicked the cotter's action. "What the FCK is that?" Cockabeel asked, seeing how a huge magic circle of a pure sky blue color had risen above their heads. "Whose magic circle is that?" Sona asked, arriving at the combat zone along with her peerage. Saji could be seen carrying the fainting Zenobia in his hands. "She's coming." The demons watched Issei with great anticipation, waiting for the answer. But there was no need for him to respond. A blurry celestial figure took off at an absurdly high speed from the magic circle, falling to the ground and creating a huge cloud of dust in the process. Rias and the others became alert, watching the place with great attention. A huge, vigorous grin could be seen amidst the dust along with long, silky, light blue hair. Out of nowhere, Cockabeel and the Hakuryuku flew out of the dust curtain, crashing heavily into the rubble of the academy. Again, a light blue blur could be seen running at full speed towards the Hakuryuku, which was pulling itself together. The figure took a huge leap, landing right on top of the boy with a kick that created a huge shockwave around him, completely shattering the guy's armor and revealing his albino face, only to be buried again in the rubble by the utterly ridiculous force of the blow. Again, another curtain of dust was created on the spot, along with a small crater. "What the hell?" shouted Rias, trying to visualize the figure as he covered his face from the strong wind current that had been generated by the previous attack. The dust finally began to dissipate, watching as the figure clearly of a woman began to slowly advance towards them. This brought everyone to alertness as a cold sweat broke out all over their faces. At last, a real fight. The figure finally came into view, revealing Tiamat with a sweet smile on her face. "It's great that you were able to fight these two guys, Issei." The dragoness finished, pointing at the protagonist with a smile so cute it was impossible to imitate. Everyone brought their gaze to Issei with wide eyes, waiting for an explanation. Meanwhile, Issei, he couldn't help but blush and look away after seeing the unexpected huge smile that the dragoness gave him. Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed, just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.